The scene opens at St. Checkpoint, a magnificent estate bathed in sunlight. Inside the golden, star-adorned hall, a voice calls out to Lady Fashiane among the crowd of dancing nobles. Fashiane stands close to her silver-haired daughter, Layla, who nervously swallows in the bustling crowd. An attendant directs the attendees to stand in the queue as Fashiane looks on silently. Fashiane thanks Valerian for guiding them while Lila glances back at him anxiously. Valerian dismisses her thanks, noting the Countess requested it and offers further assistance if needed. Fashiane firmly grips Lila's shoulder and calls her name to get her attention. Layla obediently turns and replies to her mother amidst the crowded venue. Fashiane questions whether she took her medicine and packed the necessary extra doses. Clenching her dress tightly, Lila quietly confirms she has indeed taken her medicine. Fashiane sternly warns her to take medicine immediately if she feels body heat, and Lila reassures her. Fashiane hopes they can return to the county before sunset since the examination started early. Layla questions the sudden schedule change, but Fashiane dismisses it as a trivial event. Fashiane coldly states that the result of the examination will only turn out ordinary anyway. A sudden wave of shock washes over Lila at her mother's harsh prediction. Valerian curtly acknowledges the situation before preparing to take his leave from them. Valerian bids farewell to Lady Fashiane, expecting to cross paths with her again later. An examiner's loud voice summons the next candidate to step forward for testing. The examiner instructs the candidate to place their hand on the glowing inspection stone. Sweat beads on the young candidate's face as he nervously approaches the testing device. With bated breath, the boy slowly reaches his hand out toward the waiting Stoen. The boy places his hand down as the magical sphere begins to glow brightly. A sudden, brilliant burst of blue light erupts from the stone, signaling a successful awakening. The boy pumps his fists and cheers in pure delight at his successful awakening. An announcement confirms the boy's official admission to the grand and prestigious Imperial Academy. Layla watches silently, wondering if becoming Asper is truly a cause for such joy. Layla reflects that despite the immense advantages, going berserk and dying from low guiding levels is a terrible fate. The terrifying reality of an Esper's violent downfall looms large in her mind. A sudden shrill scream echoes through the hall, jolting Layla out of her thoughts. An examiner announces a candidate is qualified as a B-grade guide, sending the girl into a joyful frenzy. Layla contemplates how the checkpoint's inspection stone usually treats A grade as the absolute highest tier. Layla recalls that rare S grades are so powerful they can cause the inspection stones to malfunction. Layla finds comfort in the fact that Valerian currently possesses absolutely no interest in her. Layla reasons that as an unmanifested ordinary person, she holds no value or interest to an Esper like Valerian. Layla dreads the original story's fate, where Valerian violently threatens her for failing to report her guide manifestation. Layla quietly muses that being a powerful Esper might actually be preferable to being a guide. While Layla stands clenching her hands nervously, a blonde noble youth spots her from behind. The blonde youth calls out her name, causing Layla to gasp in sudden surprise. The blonde young man happily recognizes her, introducing himself as Orion. Layla stammers out Orion's name, utterly shocked and confused by his unexpected presence. The surrounding nobles begin to whisper eagerly about the sudden arrival of Orion Restro. The gossiping crowd notes that Orion is Marquis Restro's son and a healing-type Esper. Orion takes her hand in his, warmly asking how she has been as Layla freezes in shock. Orion's gloved hand firmly holds her bare hand, sparking an unexpected reaction. Layla panics as a strange sensation washes over her, realizing her guiding energy might be leaking out. A soft, warm glow begins to emanate from Layla, confirming her worst fears of accidental guiding. Orion notices her distress and asks if she is sick, while Layla panics that this manifestation is happening too soon. Layla forcefully pulls her hand away and shouts in refusal, leaving Orion completely bewildered. Orion stares in shock, hurt and confused by her sudden, desperate rejection of his touch. Layla takes a swift, trembling step backward, desperately trying to put distance between them. Terrified of the consequences, Layla dreads the thought of anyone discovering she is a guide. Orion calls out in confusion, demanding to know why she is suddenly running away. As Layla desperately runs away, Orion reaches out and calls her name in concern. A soft sigh echoes over the quiet, sunlit town as Layla tries to escape. Huddled against a wall, an exhausted Layla wonders why Orion keeps pursuing her. Layla grows dizzy with dread, determined to avoid the terrible fate she remembers. She fears a miserable life of being slowly drained by volatile, dangerous Espers. Resolute to change her fate, Layla is startled when Orion suddenly tracks her down. Orion stands over her with a warm smile, gently reassuring her not to fear. Orion apologizes, realizing he must have startled her by calling her name so suddenly. While Layla panics, Orion reassures her that her faint guiding energy is barely noticeable. Layla anxiously realizes that a high-level Esper like him would naturally notice her guiding. Orion holds out his hand, offering to absorb the remaining traces of her guiding energy. Orion gently takes her hand, sealing her leaking energy with a reassuring squeeze. With a swift, gentle motion, Orion pulls Layla back up onto her feet. Orion directly asks Layla if she wishes to avoid manifesting as a guide. Orion steps close and firmly holds her, preparing to offer his assistance. Orion promises Layla that he will never force her to do anything against her will. Orion offers a warm, comforting smile, leaving Lila staring at him in surprise. The checkpoint's inspection stone is incredibly sensitive, detecting even the slightest hint of guiding. Leaning in close, Orion prepares to share his secret plan to help her. Orion reassures a sweating Lila that he has a way to resolve her predicament. The magnificent palace estate stands bathed in bright sunlight under a clear sky. Orion pulls out a formal document, presenting it as the solution to her problem. Orion hands the paper to Lila, promising it will solve all her immediate problems. The document is an official certificate falsely declaring that Lila is an ordinary citizen. Layla anxiously points out that the document is nothing more than a forged certificate. Orion confidently tells her to trust him, reminding her of his high-grade Esper status. Orion boasts that securing such a document is an easy task for him. Their private conversation is suddenly interrupted as a stern voice calls for Lady Fashionay. Valerian approaches them with a stern, imposing presence, his footsteps echoing in the air. Valerian demands to know why Lila is here instead of taking her official examination. Layla stammers nervously, completely at a loss for how to answer his suspicion. Orion steps in front of Lila, coolly telling Valerian there is no need to worry. Valerian narrows his eyes, his cold gaze filled with intense suspicion toward the pair. Orion hands the forged certificate to Valerian, declaring that Lila is indeed just ordinary. Valerian silently takes the certificate, examining it closely while Lila watches with bated breath. Valerian questions how such an official certificate could have been issued so rapidly. Holding the document, Valerian continues to press them about the highly suspicious timing. Orion snaps back defensively, demanding to know if Valerian is doubting the checkpoint's authority. Valerian coldly tells Orion to stay out of matters regarding unregistered espers and guides. Angered by his cold dismissiveness, Orion grabs Valerian's coat, demanding an explanation. With effortless composure, Valerian firmly brushes Orion's hand away from his coat. Orion flinches in surprise, momentarily taken aback by Valerian's cold and unyielding rejection. Valerian adjusts his collar, maintaining his cold, superior attitude throughout the intense confrontation. Layla watches the tense standoff with wide, anxious eyes, clutching her hands in fear. Valerian casts a sharp, piercing glance over his shoulder, his suspicions far from resolved. A close-up reveals an elegant white glove adorned with a delicate purple bow. Layla stands silently, desperately hoping that their fragile cover story will hold under scrutiny. The gloved hand is raised slowly, bringing the tense confrontation to a temporary standstill. Valerian gently holds Layla's hand under the clear sky, his calm gaze locking with hers. Valerian gazes ahead with a solemn, unreadable expression as the tense atmosphere lingers. Orion watches them silently with a mixture of quiet concern and deep, lingering regret. Layla stares forward, her eyes filled with quiet determination to escape her tragic fate. Valerian, Orion, and Lila stand together in a tense, silent confrontation under the sun. A sudden, blood-curdling scream pierces through the quiet sky, shattering the peaceful afternoon. The peaceful Grand Palace courtyard stands beautifully under the bright, clear morning sun. Panic erupts as a maid desperately screams warnings of a raging fire inside the palace. Amidst the roaring flames, young Lila desperately shields her young black-haired companion, Adrian. Layla struggles to breathe as the thick, choking smoke from the fire closes in. Adrian cries out Lila's name in sheer panic as she collapses amidst the flames. In the medical room, the doctor expresses relief that they managed to save Lila just in time. The doctor treats her burns, glad they spared her face, while Fashane looks on guiltily. Tearfully, Adrian blames himself for the fireplace accident, desperately apologizing to a silent Lila. Fashane gently asks Adrian to wait outside so Lila can rest, and he obediently complies. Adrian quietly steps out of the treatment room, casting one last anxious look back. Left alone, young Lila stares into space, her mind reeling from the traumatic event. Lila's hand is held gently but firmly, offering silent comfort in her time of need. Fashane reassures Lila that consistent treatment will heal her scars, and Lila quietly agrees. Years pass as Lila prepares to enter the prestigious academy at the age of 17. Standing by the window at night, Lila is startled when Adrian questions her strange actions. Young Lila wanders through the dark corridors, feeling utterly detached from the world around her. Overwhelmed by exhaustion, she slowly closes her eyes, succumbing to a deep, dark sleep. She recalls her past life as a modern woman falling into the void of transmigration. She remembers working endlessly to secure an apartment, only for her dreams to shatter instantly. Waking up inside the novel, Lila finds her leg heavily bandaged in a lavish bedroom. She stares in disbelief, slowly coming to terms with the reality of her sudden possession. After failing to return home, she realizes she is stuck in this cruel fantasy world. Grief turns into bitter frustration as she struggles against the constraints of her new life. Layla vows with fierce determination to defy the original novel's tragic fate at all costs. She grips her dress in resolve, ready to fight against the script written for her. She angrily questions why she should follow a plot that stole her entire life away. Layla is interrupted when Adrian quietly enters her room looking incredibly hesitant and worried. Adrian sits beside her, asking with deep concern if her injured leg is feeling okay. Layla studies his face silently, realizing the massive role he plays in her tragic fate. Adrian looks back at her with wide, innocent eyes, completely unaware of her internal struggle. Layla asks Aiden for a favor, and he enthusiastically offers to do whatever she needs. Layla proposes they begin physical training tomorrow, shocking him with her sudden, intense request. Aiden's brain completely short-circuits at the terrifying prospect of physical training before breakfast. Layla smiles mischievously while Aiden questions what physical training actually entails for them. The sun rises over the sprawling gardens, marking the start of their first training day. Aiden pants heavily while running laps under the watchful, uncompromising eye of a cast-wearing Lila. Wearing activewear, Lila stands firm, determined to whip her future teammate into fighting shape. Exhausted, Aiden continues his running drills, pushing past his physical limits for her sake. She recalls the terrifying future scene where monsters kidnap Lila and her weak teammates. Aiden suddenly trips over his own feet, crashing face first onto the cobblestone path. As Aiden cries over his scraped knee, Lila reflects on her future awakening as a guide. She looks down at him, dreading his tragic destiny of dying weak and bedridden. Aiden proudly reports completing 10 laps, only for Lila to cheerfully demand 10 more. Aiden freezes in sheer unadulterated horror, realizing his personal trainer is absolutely merciless. Layla asks her brother Aiden if he will protect her from any future dangers. Aiden eagerly agrees, clenching his fists with a determined but slightly nervous smile. Layla emphasizes that he must focus on his own strength to protect himself first. Aiden laughs while wiping his sweat, happily agreeing to become stronger for her sake. Layla smiles softly, feeling a quiet sense of hope for their altered future. Layla gently pats Aiden's head, praising him for being such a good brother. She realizes she must cast aside her lingering guilt to properly prepare him. Layla enthusiastically announces that their intense physical training regimen begins the very next day. Aiden diligently runs laps around the garden while a cast-wearing Lila cheers him on. The Grand Palace Estate stands beautifully under a clear blue morning sky. Layla relentlessly demands that Aiden run 10 more laps after his brief rest. Aiden collapses on the grass in exhaustion while Lila smiles down at him mischievously. She remembers the tragic future where Aiden lay sick and bedridden in darkness. Aiden quickly regains his bright energy, eagerly agreeing to push past his limits. Layla watches quietly as Aiden immediately resumes his running drills across the courtyard. Layla ponders the mysterious cause of Aiden's novel illness, determined to change his fate. His heavy leather boots kick up dust as he runs with renewed determination. Aiden pants heavily, pushing his body to the absolute limit for her sake. She hopes this rigorous training will prevent him from falling sick or dying. 3 years pass in a flash and a mature Aiden catches his breath. Layla stands gracefully in the garden, smiling warmly at her brother's incredible growth. Vibrant pink flowers frame the scene as their training session comes to an end. Aiden sighs in relief, looking remarkably healthy and fit after his daily routine. Layla praises his stamina, and Aiden confidently boasts he could run 100 laps. Aiden adds that he has also incorporated daily sword training into his schedule. A firm, strong hand wrapped securely around the hilt of his training sword. With a swift motion, Aiden draws his sword, showing off his impressive progress. His footwork is sharp and precise as he moves across the training ground. Aiden executes a powerful, clean sword strike under the bright afternoon sun. Aiden turns to Lila with a proud smile, asking how she likes his form. Layla claps happily while Aiden silently vows never to be defeated by monsters. Aiden suddenly leans in close, making a nervous Lila stammer in surprise. Aiden lets out a light, playful chuckle, clearly amused by her sudden flustered reaction. Aiden offers to run 10 more cooldown laps and asks if she can wait. Layla smiles warmly up at him, happily agreeing to wait in the garden. Aiden immediately runs off into the distance, his pace strong and completely effortless. Aiden continues his run with a soft, determined smile on his face. Layla suddenly freezes in shock, her violet eyes widening as a memory surfaces. She clutches her chest in realization as vibrant peonies bloom all around her. A maid suddenly approaches Lila from behind, calling her name to get her attention. The maid informs Lila that her mother is currently searching for her. The scene shifts to a sunlit apothecary room filled with potions and ingredients. Flashback reveals young Lila gasping in surprise as she enters the medical room. A beautiful blonde boy in an elegant blue uniform stands surrounded by flowers. The young boy politely introduces himself as Orion from the prominent Restro family. Her mother introduces Orion as the Empire's most talented healing esper. Young Orion steals a shy, nervous glance at Lila during their initial meeting. Layla stares back in shock, instantly recognizing him from the original story. She recalls that the novel described Orion as a mysterious adopted child. She remembers his adoption was meant to secure the Restro family's fading power. A grand red banner flutters as a noble narrator explains that adopting guides and espers was a common imperial practice. The narrator elaborates on the absolute necessity of powerful espers to combat the constant threat of invading monsters. An elegant illustration depicts a brown-haired esper gently carrying a blonde-haired guide in his arms under a warm light. A noble couple stands before a towering castle while narration details the importance of espers for family prosperity. A golden chalice adorned with glittering red gems rests quietly on a table reflecting luxury and noble heritage. The golden cup lies tipped over, spilling wine onto a bloody white gown as the family's limits are narrated. Luxurious red fabric billows gently against a stark white backdrop, creating a somber, dramatic atmosphere. A man dressed in a white coat stands with his back turned, staring quietly at a grand wall crest. A blonde nobleman glances back subtly towards his smiling, dark-haired butler inside a dimly lit royal chamber. A young blonde boy with bright blue eyes looks forward with a nervous, hesitant expression. The Grand Palace stands beautifully under a clear sky, surrounded by manicured lawns and vibrant yellow flowers. Young Orion stands gracefully, framed by elegant blue roses as he smiles with a polite expression. In the apothecary, the mother questions young Master Orion's presence while she keeps up noble appearances. From above, the mother watches as young Orion steps forward to treat the seated Lila's back. Orion gently places his hand on Lila's back, explaining his healing power will quickly soothe her injuries. A narrative bubble explains that Orion's maximum recovery potential is a milestone that occurs much later. Layla looks back in surprise as Orion begins his healing treatment, his hand glowing warmly. Layla wonders how she should interpret this sudden, unexpected deviation from the novel's timeline. Orion closes his eyes and concentrates deeply, channeling a warm golden healing energy from his palm. Layla stares ahead silently, her pale face framed by yellow sunflowers blooming in the background. The thought bubble notes that Orion was originally Adrian's childhood friend, making her early meeting with him baffling. Layla gasps in realization while her mother looks on, startled by her daughter's sudden, tense outburst. The narration explains that in the original novel, the two boys became friends after treating Adrian's burns. Layla sweats nervously as she processes the major changes occurring within the original plotline. Heavy leather boots step down the hallway while Layla wonders what will happen to the two boys now. Hand reaches out to grasp and slowly turn the brass handle of the treatment room door. The door swings open as Adrian steps inside, pausing in surprise when he spots the strangers. Orion continues his gentle treatment, keeping his hand on Lila's back as she sits quietly. A sudden swish sound echoes as Adrian stares in absolute shock, his face darkening with deep anger. Layla bites her lip in sheer annoyance, dreading the complicated and troublesome situation unfolding before her. Feeling deeply irritated, Adrian demands to know what is happening in the room right now. Layla gasps softly, completely frozen as the tense confrontation between her brother and Orion begins. Layla realizes that her plan to save Adrian has unexpectedly brought these two rivals together early. Adrian's violet eye narrows sharply as he glares toward the young blonde guest with intense hostility. Layla silently notes how her intervention has completely altered the fated meeting of the two boys. Orion returns a calm, unreadable look, completely unfazed by Adrian's sudden, aggressive entry. Adrian reacts with lightning-fast speed, his gaze narrowing dangerously as he makes a sudden move. Adrian's hand lunges forward in a blur, reaching out aggressively toward the young blonde healer. Layla swiftly throws herself between them, shouting for them to stop while blocking Adrian's hand. Adrian freezes instantly, staring down at Lila with a mixture of confusion and hurt. Adrian's eyes widen in silent disbelief as Lila continues to firmly block his path. The mother watches the chaotic scene unfold, gasping in complete shock at Adrian's sudden aggression. Smiling with strained politeness, the mother sternly demands to know what Adrian thinks he is doing. Adrian points accusingly at Orion, angrily demanding to know why a stranger is touching Lila's body. The mother explains that Master Orion is there to heal Lila, leaving Adrian utterly bewildered. Orion politely introduces himself as a healing esper, offering a gentle smile to diffuse the high tension. Adrian glares suspiciously at Orion, highly skeptical of the blonde boy's ability to heal Lila's scars. The two boys lock eyes in a silent, intensely hostile stare-down, neither of them backing down. Layla watches them, realizing with shock that her actions completely rewrote the timeline of their friendship. She stares ahead with wide, anxious eyes, questioning if she made a critical mistake in her plans. The mother angrily demands Aiden apologize for his disrespectful behavior toward the prestigious Restro heir. A gentle voice off-screen politely declines the need for any apology. Ryan warmly smiles, dismissing the situation as a simple misunderstanding caused by surprise. Aiden abruptly leaves the room as his name is called out in a panic. The mother sighs deeply and offers her sincere apologies on behalf of her son. Ryan graciously accepts the apology, expressing that he completely understands how Aiden feels. He playfully admits he would have acted the same way to protect a pretty little sister. Orion prepares to begin Lila's healing treatment while she reacts with quiet surprise. Orion gently places his hand on Lila's back to commence the healing. Warm golden light radiates from Orion's hand as he channels his healing energy. Sweat beads on Orion's face as he concentrates deeply on administering the treatment. The glowing light fades as Orion slowly pulls his hands back from her back. Orion lowers his hands, looking visibly drained and disappointed by his limits. The mother gasps in worry, apologizing that they requested his help too late. Orion sadly laments that he wishes he had arrived sooner to treat her. Layla looks back quietly, unable to find the right words to comfort him. The group gathers quietly in the apothecary room as the treatment session concludes. In the royal hall, the mother and Lila prepare to see their guests off. The mother thanks Orion for visiting while telling the visibly disappointed boy not to be discouraged. Layla watches Orion depart thoughtfully, framed by a bed of beautiful red roses. Orion walks away beside his guide, casting a lingering glance back at the mansion. Layla lets out a bright, joyful laugh, thoroughly amused by his sweet demeanor. She finds the opportunity to observe her favorite supporting male lead's childhood absolutely delightful. Orion blushes deeply as he sneaks one last look back at her. 3 months pass in a flash and the beautiful sunlit estate is surrounded by blooming sunflowers. Layla takes a peaceful stroll through the manicured palace gardens. She suddenly halts in her tracks as a voice calls out her name. Layla spins around in surprise to see who has approached her. Orion stands before her in elegant white attire, smiling brightly and blushing. In a cute chibi fantasy, Orion sports puppy ears while Lila waves her hands nervously. Layla grows slightly exasperated, noting that Orion has visited every single week for 3 months. Orion eagerly offers to walk with her while Lila stares back in silence. Layla snaps in annoyance, demanding to know why he keeps coming despite her warnings. Orion drops his shoulders and apologizes meekly, looking like a dejected puppy. Layla questions his constant apologizing, urging him to associate with actual guides instead of her. Her harsh words strike a chord as Orion stands frozen in shock. Orion looks down sorrowfully, deeply hurt by her cold dismissal. Layla sighs and dismisses the matter, wanting to completely drop the frustrating subject. Orion sadly asks if she is avoiding him because he might go berserk like other espers. He apologizes for his persistence, believing she's simply terrified of his dangerous nature. Orion watches Layla walk away under the blue sky, feeling misunderstood. Orion smiles warmly, confessing that he simply missed her too much to stay away. Traumatic memory surfaces of a loud scream echoing across the kingdom last month. Layla recalls encountering a terrified esper going completely berserk amidst raging flames. Orion had shielded Lila during the incident, looking utterly terrified of the dying esper's fate. The tragic fate of a berserk esper left a deep impression on both of them. Orion was visibly shaken, realizing that horrific state could easily become his own future. He mistakenly assumed Lila would forever fear him and all espers after that day. Layla reflects on the incident, already well aware of the dangers from the novel. Layla steps in to stop Aiden from attacking Orion in a tense standoff. Layla reflects on why she had to step in and stop Aiden when he lunged at Orion. Fearing Orion might go berserk, Lila recalls aggressively demanding why he keeps visiting her like a leech. Aiden approaches in the garden, furiously warning Orion that he should have been prepared for consequences. Orion coldly clarifies to Aiden that he did not come to the estate to see him. Layla clutches her head in frustration over how their legendary original friendship has completely fallen apart. Aiden grabs Ryan by the collar, mockingly ordering him to leave since he failed to heal Lila's scar. Orion defiantly responds that he will not leave until Lila herself tells him to go. Layla watches the tense standoff in wide-eyed silence, feeling completely overwhelmed by their sudden hostility. Layla is overwhelmed by an ominous feeling as she watches the two boys confront each other. The three children stand in the sunlit estate garden as Aiden keeps a tight grip on Orion's collar. An ominous feeling continues to loom over Lila as the boys' confrontation deepens. Layla watches helplessly as the tension between Aiden and Orion reaches a critical boiling point. Aiden harshly tells Orion he has no place there, especially since he cannot even use his healing abilities. Layla steps in and sharply scolds Aiden, asking if he is seriously going to keep speaking so rudely. A sudden tight clenching of a fist highlights the intense, boiling anger of the moment. Layla desperately asks the two boys why on earth their relationship has turned so incredibly hostile. Aiden looks defensive, pointing out they were never close to begin with. Orion quickly lets go and apologizes to Lila, begging her not to be angry while she assures him he is not the problem. Aiden reacts with shock as a hand suddenly lunges toward him to stop his advance. Aiden eagerly insists that he was the one in the wrong and asks Lila if she is actually mad at him instead. Orion grabs Aiden's arm and argues that he is the one who should apologize to Lila. The two boys childishly bicker back and forth over who is more sorry to Lila while she smiles awkwardly. Layla raises her hand to interrupt the argument, calling out Orion's name to get his attention. Layla addresses the boys, admitting that she is actually the one who should apologize to them. Layla explains that for everyone to secure a happy ending, it is best if Orion leaves now. Orion stands in silent dejection, deeply hurt by her request for him to leave. Aiden playfully teases Orion for clamming up whenever he finds himself at a clear disadvantage. Aiden smugly tells Orion to get lost, prompting a furious outburst from the blonde boy. Orion sadly tells Lila that this will be his last visit, leaving her utterly bewildered by a sudden announcement. Orion announces his decision to enroll in the Esper Academy next month. Looking at the Grand Academy, Lila gasps in shock at how incredibly soon his enrollment is happening. Layla wonders why Orion is entering the academy so early compared to his original timeline age of 15. Orion admits he felt deeply ashamed of his inability to heal Lila's scar. Layla assures Orion that her old wound is not his fault, but he firmly rejects her comfort. Orion laments that a stronger version of himself could have healed her wound regardless of its age. Orion confesses his deep fear of one day going berserk without warning. Orion explains he is going to the academy to protect himself and eventually meet her again with true confidence. Aiden bluntly tells Orion to never return, prompting a sharp scolding from Lila. Layla and Aiden watch in surprise as Orion prepares to take his leave. Orion brightly promises to write to Lila, asking her to at least keep his letters while Aiden glares. Orion looks back one last time, framed by a vibrant bed of yellow sunflowers. Soft breeze rustles through the garden as Orion turns to depart. Orion pats Aiden's shoulder as he walks past, telling him to take care of himself. Layla and Aiden stand together in silence, watching their guest make his departure. Heavy, quiet footsteps echo as Orion slowly walks away down the sunlit garden path. Orion turns back with a bright wave, shouting for Lila to stay healthy and safe until they meet again. Layla waves back with a warm, gentle smile, wishing him well on his new journey. Winter arrives as white snow blankets the beautiful estate, shifting the scene. Seated at her desk, Lila looks up in sudden surprise as someone calls out to her. Aiden sits across from her, flashing a bright, cheerful smile over their meal. A peaceful winter scene shows snow gently falling outside a beautifully curtained window. Layla smiles happily while enjoying a delicious sandwich during a quiet mealtime. She reflects on the fact that nearly 7 years have passed since her reincarnation. The mother tells Aiden he can go outside to play after finishing his food, prompting his excited reaction while Lila reflects on her comfortable life. The mother instructs the governess to dress Lila warmly, and the maid politely complies. Layla quietly reminds herself that despite her comfortable lifestyle, she remains an adopted child. The governess helps Lila put on a dark, warm cloak for her walk outside. Layla suddenly gasps in surprise, her eyes wide as she is caught off guard. Aiden runs up to her with a bright, cheerful smile and grabs her hand. Layla asks Aiden to wait a moment as she tries to stop his sudden physical contact. A massive surge of static electricity shocks them both, causing them to cry out in pain and surprise. The shocked governess wonders how simple static electricity could possibly be this incredibly painful and intense. Layla reflects on how intense static shocks always occur whenever she and Aiden are close. The mother watches with deep concern as the children prepare to go outside together. As they walk, Lila wonders if her mother dislikes seeing her close to Aiden. Layla looks down sorrowfully, feeling troubled and deeply discouraged by her constant worries. Aiden apologizes for hurting her with the shock, promising to be careful while she assures him it is fine. Aiden smiles warmly, feeling relieved by her gentle reassurance and understanding. Aiden holds up his gloved hand, suggesting they try holding hands with gloves on to prevent shocks. Layla looks down at his outstretched hand, contemplating his thoughtful proposal in silence. Aiden holds her hand to prove his point, but a bright spark instantly shocks them again. Layla turns her thoughts to Orion, wondering why he has completely stopped writing to her. Layla notes that 4 years have passed since Orion entered the academy and his letters suddenly stopped. Layla walks down the snow-covered stone stairs of the estate in deep thought. She reasons that his silence might mean he met the novel's protagonist, but she suddenly slips on the icy stairs. Layla loses her balance completely, falling backward down the stairs in sudden panic. As Layla tumbles backward, a panicked Aiden lunges forward and desperately screams her name. Layla tightly shuts her eyes in sheer terror, bracing herself for the painful impact. A sudden soft whoosh makes her snap her eye open in confusion and surprise. Layla finds herself floating upside down in midair, completely defying the laws of gravity. She slowly uprights herself, suspended safely in the air by an unseen, gentle force. Aiden stands below with his arm outstretched, focusing his magical energy to keep her afloat. Aiden pants heavily, visibly exhausted from the sudden and intense exertion of his hidden powers. Layla gasps in shock, her heart racing as she slowly processes what just happened. Sweating profusely, Aiden stammeringly tries to explain himself, while Lila stares at him in complete disbelief. Layla stares in silent shock, her mind racing as she realizes the truth about him. Still floating, Lila looks at him in utter disbelief as the truth begins to dawn on her. Layla asks Aiden if he is actually an Esper, completely stunned by this unexpected revelation. The grand, snow-covered mansion stands silent and imposing under the winter sky, framing their confrontation. Aiden turns his head away in deep anxiety, sweating as he avoids her gaze. Aiden's gloved hand trembles with fear and anxiety over his secret finally being exposed. Layla demands to know why he never told her that he possessed Esper abilities. Aiden looks up with a deeply sorrowful expression, feeling overwhelmed by her confrontational question. A startled gasp of confusion escapes her as she suddenly begins to fall again. Layla begins to lose her levitation, her body tilting as she prepares to fall. She lets out a frightened scream as her gravity-defying magic suddenly cuts out completely. A loud shout of her name echoes through the garden as Aiden rushes to catch her. Aiden desperately runs forward, trying to catch her before she hits the hard ground. Layla glares at him with intense irritation, demandingly confronting him about keeping such a massive secret. Aiden frantically apologizes to Layla, desperately explaining that he never meant to hide his powers on purpose. Aiden reaches out with his gloved hand to ask if she is hurt. Layla reacts with sudden panic and yells at him to stay away. Aiden looks startled as Layla sits frozen on the snowy ground in disbelief. Aiden softly calls out her name, looking down at her with concern. Layla is stunned to realize that a powerful Esper was right next to her. She tightly clenches her dark cloak as she tries to process her overwhelming anxiety. Nervousness overcomes Layla as she stares ahead, her mind racing with newfound truths. Aiden explains that he kept his abilities a secret for a specific reason. Aiden confesses he hid his identity because he feared she would hate him. Layla urges Aiden to inform their mother and enroll in the academy. Aiden grabs her hand and firmly refuses her suggestion to leave. Layla questions how he intends to manage his powers without proper guiding. Aiden insists his powers are currently stable enough to control on his own. Aiden promises to reveal his status as an Esper to their parents later. Aiden begs her to keep his secret for the time being. Aiden worries that enrolling now will lead to immediate deployment after basic training. Layla is horrified as she realizes that the field means a dangerous battlefield. Aiden explains the dark reality of combat and the risk of losing his life. A gentle hand brushes against his cheek as they share a quiet moment. Aiden holds her hand to his cheek, his blue eyes filled with emotion. Layla worries that Aiden will instantly detect her own manifestation in the future. Aiden reveals his plan to attend a regular academy to delay his deployment. Their hands clasp tightly together as they search for comfort in each other. Aiden tearfully confesses how painful it is to see her looking so distressed. Layla remains silent, deeply moved by his vulnerability in this quiet moment. Aiden looks startled as Layla suddenly pulls her hand away from his face. Aiden watches in total confusion as Layla bends down to grab something.
Layla gathers a fresh handful of cold white snow from the ground.
Layla suddenly hurls a snowball directly at Aiden's face, catching him off guard. Aiden stands frozen in absolute shock with snow dripping from his nose. Layla playfully proposes a mutual pact to keep each other's secret safe. They make a playful promise, completely breaking the heavy tension between them. They share a warm, quiet smile, their mutual bond strengthened by the secret. Aiden walks toward the elegant horse-drawn carriage waiting in the snowy courtyard. Aiden suddenly pauses and looks back over his shoulder one last time. The blonde mother and Layla stand together on the mansion's snow-dusted steps. Layla raises her hand to wave a warm and cheerful goodbye to Aiden. Aiden smiles brightly and waves back from the window of the carriage. The carriage rattles away through the grand iron gates of the estate. Layla resolves to raise funds and leave the estate before her 17th birthday. As seasons shift, the grand mansion is surrounded by lush green summer trees. Layla stands inside her beautifully decorated room, dressed in an elegant white gown. She contemplates working in the service industry to support herself in the future. Dressed in white, Layla looks out with a thoughtful and determined expression. Standing alone, she looks out of the massive golden window into the distance. She reflects on how absurd it is that Aiden turned out to be an Esper. Resting her fingers against her face, she continues to ponder the altered timeline. Layla suddenly feels a heavy tightness in her chest, struggling to breathe properly. She panics as a burning sensation hits her heart, realizing she is manifesting. Her mother enters the room and asks with deep concern if she is all right. Sweating nervously, Layla calls out to her mother in sudden panic. She desperately clutches her dress, reassuring herself that her manifestation is still far off. Touching her feverish cheek, the mother insists on calling a physician while Layla weakly protests. Her mother urges her to see a doctor, but Layla desperately begs to just sleep. The blonde mother looks down at her with a heavy, unreadable expression of silent concern. Feeling her face held, Layla inwardly curses as she recognizes her mother's unsettling expression. Layla reflects on how her mother's subtle expression always leaves her feeling highly uncomfortable. Standing together by the tall window, her mother demands that she be completely honest. Gently cupping her blushing face, her mother hesitantly begins to ask a probing question. Distressed by her mother's expression, Layla struggles to maintain her composure under her gaze. Her mother directly asks if her body aches and if her heart feels burning hot. Layla stands in stunned silence as her mother gently holds her cheek. Stunned, Layla demandingly asks how her mother could possibly know her exact physical symptoms. Denying the question, the mother urgently calls out for the governess to enter. The mother orders the governess to quickly escort the severely ill Layla to the infirmary. Letting her hand fall limp, Layla insists once more that she is perfectly fine. Her mother firmly cuts off her protest, refusing to listen to any more excuses. With a firm grip, her mother suddenly seizes Layla's hand to stop her. Glaring coldly, her mother intimidatingly asks if she is talking back to her right now. Overwhelmed by the dark tension, Layla stands in absolute silence before her mother. Quiet infirmary stands ready with shelves of medicine and an organized wooden desk. Panting heavily, Layla sits on the infirmary bed while her mother stands over her. The young physician enters the room presenting the medicine to the expectant mother. The physician holds a golden tray carrying a glass of water and a packet. A single red and white capsule sits on the paper envelope atop the tray. Taking the tray from the physician, Layla questions what kind of medicine she is receiving. A soft clink echoes as her mother sets the golden tray down on the side table. Sweating nervously, Layla holds the small capsule up and stares at it in hesitation. A gloved finger gently presses against Layla's lips, prompting her to take the pill. Read it faster than normal. Her mother watches calmly, holding out the glass of water for her to drink. Layla grips the glass of water tightly, her face filled with quiet apprehension. She tilts her head back and drinks the water to wash down the pill. With a soft gulp, the medicine slides down her throat as she swallows. Layla sits alone on the bed, waiting to see how the medicine affects her. The grand mansion stands majestic and peaceful under a bright summer sky. Seated at her vanity, Layla gazes into her mirror in deep, quiet contemplation. Layla holds the small capsule in her hand, staring at it with intense suspicion. Resting her chin in her hand, she continues to ponder the mysterious medicine. A voice calls out from behind the door, prompting Layla to invite them in. The maid enters to deliver some urgent news, immediately catching Layla's curiosity. The maid delivers the shocking rumor that young Master Aiden has been expelled. Layla sits at her desk, listening intently as the maid shares the gossip. Hearing the news, Layla stands up in complete shock, her eyes wide with disbelief. Smiling nervously, the maid confirms that the rumors of his expulsion are true. The maid explains that despite official sick leave reports, Aiden was personally expelled. Heavy sweat breaks out on Layla's face as the dark reality sets in. Terribly worried, Layla asks if Aiden committed a serious offense like academy violence. The maid reassures her that she doubts he committed any such violent crimes. Sinking back down, Layla realizes there is only one possible explanation left. Clutching her head in panic, she realizes he was caught as an Esper. Layla bitterly regrets trusting her brother Aiden, who failed to stay at the academy for even a year. The maid informs Layla of Aiden's return in 2 days and delivers her mother's urgent summons. Sunlight glints off a delicate floral tea set resting beside a vase of fresh daisies. Layla's mother brings up Aiden quitting the academy, prompting Layla to claim he is on sick leave. Her mother smilingly suggests Layla go study at a provincial estate to prepare for the academy. Layla is completely taken aback by her mother's sudden proposal to send her away. Her mother notes that the butler mentioned Layla's strong interest in academic studies. Layla hesitantly tries to respond to her mother's observation while clutching her teacup. Sweating nervously, Layla offers a weak chuckle, thinking about how she only wanted to earn money. Grand Academic Estate stands proud as her mother asks if she wishes to study there. A sharp gasp escapes Layla as she is internally shocked that her mother wants to send her away. The blonde countess elegantly sips her tea, waiting patiently for her daughter's response. Layla realizes her mother wants to separate her and Aiden to keep them apart. A soft click sounds as Layla remembers her mother's long-standing desire to prevent closeness between them. Layla looks down, deeply contemplating her mother's underlying motives behind this sudden proposal. Her mother emphasizes the high family expectations and the pride they hold for her future. Layla reasons that attending the academy is safer than risking Aiden discovering she is a guide. Layla smiles warmly and agrees to her mother's plan to attend the academy. Mother praises her decision and immediately arranges for her to depart the following morning. Layla is utterly flabbergasted by the incredibly rushed departure scheduled for the very next morning. Her mother explains that leaving early prevents Aiden from clinging to her and stopping her departure. Layla acknowledges that Aiden's carriage is due to arrive at the estate in 2 days. A luxurious carriage travels along the grand path under the bright, sunny sky. Inside the moving carriage, the black-haired Aiden looks out the window in deep contemplation. Mother and daughter sit in silence inside the opulent drawing room, their conversation concluded. Layla offers a gentle, compliant smile to reassure her mother of her cooperation. A reminder of her mother's urgent command urges her to depart before Aiden can return. Aiden remains lost in thought inside his carriage, unaware of the schemes waiting for him. Layla rests peacefully in her bed at night, unaware of the impending disturbance. Her packed suitcases sit stacked by the window, ready for her morning departure. Moonlight bathes Layla's spacious and elegant bedroom as she sleeps soundly. With a sharp creak, the balcony door swings open, making Layla flinch awake in the dark. A mysterious hooded figure dressed in a dark blue cloak slips into a room with a soft thud. Intruders' black boots make a soft tap as they step onto the wooden floor. The bed sits empty as Layla hides, finding the intruder's presence highly unusual. From her hiding spot under the bed, Layla watches the intruder's boots slowly approach. Layla hides under her bed, desperately muffling her breath to avoid being discovered. Trembling with intense fear, she squeezes her eyes shut and prays to remain unnoticed. A hand suddenly reaches under the bed as a familiar voice calls out her name. Layla's wrist is suddenly seized in a firm but gentle grip. Layla is pulled out from under the bed, staring up in utter bewilderment. The mysterious hooded intruder kneels before her, holding her hand in the dim light. Layla lies on the carpeted floor, staring at her captor in stunned silence. The hooded figure gazes down at her with intent concern, asking if she is all right. Aiden lowers his hood, questioning her hiding place, while Layla demands to know his business. Aiden smiles wryly as he confesses his expulsion from the academy for being an esper. Layla demands to know why he sneaked into her room, and Aiden explains his sudden anxiety. Aiden admits he had an overwhelming feeling that she would suddenly disappear from his life. Layla stands frozen, her conscience pricked by the accuracy of his intuitive premonition. Layla can only offer a forced, nervous laugh to mask her plans of leaving tomorrow. Aiden gently smiles as he admits that his words must sound strange to her. With a tight grip on her hand, Layla inwardly panics over how his accurate sixth sense chills her. Layla quietly observes him, recalling how the original story dismissed an esper's sixth sense as minor. Sweating nervously, Layla wonders if she can ever escape from these powerful ability users. A voice suddenly calls out from the doorway, addressing young Master Fashion. A sudden chill washes over Layla and Aiden as they turn toward the intrusion. Valerian Astolf stands in the doorway, suggesting they stop since the young lady looks exhausted. Valerian Astolf politely apologizes for interrupting them at such a late hour. With slow, deliberate steps, the black-haired guest walks further into Layla's bedroom. He introduces himself as a representative from the Imperial Academy that Aiden will attend. The handsome young man formally introduces himself as Valerian Astolf. Layla can only stare back at him in stunned, speechless silence. Aiden turns to Layla, deeply concerned by her sudden tense reaction to the guest. Layla tightly clutches her dress in intense anxiety as she faces the protagonist. Layla realizes this man is Valerian Astolf, the actual male protagonist in the novel. Valerian gazes down at her with a calm but piercingly analytical look. Layla averts her gaze, desperately trying to process this dangerous encounter. Aiden gently pats her arm, reassuring her that Archduke Astolf is not a frightening person. Valerian speaks up calmly, telling Aiden that it is all right. Acknowledging Layla's discomfort, Valerian decides to step out of the room first. Valerian instructs Aiden to finish up his conversation and follow him outside. Layla tries to justify her physical trembling, knowing the danger of the situation. Layla fears she would have been dragged away if her guiding had manifested earlier. An anxious thought wonders if she has already made some terrible mistake. Aiden calls out to Layla, snapping her out of her deep, anxious thoughts. They stand together in the quiet room, a tense atmosphere lingering between them. Aiden curiously asks Layla if she happens to know Astolf from before. Layla finds this question completely ridiculous, leaving Aiden looking mildly surprised. Layla reminds Aiden that he brought Astolf, prompting an apologetic explanation from him. Dismissing him, Lila begs to sleep, and Aiden agrees to wake her tomorrow. Aiden pauses in confusion, but Lila urgently demands that he leave her room. Aiden looks around the bedroom and asks why her room is so empty. Layla sweats nervously, completely unable to find a quick excuse for her luggage. Aiden's expression turns cold as he directly asks if she is going somewhere. Layla evasively tells him to ask their mother in the morning, pleading exhaustion. Before she can turn away, a sudden sharp grip clamps down on her wrist. Aiden demands to know if their mother is behind this, leaving Lila startled. Layla warns him about his tone, but Aiden fiercely demands to know the truth. Staring at him blankly, Lila wonders if her brother has completely lost his mind. Caught in his desperate grasp, Lila struggles to interpret this intense, unexpected confrontation. Morning arrives, illuminating the grand, sprawling mansion under a clear blue summer sky. The family gathers in the lavish dining room for a quiet, formal breakfast. Layla feels relieved that she managed to quiet Aiden down before any trouble arose. Her dark-haired father sits silently at the head of the long dining table. Her blonde mother dines elegantly, maintaining a calm and perfectly composed demeanor. Layla compares this tense family dinner to a deceitful game of mafia where everyone hides. Layla sighs quietly, feeling highly uncomfortable amidst the thick, suffocating silence. A sudden thump breaks the silence as the son addresses his father and mother. He hesitatingly announces that he has a personal favor to ask of them. Her father shifts his gaze, looking at his son with a serious, unreadable expression. Layla is deeply alarmed by her brother's highly absurd and unexpected proposal. Aiden requests to attend the specialized academy together with his sister. The black-haired count sternly dismisses Aiden's request as an impossible waste of time. The father firmly reminds Aiden of the stark divide between an esper and an ordinary person. Aiden points out that ordinary people can enter the academy with special headmaster permission. A sudden pause overcomes Lila as she tries to remember this rule from the novel. Layla sweats nervously, deeply shaken by the revelation that ordinary people can enter the academy. A soft gasp escapes her lips as she connects the pieces in her mind. Layla realizes this explains Valerian's extremely cold and disdainful gaze toward her the day before. The black-haired count abruptly demands that Lila follow him out of the room. He offers her a deceptively warm smile to encourage her prompt compliance. Painful memory resurfaces of their mother criticizing young Aiden's inability to protect his sister. The memory highlights their mother's belief that Lila was always the one protecting Aiden. With a sudden loud bang, the Countess slams her hands on the dining table in anger. The mother warns that Lila is highly likely to manifest her own powerful abilities. She explains the common tendency of siblings manifesting matching abilities as espers or guides. Layla clutches her chest in sheer panic, internally screaming that Aiden has completely lost his mind. With a swift motion, the mother raises her hand to silence further arguments. Layla suddenly declares she will fulfill the path her brother abandoned to satisfy their family's expectations. Relieved by Lila's compliance, the blonde countess pulls her daughter into a warm embrace. Aiden desperately begs Lila to accompany him, but she reminds him of her ordinary status. Aiden desperately promises to secure special permission, but Lila firmly rejects his proposal. Aiden stands alone in a vast dark expanse, feeling utterly isolated by her rejection. Layla resolutely turns away from him, steadfastly refusing to look back. She quietly appeals to Aiden to respect her choice and let her go. Aiden stands in defeated, heavy silence, his hands hanging limply at his sides. The Countess instructs Aiden to rest before heading to the academy with Prince Valerian. Aiden threatens to skip the academy, but Valerian calmly cuts in, calling his defiance problematic. Valerian sternly reminds Aiden that he is here to escort him and prevent any backsliding. Aiden attempts to protest, but Valerian ignores him to speak directly to the Count. Valerian rests his chin on his hand, preparing to ask a calculated, serious question. The elegant gold details on Valerian's pristine uniform gleam under the dining room lights. With a light tap on the table, the Count calmly permits the prince to speak. Valerian notes the Fashion family's incredibly long history of being unrelated to espers and guides. He wonders why they aren't focusing all of their attention on Aiden's rare manifestation. Valerian points out that the parents haven't even inquired about their son's ability grade. Both parents freeze in stunned, sweating silence, completely caught off guard by his sharp observation. Valerian calmly inquires if his direct observation has somehow offended the Count. Layla recalls that in the novel's original plot, Valerian was a naturally born, highly powerful esper. Valerian fixes them with a calm, heavy gaze, waiting patiently for their response. The Count apologizes to the prince, but admits he distrusts all espers and guides. Valerian merely smiles, completely unfazed and amused by the Count's blunt declaration of hostility. Valerian promises that the Empire will provide appropriate compensation to their family for Aiden. The Count firmly rejects the offer, refusing to accept any money for his son's life. A loud slam sounds as the Count screams in a fit of rage. The spacious dining room falls into a heavy, suffocating silence after the Count's sudden outburst. Recognizing the offense, Valerian politely apologizes to the Count for his insensitive oversight. The Count curtly accepts the apology, admitting they were never meant to agree. Valerian decides to accept their hospitality for a few days before leaving with Aiden. Aiden glares off to the side, deeply resentful of the decisions made for him. Layla sighs with immense relief, her shoulders relaxing after the tense situation. Layla suddenly freezes in surprise as something catches her attention. Valerian suggests that it would be best for Lila to accompany them to the capital, agreeing with Aiden's earlier proposal. He points out that the scheduled examination time is approaching anyway. A sudden wave of hesitation sweeps through the room as the tense conversation pauses. Layla envisions a baby wrapped in a blanket surrounded by bright yellow flowers. She recalls growing up as a young, innocent girl in the mansion. Layla snaps back to reality, looking deeply troubled by the sudden turn of events. Valerian acknowledges the situation calmly, framed by a bed of blue roses. Layla stands tense and overwhelmed, surrounded by vibrant red roses. Valerian looks back at Lila from across the elegant, sunlit dining room. The dining hall falls into a heavy, dramatic silence as the tension between everyone reaches a boiling point. Layla is shocked that Valerian is dragging her into this, realizing she shouldn't underestimate him. A loud clattering sounds as the silverware begins to vibrate with a mysterious blue light, proving his protagonist status. Her attention is taken by a sudden whoosh as the dining utensils begin to float in the air. Layla stares in absolute disbelief at the display of powerful telekinetic ability. A sudden, intense pressure fills the room as the floating objects surge with energy. Valerian remains perfectly composed as silverware hovers dangerously in the air around him. Valerian looks on with a calm, analytical gaze, entirely unfazed by his own display of power. The black-haired count stands firm, glaring at the display of Esper power. His cold blue eyes narrow as he prepares to address the prince's actions. The count sternly warns Valerian not to threaten Lila with his words. The father fiercely shouts at Aiden to stop his dangerous display of power immediately. Valerian calmly explains that he is merely performing his duty, stating that all manifestees must report to the Imperial Agency. Aiden tightly clenches his fist in fury as Valerian points out that even his sister is not exempt. With a sudden grab, Aiden aggressively snatches Valerian by the collar of his uniform. Aiden furiously shouts that this is family business, but Valerian coldly tells him to separate public duties from private matters. Valerian looks down at Aiden with a calm, condescending expression. Aiden grinds his teeth in silence, unable to find a retort. Valerian gently removes Aiden's hand, warning him not to act childishly if he wants to avoid suspicion. Valerian walks away, leaving a mess of broken dishes and scattered cutlery on the floor. Layla stands frozen in shock, completely overwhelmed by the explosive confrontation. A hand wrapped tightly in white bandages is shown, bearing the marks of a painful injury. The blonde mother gently holds her daughter's injured hand, her expression filled with concern. Mother sighs in relief that the flying glass shards didn't cause a more severe facial injury.
She squeezes Lila's hand gently, trying to offer comfort and security.
She reassures her daughter that it is highly unlikely they would both manifest as espers. Layla looks up in quiet contemplation, processing her mother's reassuring words. Her mother suddenly inquires if she has been diligently taking the prescribed medicine. Layla quickly and nervously lies, confirming she has been taking it as instructed. Her mother notes that her supply must be running low and suggests replenishing it soon. The elegant blonde countess tells her to wait as she prepares to fetch more medicine. She exits the grand bedchamber, closing the towering golden doors behind her. Once alone, Lila's expression shifts into a deep, calculating frown. She turns her gaze away, her long blonde hair cascading down her shoulders. Layla reminds herself that she and Aiden are not biological siblings, a secret the parents desperately hid. She recalls how the original story detailed the profound isolation Lila felt growing up under their secretive guardianship. She realizes their silence was never out of genuine maternal or paternal love. A nagging thought wonders what hidden motive lies behind their extreme secrecy. Layla exhales a quiet sigh, determined to uncover the truth of her adoption. Layla stands quietly in a room, surrounded by a soft, sparkling golden light. Surprised by the knock, Lila politely invites her mother to enter the room. Hearing a voice outside questioning the knocking, Lila hesitates and remains completely silent. With a slow, heavy creak, the grand golden door begins to open. Layla gasps in surprise as she looks at the person entering her room. Prince Valerian stands at the entrance, calmly noting that she was indeed inside. Layla freezes in sheer shock, sweating nervously at the prince's unexpected presence. Valerian apologizes for his rude behavior earlier, leaving Lila utterly stunned by his words. Valerian gazes down with a softened expression as he approaches the young lady. Valerian watches her with a calm, intent gaze, waiting for her reaction. Layla nervously brushes off his apology, reassuring him that misunderstandings are normal. Layla waves her hands frantically in embarrassment, trying to downplay the awkward situation. Valerian asks to hold her hand, prompting Lila to question his sudden request. With a sudden touch, Valerian gently takes hold of her bandaged hand. Valerian pulls Layla close to him, surrounded by a sudden bloom of red roses. A deeply blushing Layla stammers out a protest as she is held close. Layla desperately insists to the prince that she is absolutely not a guide. Valerian leans in extremely close, searching her eyes for any sign of truth. Valerian narrows his sharp green eyes, analyzing her reaction with deep suspicion. Valerian directly questions whether she is truly telling the truth about not being a guide. Valerian firmly squeezes her bandaged hand, testing her reaction with a tight grip. Layla winces and looks up in shock as his grip tightens on her injury. Valerian registers something unexpected, his expression turning into one of silent confusion. The blonde countess enters the grand hallway, looking regal and intensely serious. The countess grips her elegant gown tightly as she confronts the situation. The Countess firmly calls Lila to her side, interrupting the intimate moment. Layla gasps in relief and immediately prepares to obey her mother's command. Layla turns her back on the prince and quickly moves toward her mother. The Countess sternly declares that she will not tolerate anyone handling her daughter so carelessly. The protective mother steps forward, completely shielding Lila from the prince's reach. Countess glares at the prince, her expression filled with cold indignation. Valerian calmly defends his actions, explaining he was only testing her guiding presence. Squeezing a pouch in her hand, the Countess sharply rejects his explanation. With a cold smile, the Countess criticizes his reliance on brute force. While Lila seeks comfort beside her mother, Valerian remains completely silent and thoughtful. The Countess directly challenges Valerian, asking if this behavior reflects his true ideals. Valerian absorbs her harsh criticism in heavy silence, unable to immediately counter her. Valerian humbly admits his mistake and acknowledges that her harsh words are entirely correct. In a shocking display of humility, Prince Valerian drops to one knee. Looking up with a solemn expression, Valerian openly admits to hurting the young lady. Valerian lowers his hand, preparing to accept whatever judgment the Countess delivers. Valerian stands before them, the tense atmosphere between the three reaching a peak. As the prince walks past her, Lila flinches in silent apprehension of his gaze. Valerian delivers a parting warning, stating he will not act without absolute certainty. Valerian walks away down the grand, echoing corridor, leaving the mother and daughter alone. Layla stares after his retreating figure, completely stunned by his intense words. Wearing a simple black dress, Lila walks down the hallway with a heavy heart. Layla walks on in silent reflection, her mind consumed by the day's stressful events. A sudden, loud bang echoes as someone furiously demands attention at the door. Black-haired youth opens the door with a tense, worried look on his face. Layla asks if she can enter Aiden's room, wanting to have an important discussion. Aiden nervously allows her in, his cheeks flushing as he welcomes her inside. Standing before him, Lila announces she has several direct questions to ask him. She stands quietly in her elegant dress, her posture radiating a tense, nervous energy. Layla turns her sharp gaze toward him, narrowing her purple eyes with absolute determination. Aiden cautiously asks if this is the specific matter she wished to discuss. Layla directly commands her brother to tell her the absolute truth about his past. Aiden reveals that a high-grade guide previously assisted him at the academy despite poor compatibility. Layla questions why their matching rate would be low if the guide was truly high-grade. Aiden explains the guide was male and highly reluctant to engage in direct contact. Aiden explains that the guide was eventually reported to the imperial family and arrested. Layla inquires if he was unable to find another guide after his friend's arrest. Aiden explains that his deteriorating health eventually led to an accidental public display of power. Aiden looks away in deep sorrow, his expression clouded by the weight of past regrets. Layla asks why Archduke Astolf and Prince Valerian followed him back to their estate. Aiden admits he requested Lila's company, prompting a shock of anger from her. Grabbing her dress tightly, Layla complains she's now forced to undergo imperial testing. Covering his face, Aiden confesses his emotions become entirely uncontrollable when thinking of her. Layla stares at her brother in absolute wide-eyed shock at his sudden emotional confession. Layla laments that her brother's intense, protective behavior is driving her completely crazy. Layla clutches her hair in deep frustration, a heavy sigh escaping her lips. Aiden stands quietly before her, his downcast eyes showing his regret and silent sorrow. Layla rationalizes that she was scheduled for imperial testing this year regardless of circumstances. She gently strokes her long blonde hair, surrounded by a vibrant bouquet of red roses. Aiden reacts with mild surprise before Lila firmly decides to put the matter behind them. Looking at her glowing book, Lila recalls that her character manifests as a guide at 17. Layla resolves to complete the imperial test as quickly as possible and return home. A soft, nervous groan escapes Lila as she prepares to face the stressful upcoming examination. Outside the Grand Palace, Aiden tightly holds Lila's hand as they meet Prince Valerian. Aiden gazes down with a serious expression, keeping his protective grip on her hand. He squeezes her hand firmly, conveying a silent promise of absolute safety and security. Aiden directly addresses Valerian, explaining his motivations for bringing his sister along. Layla stands quietly in her elegant dress, observing the tense standoff between the two men. Aiden maintains a firm, protective hold on Lila's hand as the conversation intensifies. The sequence pauses briefly to show the elegant production credits for the manhwa series. Valerian reminds them of his firm vow never to act without absolute, undeniable certainty. The prince directly voices his persistent, strong suspicion that Lila is indeed a guide. Aiden glares at him coldly, highly displeased by the prince's probing words and intentions. Aiden continues to grip Lila's hand tightly, asserting his protective stance over his sister. The siblings stand closely together, presenting a united front against the blonde prince's gaze. Valerian gazes back at them with a solemn, calculating expression beneath the bright sky. The prince remains silently thoughtful, carefully assessing the situation and their defiant reaction. Valerian slowly releases his grip, calmly admitting that his suspicions were entirely incorrect. A close-up view highlights the intricate golden embroidery detailing the collar of his uniform. Valerian steals a quick, suspicious glance back at Lila as he steps away. Aiden keeps a sharp, warning gaze fixed on the prince to ensure his compliance. Placing a hand over her chest, Lila listens as Valerian begins to apologize. Valerian promises to provide proper compensation and vows to behave more cautiously in the future. Layla raises her hand and directly refuses his offer with a cold, firm response. Layla directly tells Valerian that she finds his repeated rude behavior highly unpleasant and frightening. The dark-haired nobleman adjusts his high collar while staring forward with a serious gaze. The dark-haired officer promises Lila that there will be no further trouble caused for her family. Layla watches in silent concern as the dark-haired officer turns and walks past her. Orion runs up to Lila, frantically asking why he can no longer sense her guiding energy. A bright, glowing pink symbol illuminates Lila's bare shoulder beneath her elegant dress. Soft, papery rustling sounds as she tightly holds a small red pill. Orion and Lila walk together down the Grand Palace path under the bright blue sky. Orion instructs Lila to hide securely at the checkpoint while he retrieves her confirmation certificate. Layla pauses behind Orion, clutching her chest with a nervous and worried expression. Letting out a soft, nervous sigh, Lila places the small red pill in her mouth. The narration confirms the medicine she took was specifically designed to conceal her guiding presence. Layla stands silently in her elegant gown, her expression filled with quiet, heavy tension. A sudden, frantic shout echoing across the grounds calls out Lila's name. With a sudden sharp start, Lila flinches as the loud voice catches her off guard. Aiden stands before them, his intense gaze radiating severe anger and protective concern. A startled, comical look crosses Layla's face as she quickly shouts her brother's name. Aiden angrily confronts Orion, demanding to know why he is ignoring warnings to stay away from Lila.
Layla frantically reaches out, desperately trying to explain that Orion was only trying to assist her.
A sudden heavy rustle sounds as Aiden tightly grabs hold of Orion's white uniform. Aiden furiously demands to know how many times he must warn Orion to stop causing Lila suffering. Aiden physically restrains Orion while Lila calls out to him in absolute panic. Orion maintains a calm, completely unfazed expression, even as Aiden aggressively holds his collar. With a sharp squeeze, Aiden glares with intense warning irritation down at the blonde boy. Orion warns that his patience has run out, prompting Aiden to aggressively challenge what he intends to do about it. A sudden sharp crackle of bright blue electricity sparks violently between the two men. A powerful burst of wind blows Aiden backward as Orion releases a surge of magical energy. Aiden grunts in pain as he lands heavily, while Lila and Orion watch from a distance. Orion coldly reminds Aiden that he had given him a clear warning beforehand. Aiden mutters an angry, resentful curse under his breath as he recovers. Layla raises her voice in frustration, commanding her brother to stop his aggressive behavior. Layla sternly warns Aiden that Orion cannot be treated carelessly, hinting at his crucial help. Aiden remains silent and tense, a bead of nervous sweat rolling down his cheek. Layla tightly grips her dress and reveals that Prince Valerian had almost taken her away. Layla apologizes for her brother's sensitivity due to the Imperial Academy, while Orion kindly shifts the blame to himself. Layla asks Orion if he has truly unchanged and wonders if he is not angry with her. Layla beams a bright, warm smile that instantly dispels the lingering tension of the argument. Aiden turns his back on them and walks away with a deeply annoyed, defeated posture. Orion blushes slightly, a gentle and soft smile gracing his face as he looks at her. Orion asks if she stopped writing letters because of his lack of replies, wondering if she was hurt. Layla flusteredly denies waiting while Orion feels overwhelmed with intense happiness in his heart. Orion reflects on how incredibly joyful it is to know that she thought of him even slightly. Orion flashes a warm, handsome smile, beautifully framed by a lush cluster of blue roses. Layla gazes back at him with soft, wide eyes, surrounded by a vibrant border of sunflowers. Aiden loudly interrupts the sweet moment, telling Lila that her mother is actively searching for her. Layla questions why Aiden only mentioned her mother now, preparing to head back before Orion stops her. Orion confesses that he stopped writing because his letters kept getting returned, making him feel small. Orion looks down at her with a gentle, soft gaze as he pauses the conversation. Orion admits that seeing her again makes him greedy, promising to resume writing to her. Orion offers a quiet, affectionate smile as he prepares to bid her farewell. With an elegant rustle, Orion turns around and walks away, his white cloak flowing gracefully.
Orion turns around to wave a gentle goodbye into the bright sky.
Layla and Aiden stand together on the cobblestone path, watching him depart. Layla calls out Orion's name with a look of quiet concern on her face. Orion continues walking down the quiet street, raising his hand in farewell. A quiet thought wonders if it is because they have not met in such a long time. Orion waves his gloved hand one last time as he walks away. Layla and Aiden gaze silently after the departing boy beneath the blue sky. She wonders silently if her strange feelings are due to the long time since their last meeting. Orion's white cape sways as he continues his quiet walk down the path. Looking at the departing boy, she reflects on how much taller he seems to have grown. The sun shines brightly over the beautiful towers and domes of the sea. Aiden and Lila walk side by side along the scenic stone bridge. Layla walks forward in deep thought, her expression turning serious and resolute. Aiden glances back with irritation, muttering about how persistent Orion is. A close view of Layla's beautiful, determined purple eye capturing her focus. The siblings continue walking away together, presenting a united, elegant front. As a carriage arrives, Lila waves enthusiastically and happily calls out to her mother. Her elegant mother steps down gracefully from the beautifully decorated carriage. Layla runs forward with pure joy, lifting the hem of her dress. Layla wraps her arms tightly around her mother in a warm, loving hug. Her mother hugs her back with a gentle, slightly pensive expression. Layla remains quiet as she looks up, lost in her own thoughts. Aiden teasingly complains to his mother about her apparent lack of interest in him. His mother quickly and nervously denies his claim with an awkward smile. Aiden scratches his head with a bright, charming smile of amusement. The discussion details how rare and impressive it is to achieve an A grade right from the start. A close-up highlights her mother's soft, pleased smile during the conversation. The narration celebrates the incredible honor that an A grade brings to the family name. Her mother turns her attention to Layla, asking about her own test results. Layla reveals with a sheepish explanation that she was deemed an ordinary person. Layla offers a sheepish, nervous smile as she shares the news. Her mother reacts with immense relief, calling the ordinary result absolutely wonderful. Mother places a reassuring hand on Layla's shoulder, smiling warmly at her. Aiden watches them in silence, his expression unreadable and solemn. They walk toward the waiting carriage under the clear afternoon sky. Layla sits inside the carriage, gazing out the window in deep thought. She tightly clutches her elegant dress as she prepares for the jury. Aiden warmly advises her to write immediately if anything happens and to stay health. Layla glances down with a soft, quiet smile touching her lips. She gently warns him to stay safe and avoid any dangerous situations. Layla turns her head in surprise as she listens to his words. A close-up shows Aiden's face as a gentle smile graces his lips. Aiden stands silently as the carriage begins to roll away down the path. Aiden watches the departing carriage with a serious and protective gaze. Layla sits quietly inside, looking ahead as the carriage moves forward. She reflects on her destination, noting it is a national academy with no espers. Layla stares forward with determined purple eyes, ready for her next chapter. A caption screen marks the transition to 3 months later in Ain Empire. Scene shifts to a grand sunlit view of the bustling imperial city. A spectacular white-towered palace stands proudly behind a beautiful cascading fountain. A pale hand reaches out and gently touches the spine of a book on the shelf. Layla's classmate yawns lazily while asking if she has heard the latest rumor around school. Layla reaches up to a high shelf to retrieve a book from the grand library. Her slender hand carefully slides a heavy brown volume out from the library bookshelf. Her classmate remarks with disgust about a senior who manifested as an esper and was expelled. Layla stands quietly in her dark academy uniform, facing away as she listens to her friend. Turning around with a soft rustle, Layla clutches the book tightly to her chest with a worried expression. The two girls walk together down the aisle of the massive, sunlit Imperial Academy library. Layla expresses her sympathy, suggesting that the expelled senior must have been terrified during the ordeal. Her classmate speculates that the senior was immediately cast out with nothing upon his manifestation. A hand quietly slides onto the polished wooden desk as the conversation continues. An illustration depicts the agonizing danger of an esper losing control and going completely berserk. The classmate reasons that immediate expulsion is the standard protocol for everyone's safety. A lone boy is shown leaving the academy gates on foot, carrying all of his luggage. Layla looks down in quiet contemplation, her purple eyes filled with deep sympathy. A pale hand slowly slides across the wooden desk toward Lila's book. Startled by the sudden movement, Lila quickly turns her head to see who is approached. A smooth, cheerful voice suddenly greets Lila and compliments her enduring beauty today. Layla gasps in surprise as she recognizes the tall, white-haired boy standing closely beside her. Her classmate abruptly stands up, frantically making an excuse to leave them alone. With a hasty scurry, her classmate quickly runs away, leaving Lila behind. The white-haired boy asks why Lila's friend, Rowan Durman, always avoids him. Layla looks back at him nervously, pointing out that everyone avoids his intimidating presence. The boy playfully asks if he should bully him next, while Lila questions his methods. He taps the table, threatening to keep bullying Rowan unless Lila becomes his poetry lecture partner. Layla glares at him with intense irritation, clearly displeased by his manipulative behavior. The white-haired boy maintains a cheerful, mocking grin as he looks down at her. He lets out a soft, mocking chuckle, enjoying her frustrated reaction. A text bubble conveys his warning to Lila that his persistent behavior is fueled by hatred. He leans down closer, raising his hand toward her face with a cold, menacing smile. The credits page marks the transition in the story sequence. A menacing text bubble warns Lila not to mistake his attention for affection. He slowly slides his hand closer to her, his movements smooth and deliberate. Layla watches his approaching hand with a tense, highly alert expression. He smiles down at her, the text confirming his identity as Evan Olivet. A terrifying memory flashes of Evan covered in blood, smiling with absolute madness. A thud echoes in her mind, recalling Evan brutally beating a student on the floor. Evan's clenched fist drips with blood during the violent assault. Layla sweats nervously as she recalls the chilling reality of his violent nature. A tense silence falls over the library as the students continue their quiet study. Evan lets out a creepy, low snicker as he leans closer to her. Layla glances sideways with deep apprehension as his dark shadow looms over her. He offers a warm, seemingly gentle smile that does not reach his cold eyes. Placing his hand on her chair, he mockingly asks if she truly believed he liked her. Leaning in dangerously close, he tells her that even the thought of liking her is absurd. His expression turns chillingly dark and vacant as he stares down at her. His fingers grip her chair with a sharp squeeze, confessing that the idea gives him chills.
He slowly releases his grip, his hands sliding away with a quiet rustle. Layla flinches with a sharp start, her eyes wide with shock and fear. Evan stands tall and sighs with cold indifference as Lila looks up in silent terror. Evan mockingly asks if his presence truly gives her chills, his smile cold and vacuous. Layla stays silent, her tense profile highlighted against the backdrop of the quiet library shelves. With a cold expression, Evan mutters that he feels the same way about her. Turning away, Evan dismisses her by telling her to prepare well for their next lecture. Evan runs his hand through his white hair as he walks away through the cram library. Layla watches him depart with a troubled expression, her purple eyes filled with deep unease. A soft pitter-patter sounds as Lila runs quickly down the polished academy hallway. The narration explains that adulthood begins at 18 and 8, making formal education less prioritized. With a sudden click, Lila pushes open the grand classroom doors, letting bright light spill inside. Narration explains that children receive tutoring young, and by age 15, their paths diverge. Layla catches a breath in relief, whispering that she almost ran late for class. The instructor lectures that students only enter the academy if they are genuinely interested in academics. The Esper Guide Specialized Academy recently lowered its age entry limit. Layla takes notes as narration reveals this change was to accommodate children who manifested powers early. Two students engage in a fast-paced fencing duel inside the academy's sunlit training hall. Wiping her brow, Lila reflects that the academy has essentially become its own closed society. A slender hand reaches out and firmly grasps a dark, polished tumbler on the counter. Rowan offers a warm, cheerful smile as she hands the drink over to her friend. Layla expresses her gratitude as she takes the drink from Rowan's outstretched hand. Layla reflects on her social standing, noting she is considered lower class due to enrolling late. Rowan hesitantly calls Lila's name, prompting Lila to glance back in silent curiosity. Rowan nervously delivers Evan's message, while Lila notices her distress and asks if she was crying. Layla demands to know if Evan bullied her again, but Rowan remains silent and evasive. Fidgeting nervously, Rowan stammers that she was not bullied, but was simply terrified of him. Tears well up in Rowan's green eyes as she struggles to hold back her fear. Layla's expression turns chillingly solemn, her eyes hardening with protective anger for her friend. With a solid tap, Lila immediately sets off down the corridor with determined strides. Rowan frantically calls out after Lila as she watches her friend march away in anger. Layla marches resolutely down the sunlit hall, ignoring the concerned calls of her friend. Her jaw tightens as she prepares herself mentally for the impending confrontation with Evan. Clenched tightly, Lila reflects that confronting Evan is an issue she must face eventually. Layla slams the storage room door open and fiercely demands Evan all of Et's attention. Standing inside the dimly lit room, Lila shouts for Evan to stop hiding and show himself. Layla gasps in sudden surprise as she spots a pair of legs resting on the floor. Layla sternly warns Evan that she specifically told him never to touch Rowan again. Evan sits slumped against the wall, breathing heavily with a disheveled uniform and sweat-drenched face. Layla demands to know if he can hear her, asking what kind of stunt he is pulling. Looking up with a weak, sweating smile, Evan remarks in soft surprise that she actually came. Layla flinches back slightly, her surprise evident as she registers his highly unusual weakened state. Evan comments that while it is unfortunate she views him as trash, she still came to him. Layla defensively retorts that she did not come willingly, reminding him that he threatened her first. Layla quickly brushes past her defense, worriedly asking what is wrong and if he is sick. Evan drops his head in exhaustion, heavy sweat dripping from his chin onto his collar. With a sudden rustle, Evan forces himself to stand up straight, towering over Layla once more. Layla urges him to go to the infirmary instead of hiding in a dusty storage room. A heavy tap echoes as Evan takes a deliberate, unstable step closer to her. Reaching his hand toward her face, Evan quietly explains that his state is due to lacking guiding. Leaning in dangerously close, Evan tells her not to be scared, claiming he only wanted to see her before he dies. Whispering intimately close, Evan softly says her name as he gazes directly into her eyes. The sun shines brightly over the Imperial Academy spires as a quiet tension lingers. Evan tries to reassure Lila by downplaying his low power rank to ease her fear. Layla rejects his reassurance, asserting his danger of going berserk and insisting she must notify the professors immediately. Evan grimly concludes that her warning means she intends to have him expelled by the administration. Layla nervously clenches her hands together in a silent display of anxious resolve. Layla helplessly explains that since she is not a guide, her only option is to call the professors for help. Evan bitterly accuses her of being far more heartless than she appears. Evan bitterly remarks that everyone merely pretends to fear his intimidating reputation. A memory of judgmental classmates highlights the isolating hostility he faced from peers. Layla questions why he concealed his status and enrolled in a normal academy instead of an Esper facility. Evan denies concealing his truth, explaining he never desired to attend this school before pointing to the rumors surrounding him. The narration reveals the sad rumor that he is an abandoned prince left entirely without parental affection. Young Evan stands completely alone as his parents coldly walk away, leaving him behind. Layla reacts with silent shock and empathy as the sad reality of his passing, too. Evan flatly confirms the truth of the rumor, stating he was discarded at the academy. A quiet moment passes in the tension-filled room as the heavy silence hangs between them. A soft rustling sound accompanies Evan gently running his fingers through her long golden hair. Layla is left bewildered as Evan suddenly turns around and walks away from her. Layla worriedly calls after him, demanding to know where he thinks he can go while so weak. Evan dramatically claims he will go off to die peacefully by himself, leaving Lila utterly flabbergasted. Evan weakly states that seeing her face was sufficient comfort before resolving to leave.
Layla bites her lip in frustration, struggling to make a difficult decision.
Layla frantically calls out to Evan, questioning if he understands the recklessness of his actions. Moving quickly, Lila reaches out and firmly grabs his hand to stop his departure. Evan asks if she is acting out of pity, but Lila firmly counters that she is trying to prevent others from getting hurt based on what she has witnessed. Layla warns that regardless of his rank, his current unstable state makes him an incredibly dangerous threat. Evan mockingly asks if she wants to perish alongside him, causing Lila to hesitate.
Evan looks down with a deeply fatigued, sorrowful gaze as sweat drips down his pale face.
Layla steals her resolve, preparing to make a surprising proposal to him. A tight clasp joins their hands together as she makes her final decision.
With a sudden tug, Lila pulls him closer, demanding he come to her.
Layla embraces Evan warmly, engulfed by a sudden flurry of romantic red roses.
Blushing deeply, Layla urgently proposes that they live together to manage his condition.
Evan is left completely speechless, staring at her in stunned silence. A heavy blush creeps onto Evan's face as he asks her to repeat her astonishing proposal. Layla tells him to remain quiet and simply stay close as her guiding aura begins to flow. A quiet, firm sound echoes as Evan tightly closes his mouth in overwhelming emotion. With a tight embrace, Evan wraps his arms around her, squeezing her close. Evan whispers that her intense guiding makes him feel as though he is melting away. The scene transitions to the sunlit courtyard of the Grand Imperial Academy. Layla presents a document to Evan, inviting him to review it and negotiate any necessary adjustments. Evan asks in confusion as he takes the piece of paper from her. Layla explains that the document is quite obviously an official employment contract. Layla details the non-contact guiding schedule, which Evan protests as insufficient, but she maintains it is fair given his low rank. Evan claims complete confusion over her terms, but Layla dismisses his complaints and tells him to keep reading. The contract details a strict privacy clause ending upon graduation, prompting Evan to ask why personal questions are forbidden.
Layla defensively retorts by asking if he has ever heard of basic privacy protection.
Evan questions why such extreme privacy measures would even be necessary between them. Layla angrily snaps at his constant complaining, causing a sweating Evan to quickly back down and praise her meticulous writing. Layla sighs and emphasizes the importance of caution, stating they are business partners who should avoid personal involvement. Evan reluctantly concedes, but immediately points out a specific section of the contract he wishes to alter, surprising Layla. Article 5 of the contract specifies a compensation of 20 gold coins per guiding session. Layla argues she refuses to lose money, but Evan counters by demanding to make it 50. Evan hands back the paper, explaining his previous guide received 40 gold coins per session. Layla is taken aback by this revelation, shocked to learn he already had a guide. Evan smiles warmly, pointing out that surviving at the academy without a guide is impossible. Layla suggests tearing up the contract, but Evan reveals his previous guides either died or fled. Layla's eyes widen in absolute horror as the grim fate of his guide sinks in. Gently reaching his hand forward, Evan softly speaks her name to bring her back to reality. He takes her hand, arguing they cannot avoid each other post-graduation due to their families. Layla sharply yanks her hand back, declaring that no contact means absolutely no contact. She firmly asserts her desire to remain entirely uninvolved with him once they graduate. Evan absorbs her harsh words in pensive silence as the heavy atmosphere lingers. Layla tightens her grip, confessing her deep hatred for espers drove her to this academy. She flashes a bright, businesslike smile, which Evan meets with a knowing, gentle grin. The sun-drenched spires of the Grand Academy stand proud against the bright blue sky. Evan smirks in amusement, clearly intrigued by her fiery personality and strict boundaries. Layla looks away nervously, sweating under his intense and relentless gaze. Brushing his hair back, Evan playfully asks what other rules she intends to enforce. Leaning close, Evan gently holds her wrist and insists they make eye contact when speaking. Shrugging off his closeness, Layla smugly reminds him of the massive penalty for contract breach. Evan's playful demeanor vanishes as he suddenly asks about the specific grade of her guiding. Layla admits she is unsure, explaining she had not manifested when she was tested. Evan doubts her, pointing out the impossibility of mastering guiding so perfectly in 1 year. Layla winks playfully and pulls down her eyelid, teasingly declaring her method's a secret. Evan's inner thoughts reveal that her mysterious nature is rapidly driving up her favorability. Smiling warmly, Evan softly retorts that he is not foolish enough to be tricked. Layla walks away inside the academy hall, dismissively telling him to stop bothering her. Evan trails after her, playfully chanting her name, while she resolutely ignores him. Sitting in the quiet lecture hall, Layla folds her arms in deep exhaustion. The brown-haired professor suddenly approaches, calling Layla's name and snapping her back to reality. Placing her hand on the desk, the professor gently asks if her studies are overwhelming her. While Layla exhaustedly reflects on her drained energy, the professor questions her interest in academics. Layla blinks in utter confusion, caught off guard by the professor's blunt inquiry. The professor offers to recommend her as a teaching assistant, leaving Layla highly uncertain. Layla politely declines to focus on her studies, but the professor urges her to reconsider. Professor then curiously asks if Lila truly intends to partner with Evan in class. An expansive view of the majestic Imperial Academy highlights the grandeur of their school grounds. Walking together outside, Rowan proudly shares that multiple professors requested Lila as an assistant. Layla smiles with absolute delight, thoroughly enjoying the warm praise from her teachers. She basks in the rare moment of academic validation, her cheeks flushing with happiness. Layla smugly claims she has studied enough, prompting Rowan to ask why she met the professor. Layla casually confesses she requested Evan as her poetry class partner, shocking her friend. Both girls instantly freeze in their tracks as a sudden, tense silence falls over them. Rowan turns around in absolute panic, frantically asking if Evan threatened or hit her. Sweating nervously, Lila quickly dismisses the wild accusation and tries to reassure her. Rowan violently grabs Lila's collar in disbelief, demanding to know why she chose him. Rowan urges Lila to be honest with the poetry professor, who holds immense power. Clutching Layla's shirt tightly, Rowan pleads for the truth while Lila insists she is fine. Across the sunlit lecture hall, Evan quietly watches them from his desk, lost in thought. Layla remains silent, mentally preparing herself for the complicated days ahead with Evan. Layla smiles brightly with absolute confidence, clenching her fist in a determined gesture. Evan smirks back with a confident, knowing gaze as he rests his chin on his hand. Rowan looks absolutely terrified, expressing her fear that Evan looks like a predator eyeing his prey. Layla assumes she seems interesting to him, while Rowan points out her extreme obliviousness. Rowan warns Lila to speak up if Evan bullies her, but Evan interjects that he has never bullied her. Rowan flinches in shock as Evan towers over her with an intimidating, silent glare. Evan looks down with a cold smirk as he watches the girl's reaction. Evan reaches out his hand in an aggressive, demanding gesture. Rowan desperately commands Evan to stop his threatening actions. Layla steps defensively in front of Rowan, staring back at Evan in surprise. Layla asks Evan to stop acting aggressively, while Evan defends his right to react to Rowan's badmouthing. Layla explains Rowan's actions were a misunderstanding and demands Evan direct his anger at her instead. Evan glares intensely at Rowan, who hides fearfully behind Lila's shoulder. Evan remains silent, his expression turning cold and menacing. Rowan frantically yells a loud apology to Senior Evan while begging for forgiveness. Rowan runs away in absolute panic as Lila and Evan watch her go. Layla regrets not adding a contract clause forbidding Evan from getting angry at her friends. Evan complains that Lila only scolds him, questioning if she even considers him a friend. Layla coldly clarifies that she is not his friend, but simply a contractor. Evan places a finger to his lips, playfully gesturing for her to be quiet. Layla angrily whispers, warning him of the consequences if anyone overhears them. Layla blushes deeply and shouts his name in frustration as Evan leans close. Layla threatens to break off all contact permanently if he says anything else unnecessary. Layla firmly demands to know if he has understood her strict warning. Evan silently and submissively nods his head in agreement with her terms. Layla notes his worsening tantrums and realizes he is depleted of guiding once again. Evan suddenly reaches out and grabs her hand with a firm, tight grip. The two walk hand in hand across the Grand Academy courtyard under the sun. Evan maintains a serious, quiet expression as they walk together outside. Layla looks back at him in confusion, asking what he wants now. Evan squeezes her hand tightly, refusing to let go of her grip. They continue walking hand in hand past the massive pillars of the academy. The scene shifts to the quiet, sunlit interior of an empty classroom. Layla stands with her arms open, inviting Evan to come closer. Layla questions if he is embarrassed about the contact guiding he requested. Evan raises his hand to his face, hesitating before her offer. Evan blushes and points out the irony of her allowing contact guiding so easily after arguing about contracts. Layla reacts with a look of sudden surprise in her purple eyes. Evan blushes deeply, holding his hand up to hide his growing embarrassment. Layla playfully offers to switch back to non-contact guiding if he dislikes it. Evan turns his head away, trying to cope with his intense embarrassment. Layla's long golden hair sways as she waits silently for his reaction. With a swift, sudden movement, Evan pins Lila against the library wall. Evan embraces her tightly, muttering that he feels like a whining brat. Layla retorts that she is merely trying to prevent him from causing trouble. Evan holds her close, leaning his face near hers. Layla asks how he depleted his guiding energy so quickly after she fully charged him. Evan explains his guiding levels dropped naturally due to his low grade, then asks if she is curious about his ability. Layla embraces him firmly, flatly stating she has no interest in his grade. Evan looks down in pensive silence as the heavy atmosphere lingers. Layla tells Evan she is not interested in his grade and reminds him of the contract terms. Layla looks closely at Evan, firmly reminding him of her hatred for espers. A mysterious, dark-haired man stands in pensive silence against the bright sunlight. Evan holds Layla close, asking if her highly impressive brother is also an esper. Layla smugly asks Evan if his physical recovery means he is feeling better now. Layla looks up at Evan with a playful and highly confident expression. The quiet, soft tap, her hand gently slides away from his dark coat. Layla declares that she is tired of being closely involved with him like this. Evan watches her walk away with a cold, intense, and pensive glare. Evan warns Lila that her family will certainly dictate her marriage prospect. Layla stands in troubled silence, deeply affected by his warning about her family. Evan explains that her family intends to sell her off to the powerful Olivets. Evan asserts that they can develop many other relationships besides just Esper and Guide. Layla stands alone in the quiet room, heavily burdened by her family's expectations. Layla questions Evan if he remembers her warning about her desperation for a guide. Evan looks back at her in stunned surprise as her words sink in. Layla tearfully tells him that he is the one who ignores her inner feelings. Layla explains her deep dread of being sold off in marriage as a female guide. Layla walks away, bitterly reminding him that he is not the only one suffering. A sudden loud slam echoes through the room as the heavy door shuts. Evan stands completely frozen by the bookshelf, unable to reach out to her. Layla pauses in the grand, sunlit hallway, her heart heavy with silent grief. She looks down at her shoes as she quietly stands in the hallway. An elegant narration asks Layla how she has been faring since their last meeting. Layla stands by the door of her camera holding a mysterious letter. Layla realizes that her maid Rena was completely serious about her secret plans. Layla expresses gratitude that Rena followed her instructions to send an urgent red letter. Layla sits at her desk to discuss a highly classified matter with Rena. Rena asks if Layla has been trying to multiply her funds secretly under another name. Layla gasps in utter shock, demanding to know how Rena discovered her secret. Rena explains she deduced the truth by analyzing the specific finance books Layla reads. Rena lists the specific real estate and commerce subjects Layla has been studying. Rena reveals she has successfully located a perfect candidate to help with her plan. Rena identifies their target as Viscount Tierpolin, a ruined noble company owner. Rena explains how the Polin family fell into financial ruin after losing their Aspers. Layla listens with intense concentration, her sharp purple eye reflecting her deep interest. Rena details that the ruined noble is currently bedridden and heavily in debt. Rena notes the noble's complex personal affairs and his inability to remarry his mistress. A soft rhythmic tap sounds as Layla thoughtfully digests the critical information. Rena explains the money from selling his name will go to his mistress. Layla praises Rena's intelligence and asks what she wants in return. Rena reveals her sole desire is to escape her current life in the county. Rena explains her lack of attachment to the estate after her father's death. Rena stands before her mistress with a hopeful, pleading expression on her face. Layla gazes back at her maid with a gentle and understanding expression. Their hands reach out toward each other to solidify their new secret alliance. Layla agrees to the terms and outlines the secret communication system they will use. Rena smiles with absolute happiness and relief, her eyes closed in gratitude. Layla smiles warmly as she reads the letter, satisfied with their progress. The narrative confirms the trading company's successful expansion and massive incoming winter profits. Layla opens a white letter with a look of quiet tension on her face. She grips the paper tightly as she reads the unsettling message from the letter. Her purple eyes widen with concern as the contents of the letter unfold. The narration box notes that the Countess has been frequently leaving the estate, prompting further investigation into her unusual activities. Layla looks up in surprise, questioning why the Countess would be leaving the estate so frequently. Dangerous monsters rise menacingly near the Grand Academy buildings under a troubled sky. As a group of uniformed Academy students stands outside, the narration notes that the Esper's movements have also become highly unusual. A herald reads an official announcement declaring that the Imperial family will raise the security level. A maid glances back nervously as a dark-haired man consoles a woman by the window. The dark-haired man stands in silent contemplation, his expression serious and resolved. The scene shifts to a quiet, sunlit study filled with stacks of books. Layla gasps softly, a light blush rising on her cheeks from stress. A map of the continent reveals a specific territory highlighted in ominous red. Layla looks back in disbelief, fearing the worst as she begins to piece the clues together. Her hand trembles slightly as she folds the white letter back up. Surrounded by a cascade of blue roses, Layla clutches the letter in shock. Sweat beads on her cheek as she processes the gravity of the situation. At his desk, Orion writes a letter explaining that Burdenin was suddenly designated as a danger zone and he must head there shortly. The white letter is filled with dense handwriting detailing the urgent military situation. Orion smiles softly while continuing to pen his message at the desk. Layla gasps as she reads that Orion is also being sent to the danger zone. She tightly grips the paper, her anxiety over her brother's safety growing. Overwhelmed by the news, Layla collapses onto her bed in complete exhaustion. Lying on her back, Layla sighs deeply as she contemplates her bleak future. She rests silently under the heavy drapes of her grand canopy bed. The scene transitions to the Academy lecture hall where class is in session. Her classmate whispers to Layla, sharing the rumor that espers and guides are being deployed to Burdenin. From her desk, her friend attempts to offer some reassurance to the distracted Layla. Layla stares blankly ahead, completely lost in her own stressful thoughts. As her friend asks if she recalls the border regions of Burdenin where they once snuck out to camp, Layla remains silent. Layla sighs as she agrees with her classmate, despairing over her increasingly bleak future. Her purple eye narrows in sudden shock as a sharp realization strikes her. She glances back over her shoulder with an expression of deep concern. Professor's voice suddenly cuts through her thoughts, causing Layla to gasp in surprise and reply. The professor informs Layla that Evan hasn't attended class for 2 weeks and requests that she visit his dormitory. Standing outside Evan's dormitory, Layla raises her hand to gently knock on the door. Layla takes a deep, anxious breath as she waits in the quiet hallway. Fearing that Evan is on the verge of going berserk, Layla is startled when a voice from inside demands to know who is there. Layla states she came to see Evan, but his roommate informs her that Evan left 2 days ago and hasn't returned. In shocked disbelief, Layla immediately demands to know where Evan went. The roommate explains that Evan keeps to himself and never shares personal details, leaving Layla highly discouraged. When the roommate asks for her identity, Layla quickly replies that she is Evan's poetry literature partner. Layla anxiously inquires if Evan showed any unusual behavior or signs of illness before his sudden disappearance. The roommate recalls how Evan appeared to suffer from a severe headache, keeping his head on his desk all day. Hearing about his suffering, Layla tightly clenches her fist as her anxiety mounts. With a mixture of worry and frustration, Layla demands to know where he thinks he is going in such a terrible state. Evan glances back with a weak, pained expression, whispering that she shouldn't worry because he will just die quietly alone. Layla stands completely stunned, her heart breaking at his tragic and hopeless words. Layla quickly thanks the roommate and turns on her heel, leaving the boy standing there in utter confusion. Her heavy footsteps echo loudly as Layla rushes down the grand hallway to find Evan. With a quiet, soft tap, her hand gently slides away from his dark coat. Layla worries if a supporting character can die so easily while Evan stands in the background. Her shoes make a soft click as she steps down the carpeted stairs. Layla looks down with a deeply troubled and sweating expression. Layla stands completely alone in the pouring rain by a grand garden fountain. Under the gray skies, Layla laments that she never wanted to come to this place. Standing silently in the cold rain, Layla holds back her rising emotions. Gripping her sleeve tightly, Layla desperately hopes that Evan will not die. Under the dark storm clouds, Layla walks away with heavy, determined steps. Her thoughts echo with a singular, desperate vow to somehow find Evan. A hooded rider on horseback surveys a fortress under the gray, rainy sky. A guard reports to Lord Valerian that the waterway construction is successfully complete. The guard looks up in sudden surprise upon noticing an unexpected visitor approaching. The rider lowers his hood to reveal the dark-haired, blue-eyed Lord Valerian. Lord Valerian recognizes the drenched girl walking down the path as Lady Fashienne. Layla stands in the pouring rain, looking back with a stunned, wet face. A brief interlude marks a pause in the journey as the scene shifts. A guard reports to Lord Valerian that the waterway construction has been completed. Layla slowly walks down the rain-soaked dirt path toward the fortress. Layla looks up with wide, anxious eyes as she approaches. The formidable gray stone fortress looms on the cliffside amidst the storm. Prince Astolf greets Layla and asks why she has come all this way. Clenching her hand against her chest, Layla struggles to find her voice. Prince Astolf watches her with a serious, questioning gaze from his horse. A gentle hand reaches out to touch her shoulder in reassurance. Layla asks if they have espers or detection stones to track someone's trace. Trembling with fear, Layla pleads with Prince Astolf to help her find Evan. Prince Astolf looks down at her with a calm and contemplative expression. A soft brush of a hand calms the horse amidst the quiet rain. Prince Astolf gently places his hand on Layla's head, comforting her distress. Smiling softly, Prince Astolf bids Layla to come inside with him. Layla sits shivering by a warm fireplace inside the cozy wooden shelter. Prince Astolf jokingly remarks that she looks like a total beggar right now. Holding a warm mug, Layla gasps softly in embarrassment at his teasing. Layla flinches and defensively insists that she and Evan are not close. Layla claims that Evan is merely her senior and junior classmate. Layla looks down at her cup, feeling the weight of her lie. Prince Astolf asks why she is searching so desperately for someone she isn't close to. Layla nervously explains that she needs her poetry literature partner to avoid failing class. Layla warns that Evan is actually a highly dangerous person. Prince Astolf snaps his fingers to get her full attention. Subtle, knowing smirk plays across Prince Astolf's lips. Prince Astolf demands honest information about Evan's condition if she wants their help. Layla looks away in troubled silence, debating how much to reveal. Layla confesses that Evan hasn't received guiding for 2 weeks and might go berserk. Layla sits silently wrapped in her blanket, the fire crackling before her. Standing up, Layla admits she knows her request is incredibly shameless. Layla begs him to keep Evan's Esper identity a secret to prevent his expulsion. Layla gasps softly as she senses a sudden change in the atmosphere. Prince Astolf stands up and steps closer to her with a serious gaze. Aiden turns his head with a bewildered expression as a question mark floats above him. Aiden stands tall and poised in his elegant white coat on the fortress grounds. Layla looks up with bright eyes, joyfully calling out her brother Aiden's name. Aiden offers a warm, gentle smile as he welcomes his sister. Prince Astolf attempts to reassure Layla about her friend's safety, leaving Aiden completely baffled. Prince Astolf explains that he received an official report on the way about her search. Smirking playfully, Prince Astolf points out that the person Layla is seeking is no mere friend. An ominous portrait reveals Evan Olivet, the missing young master of Marquis Olivet. Aiden grabs Layla's shoulders in deep concern, demanding to know why she is searching for Evan. Prince Astolf smiles knowingly as he watches the siblings interact. Aiden angrily scolds Layla for getting close to Evan while she defensively protests. Prince Astolf turns his head away, his expression suddenly sharpening with serious intent. Prince Astolf announces that they will organize a proper search party and advises Layla to rest. Prince Astolf stands silhouetted against the bright light, ready to take command. Walking out of the tent, Prince Astolf gently tells Lila not to feel burdened. Layla fumes in frustration, muttering about how much she dislikes Prince Astolf's attitude. A cute chibi Aiden grumbles that Prince Astolf never listens to a word he says. Aiden sits beside his sister and promises that servants will bring fresh clothes for her. Layla beams with a grateful smile, thanking her brother for his kindness. Aiden grins teasingly, noting that she only acts sweet when she needs his help. Aiden's expression turns serious as he demands to know how she knew Evan lacked guiding. Layla gasps in surprise, caught completely off guard by his sharp questioning. Layla smiles nervously and finally confesses that she is secretly manifested as a guide. Aiden leaps to his feet in utter shock, demanding to know when this happened. Layla explains she discovered it at last year's checkpoint and that Orion already knew. Aiden grabs her face in comedic disbelief, outraged that Orion knew her secret before him. Layla looks down guiltily, admitting that she kept her powers hidden out of fear. Layla passionately explains that she wants no part in Esper protection or receiving power. Aiden listens in stunned silence, deeply affected by his sister's emotional confession. Layla tightly grips her cloak, her knuckles whitening as her deep anxieties surface. Layla reflects on the shared burdens and pain that connect her to Evan. She explains that she wants to find Evan to assure him he doesn't have to be afraid. Layla gazes out of the tent entrance, watching the cold rain fall on the valley. Aiden looks back at his sister, his face softened by concern and understanding. Surrounded by a beautiful cascade of roses, a pink-haired female knight stands majestically. The story pauses for a production credits page listing the creative staff. The pink-haired knight steps inside the tent facing the surprised siblings. The knight narrows her golden eyes, casting a sharp, analytical glare across the room. Layla freezes in absolute panic, realizing she's in a highly precarious situation. The pink-haired knight stands with an imposing presence that instantly commands the room. Layla swallows hard, trying to maintain her composure under the heavy gaze. Aiden gestures toward the knight, introducing her to his sister as Rose. Aiden looks completely bewildered, demanding to know how Lila already knew Rose's name. Layla laughs nervously, quickly lying that Aiden had mentioned Rose in his letters. Aiden's thoughts swirl in confusion as he tries to recall ever writing such things. Layla politely bows her head, offering a formal greeting to the stern knight. Rose firmly grabs Aiden's shoulder, angrily questioning why he brought a civilian to a dangerous battlefield. Layla stands frozen and sweating, completely overwhelmed by the mounting tension. Rose and Aiden lock eyes in a quiet, intense battle of wills inside the tent. A surge of brilliant blue energy suddenly crackles from an outstretched hand. The narration recalls a tragic future event where Rose sacrifices her life for Lila's personal growth. The narration reflects on how the relationship between the two was actually not bad. A sudden soft poke breaks the silence as a finger taps against a coat. Rose demands respect as an S grade, but Adrian fiercely demands she apologize to his sister. Rose reacts with a mixture of annoyance and frustration during their tense conversation. A loud, urgent shout echoes from the darkness, calling out for Rose and Adrian. An external voice commands them to stop arguing and immediately come outside the tent. Panting heavily, Astolf stands at the entrance, calling for them to witness an urgent development. Layla freezes in surprise, her heart skipping a beat as she hears the commotion. Astolf announces they successfully found the missing young master, shocking everyone inside the tent. With a soft sigh, Astolf explains Evan's dangerous state and declares Rose must guide him first. Rose complains about the task, but Adrian points out she is the only S-grade guide present. Astolf sternly orders Rose to cooperate, reminding her that capturing unregistered espers is their duty. Clicking her tongue in annoyance, Rose mutters a curse under her breath. The trio walks away, leaving a lingering sense of tension in their wake. Layla stands frozen, her wide eyes reflecting deep anxiety about the unfolding search mission. Layla hesitatingly speaks up, trying to voice her lingering concerns to her brother. Clenching her cloak in silence, Layla struggles to contain her rising dread. A gentle hand reaches out and tenderly pats Lila on the head to comfort her. A gentle smile graces the face of the dark-haired prince as he turns away. The sun breaks through the clouds, illuminating the quiet fortress camp. Layla steps back inside the tent, seeking a brief moment of quiet solitude. Holding her delicate brooch, Lila looks forward with a pensive and troubled gaze. Her quiet thoughts are suddenly interrupted as a blond man approaches from behind. A warm, gentle smile appears, bringing a sudden wave of comfort to the scene. A warm cloak is gently draped over Lila's shoulders as a comforting voice speaks. Layla turns her head in surprise, completely caught off guard by the sudden gesture. Orion smiles warmly while warning her about the cold, leaving Lila surprised to see him. Orion confesses he waited since last night just to speak with her without any interruptions. Layla asks if they are still fighting, and Orion notes Adrian's protective jealousy over her. Layla gently hopes they can get along, reminding him they must work together on the battlefield. Layla blushes deeply as Orion leans in close, catching her completely off guard. Smiling warmly, Orion promises Lila he will try his best to get along with Adrian. Turning her blushing face away, Lila shyly stammers that she is not forcing him. A sudden heavy footstep echoes across the ground as someone walks near. Adrian and Rose step out of a glowing magical portal, returning to the camp. Adrian stops abruptly in utter shock as his eyes lock onto a sudden sight. Adrian angrily demands to know what Orion thinks he is doing to his sister. Adrian glares furiously, his voice booming with protective anger over Lila. Orion calmly replies that he was simply offering a friendly greeting to Layla. Orion tells Adrian they only exchanged greetings, urging him not to be mad. Adrian commands Orion to speak later, then asks him to confirm if he guided Evan. Flinching, Orion admits he believed Evan's grade was low, asking why Adrian is asking. Layla looks up with a startled expression as the conversation takes an unexpected turn. Flinching, Adrian wonders why an S-grade guide's abilities are not working on Evan. Frustrated, Rose curses and holds her head in distress as she runs away. A quiet click of annoyance sounds as she struggles with her thoughts. Adrian stands in grim silence, deeply troubled by the bizarre situation with Evan's guiding. Adrian silently questions why the guiding is completely failing despite potential low compatibility. A sudden booming announcement rings out, commanding the attention of everyone in the camp. A loud, echoing announcement startles the camp as a black-haired man stands with his back turned. The black-haired man solemnly announces that from this moment on, they are abandoning the rescue of Evan Olivet. An anxious voice desperately questions what is happening and demands to know the truth. Layla stands frozen in disbelief, clasping her hands tightly as she absorbs the devastating news. A somber voice apologizes to Lady Fashion, delivering a heavy blow to her hopes. Aiden regretfully explains that abandoning Evan is the correct choice given his current dire condition. Aiden reiterates his firm decision that they must abandon the search for Evan Olivet. The formal apology to Lady Fashion is repeated, cementing the reality of their decision. Layla stares in wide-eyed shock, a cold sweat breaking out as her despair deepens. Ryan agrees, noting that the mark below the young master's collarbone was vividly glowing like flames. The speaker reveals that even Rose's guiding failed and warns that Evan seems close to going berserk. Aiden gently touches her hand while urging Lila to give up because there is no hope left. Her hands tense as she passionately demands to know how such a thing could be. Overcome with emotion, Lila fiercely asks how they can simply tell her to give up. Layla covers her face in deep anguish, unable to contain her overwhelming sorrow and frustration. Aiden explains they tried every available method, asking her not to assume they gave up easily. Aiden questions what difference her going would make and orders Orion to evacuate all personnel. Trembling with emotion, Lila tightly clenches her fist as she struggles to find her voice. Aiden continues warning them to move to the perimeter before they get caught in the rampage. A desperate shout pierces the air as someone suddenly declares they can provide the guiding. Layla stands with fierce resolve, her hand pressed to her chest as she makes her declaration. Orion, Aiden, and Rose turn around in utter shock, completely stunned by her sudden declaration. Aiden's expression shifts as he processes his sister's shocking words in quiet disbelief. Aiden stammers in absolute disbelief, frantically questioning what Lila is trying to say. Layla takes a resolute step forward, her expression filled with unwavering determination to help. Layla confidently declares that she will go because she is capable of saving Evan. Frustrated and confused, Rose mutters to herself, demanding to know what is going on. Aiden holds his head in deep distress, completely bewildered as to why Lila would say this. Orion remains in contemplative silence, his focused eyes betraying his deep thoughts on the matter. The elegant details of his uniform catch the light, emphasizing the tense silence. Aiden stands in heavy silence, his sharp gaze reflecting the weight of Lila's secret. Layla waits anxiously, a bead of sweat tracing her cheek as she anticipates his reaction. The narration reveals that before coming, she repeatedly read Rena's letter and thought deeply about it. Layla lies awake, staring blankly as she wrestles with her heavy and complicated thoughts. She questions the point of hiding her guide status when she was possessed as an overspecified female lead. She recalls how she tried to hide her identity to avoid the male leads, pretending not to be a guide. She retrieves a small red and white capsule, her hand steadied despite her inner turmoil. She reflects on how Orion ultimately found out her secret, making contact with the male leads unavoidable. Above all else, she admits the greatest driving force is her turbulent feelings toward Evan. She confesses that she does not know why, but the thought of Evan dying causes her deep distress. Layla stands frozen at the threshold, her expression filled with a sudden wave of sadness. The narration highlights the suffocating emotions that grip her heart whenever she thinks of him. The quiet forest camp stands peaceful under the sky, in stark contrast to her inner turmoil. Layla gazes downward with a quiet, bittersweet smile as she makes her final decision. Rose tilts her head slightly, a subtle, knowing expression crossing her face as she watches. Layla flinches in surprise as a sudden realization or movement catches her off guard. Aiden points out that abandoning young Master Olivet was indeed another option they had considered. Aiden firmly declares that he will not abandon Evan Olivet under any circumstances. An off-screen voice speaks up, politely calling out to Sir Astolf as they walk along. Ryan suggests that it would be best to allow Lady Fashion to do as she wishes. Orion gently places his hand on Lila's shoulder as she looks back in surprise. Aiden sharply rejects Orion's unsolicited input, while Orion politely clarifies that they could try guiding again if Lila is capable of it. A desperate plea reminds the group of their mission to capture unregistered espers, emphasizing that saving Evan is the first priority as time runs out. Layla walks forward into the sunlit forest, determined to find and save Evan. With a low hum, a swirling magical portal ignites within the ancient stone courtyard. A soft step echoes as she crosses through the glowing threshold of the portal. With a bright flash, the group successfully teleports into the ruins of the ancient sanctuary. Layla gasps in sudden shock as she takes in the overwhelming sight before her. Flames of volatile energy creep and surge around Evan's unconscious body lying in the courtyard. Evan lies completely unresponsive, his body enveloped in a dangerous, crackling red aura. An urgent hand reaches out to stop Layla from running blindly into the danger. Ryan suddenly grabs Layla, warning her that going alone is too dangerous and offering to accompany her. Aiden glares in deep annoyance, questioning Orion's motives and demanding to know what he is planning by going with Layla. Orion urgently confesses that he manifested a second secret ability a few years ago that he has not yet disclosed to headquarters, prompting a shocked reaction. Aiden demands to know exactly what this hidden second ability is. Aiden questions Orion in disbelief, asking if he possesses the rare Ignore ability and has two distinct powers. Swallowing hard, Layla realizes that the plot has altered once again, as Orion originally only possessed recovery magic. Orion's hand gently wraps around Layla's, offering her reassurance and warmth. He proposes postponing any further discussion about the details of his hidden ability until later. A tense silence falls between them as Aiden stares back with quiet suspicion. Orion confidently promises to protect Layla using his Ignore ability, urgently instructing Aiden and the others to step back. Aiden grinds his teeth, visibly frustrated by Orion's sudden assertion of control. Steeling himself, Aiden urgently orders his forces to fall back and stand by. Orion tells Layla that he has been training extremely hard, leaving her slightly confused as she looks up at him. Layla praises Orion's efforts, but freezes in silent confusion when he promises to heal her once his grade rises higher. Orion offers a warm, affectionate smile, his cheek slightly flushed as he looks down at her. Hand in hand, they walk resolutely toward the intense crimson light emanating from the center of the ruins. An ominous, destructive red haze rises from the ancient ruins, filling the atmosphere with tension. Evan lies completely unresponsive as the shimmering red flames of his unstable energy intensify. Orion and Layla cautiously step closer to Evan as the blazing trails of red energy surge around them. Orion lets out a pained groan, wondering if Evan is a psychic-type Esper as the heavy aura makes his stomach churn. Layla gazes ahead with deep concern, anxiously questioning whether Evan will be all right. Orion reassures Layla, raising his hands as he prepares to shield her body with his ability. A soft, protective white mist of energy begins to envelop Layla, shielding her from the harmful aura. Protective magic swishes gently around her cloak, sealing her away from the hostile environment. Orion smiles warmly and notes that the protective light will grow stronger as they get closer to Evan. Layla is taken aback by his kindness, offering a shy and hesitant expression of gratitude. Orion casts a sideways glance toward the ruins, wondering why Evan was hiding all the way out at the abandoned throne. The narration explains that the abandoned throne is an ancient royal tomb owned by Berdenin that few people know about. Reflecting on his condition, Layla realizes that walking must have been agonizingly difficult if Evan was on the verge of going berserk. She pityingly visualizes him walking alone in the pouring rain, describing him as an affection-starved loner abandoned by his family. Clasping her hands tightly, Layla stands surrounded by the swirling energy, her expression shadowed by profound sadness. Layla looks out across the ancient royal tomb, reflecting in quiet sorrow on how Evan chose to be completely alone there. With a tight squeeze of her hands, she struggles to comprehend why he would walk 33 kilometers away from the academy in his condition. Quiet mumble drifts into the heavy, smoky air as the realization slowly dawns on her. Layla reveals with sudden dread that Evan was planning to die, leaving Orion completely stunned by the dark truth. With rapid footsteps, she rushes through the blazing light toward where Evan lies. Reaching him, Layla drops to her knees beside Evan's side with a desperate shout of his name. She leans over his prone body in tense silence, her violet eyes wide with dread as she assesses his condition. Her quiet, desperate plea echoes in the dark haze, begging Evan to open his eyes. Orion urgently shouts to Layla, instructing her to check underneath Evan's collar. Her hand reaches down to pull aside his collar, revealing his bare collarbone. An intricate red crest glows brightly, indicating Evan's severe distress and sense of abandonment. Layla gasps in realization as she identifies the glowing mark below his collarbone. The narration explains how the mark changes from yellow to deep red as guiding levels drop. With a sudden ominous shift, the glowing red mark turns a murky black color. She gazes down with rising dread, sweating as she recognizes the danger of the black mark. Layla frantically shouts to Orion, warning him that the mark has turned a murky black. Orion panics, explaining that the black mark means Evan is about to go berserk. An off-screen voice urgently commands Layla to get out of there immediately. Evan slowly opens his eyes, a faint consciousness returning to his gaze. He weakly lifts his hand toward her, calling out her name in soft disbelief. Evan feels her guiding energy seeping into him, wondering if he is dreaming as she holds him. Layla aggressively shakes him awake, and a bewildered Evan questions why she is there. She tightly grips her dress, steeling her resolve before delivering her response. A fierce, dramatic announcement rings out as she declares she came to save him. Tearfully scolding him, Layla demands to know why he thought he could disappear without a word. Evan sits up in confusion as she continues to call him an idiot through her tears. She recognizes that her guiding is working, but worries that the process is far too slow. Layla holds his face, asserting that this speed cannot stop his impending rampage, while he questions her. She desperately stresses the extreme urgency of the situation as they sit in the ruins. Evan suddenly pulls her close, claiming skinship increases guiding efficiency, leaving Layla completely dumbfounded. Layla's face blushes bright crimson as she freezes in absolute shock at his sudden embrace. Evan gently cups her cheek, his gaze softening as he draws closer. He tilts her chin upward, leaning in close as she gasps in surprise. Orion, Aiden, Rose, and their companions stand frozen in utter, wide-eyed bewilderment. A hand reaches out in frantic protest as someone tries to stop him. Ruins are bathed in a brilliant golden light as Evan and Lila share a passionate kiss. Orion shields his eyes from the blinding radiance, groaning in confusion at the sudden display. A wave of pure dazzling energy sweeps across the ancient royal tubes. Orion frantically looks around for Lila while the black-haired man watches with a knowing sly smile. The scene shifts back to the Grand Academy towers under a peaceful sky. An exhausted student stretches in the hallway, complaining about staying up for exams. The tired student yawns, planning to sleep all day once the exams are finished. The perspective returns to Evan and Lila sharing a quiet, intimate moment together. Evan asks if she is all right, to which Lila dramatically gasps that she nearly died. Evan smiles warmly and begins to thank her, admitting he would be lost without her. With a sudden impact, Lila violently punches Evan directly in his stomach. Evan gasps in agonizing shock, completely caught off guard by her sudden physical retaliation. Layla grins cheerfully, playfully reminding him that he almost died by her hands just now. Evan groans on the floor after being struck in the solar plexus as Lila looms victoriously. In a transitional promo panel, Lila cheerfully repeats her warning about nearly killing him. Layla flashes a bright, happy smile, clearly pleased with his return to safety. Evan laughs weakly from the ground, forced to agree with her terms. His hand rests limply on the patterned carpet, signaling his complete exhaustion. Evan assures her that a little rest will make him feel much better. Layla places a finger to her lips, smiling deviously as she responds to his reassurance.
She raises a tightly clenched fist, declaring she wants to punch him one more time.
Terrified, Evan frantically asks why she even saved him if she only wants to him. Layla clenches her fist defensively, retorting that his ungrateful attitude justifies her anger. Evan defends himself from her sudden physical violence, while Lila dismisses his protests and demands a clear explanation.
Evan explains that they are in his dorm room because he unconsciously used his teleportation ability.
Confirmed by her suspicion, Evan gives her a sheepish, blushing smile with a soft laugh. Ryan recalls how his stomach churned as he approached Evan, initially mistaking him for a psychic-type Esper. Layla clutches her chest, wondering what caused the churning sensation she experienced if he wasn't psychic.
Evan anxiously asks if he made another mistake, while Lila admits she caused a massive scene trying to find him.
Evan confidently smiles, assuring her that there is no problem he cannot personally solve. Layla sweats with absolute disbelief, completely exasperated by his sheer, smiling shamelessness. Layla explains that everyone now knows she is a guide because she had to confess everything to save him. Her voice dramatically echoes with the shocking revelation that she is capable of providing guiding. Layla gasps in sudden realization, overwhelmed by the massive secret she has just exposed to the world. A heavy, sweating silence falls over them as they both process the immense weight of her confession. Evan casually downplays the issue, scratching his cheek, which triggers Lila's frantic disbelief at his lack of concern. Waving his hands dismissively, Evan cheerfully tells her she has absolutely nothing to worry about anymore. A sudden, commanding shout calls out Evan's name as he prepares to stand up from the floor. Evan confidently flashes a thumbs up, urging Lila to trust him as he offers to handle the explanation himself. Evan gently takes Lila's hand and proposes they return, prompting her to ask where they are going. A brilliant golden magic circle erupts beneath their feet, activating his teleportation power. Smiling, bathed in light, Evan instructs her to stay quiet while he handles all the talking. Layla stares at him in wide-eyed surprise as magical wind swirls around him. With a warm, sincere smile, Evan softly thanks her for saving his life. Hand in hand, they are swept away by the dazzling, sparkly magic of his teleportation ability. The scene transitions to the sun-drenched, pristine white marble courtyard of the academy. The pair suddenly materializes in the middle of a glowing magic crest in the courtyard. Ugh, Layla groans, clutching her mouth as sudden motion sickness from the teleportation hits her. Evan flinches in concern, quickly asking if her stomach is churning from the teleportation. Brr! Evan gasps, his eyes widening in shock as his hand flies to his throat. To Layla's absolute horror, Evan is violently hoisted high into the air by an invisible force, desperately choking. Evan grimaces in agony, his fingers digging into his neck as he is ruthlessly throttled in midair. Layla screams Evan's name in sheer, unadulterated panic as she watches him suffer. With a sharp gasp, Lila quickly whips her head around to find the source of the sudden attack. Aiden stands with his hand raised in a commanding gesture, surrounded by his allies as he exerts his gravity manipulation power. Aiden icily warns him not to cross the line, but Astolf retorts defiantly, questioning Aiden's authority. The pink-haired companion shrugs carefreely, trying to diffuse the growing hostility between the two men. Astolf points out that before graduation, both he and his rival are merely trainees. Layla desperately steps in to block Aiden, screaming at him to stop before Evan dies. Consumed by pure rage, Aiden yells out at the top of his lungs. Aiden furiously roars that Evan kidnapped her, justifying his extreme use of violence. Aiden falters slightly, sweat dripping down his face as he tries to maintain his stance. Layla places a gentle hand on his chest, begging him to calm down, not for Evan's sake, but for hers.
Aiden casts a quiet, searching glance down at her, his intense fury wavering under her plea.
A heavy dull thud echoes as Evan is dropped, crashing heavily onto the grassy courtyard floor. Aiden commands Orion to check on the injured young master, to which Orion cheerfully complies. The pink-haired companion lets out a heavy sigh of relief at the averted crisis. Aiden formally calls out to Lila, who turns to face him in quiet expectation. Layla quickly assures him that she is completely unharmed despite the chaotic ordeal. Aiden offers her a gentle, soft smile, his aggressive demeanor melting away.
Aiden apologizes for his outburst, blaming low guiding levels, but a blunt voice retorts that his temper is the problem.
A demanding command cuts through the air, telling the other to shut up and simply provide guiding. A sudden firm grip settles on a sleeve, signaling a silent demand for contact. Evan cheekily greets Sir Astolf, teasingly noting that his characteristically stiff expression remains completely unchanged. Layla rubs her temple, feeling thoroughly exhausted by the mounting social tension around her. Smiling warmly, Evan addresses Sir Astolf, stating his intention to explain the events of the day. An impatient finger taps restlessly against a hip, signaling a silent growing irritation. Valerian gazes ahead with an icy, unreadable expression, his hand resting thoughtfully on his chin. The tense standoff continues in silence as the atmosphere in the courtyard grows increasingly heavy. Evan continues to smile easily while Valerian watches him, quietly evaluating the situation with calculated focus. A transitional panel reiterates Evan's offer to explain the situation to a silent Sir Astolf. Valerian remains standing in silent contemplation, his chillingly calm aura dominating the quiet courtyard. Layla watches from a distance as Evan and Valerian stand opposite one another, anticipating their next move. A silent spark of intense hostility passes between Evan and Valerian as they lock eyes. From a low perspective, the assembled group stands in the courtyard, quietly observing the tense confrontation. Layla grows deeply anxious, silently wondering if Valerian's palpable killing intent means he intends to kill Evan. The pink-haired companion casts a sharp, sidelong glance back, her golden eyes filled with quiet calculation. A sudden flinch shakes Lila as she tightly clutches her brooch, consumed by growing nervousness. Evan notices Lila trembling in fear and casts a concerned, reassuring glance back toward her. Gently taking her hand, Evan softly reassures Lila and tells her not to be anxious. Evan smiles tenderly, promising her that everything will be fine despite Valerian's aggressive demeanor. Layla gazes up at Evan, her worried expression softening slightly at his warm reassurance. Layla internally questions why her novel's original counterpart ever fell for such a deeply troublesome man. Valerian maintains his stern, focused composure, his sharp green eyes silently scanning the two of them. Casting a sharp glance aside, Valerian's irritation becomes increasingly evident as the silent tension mounts. Layla flinches in surprise, her eyes widening as she senses another sudden shift in the atmosphere. Layla panics as she notices Valerian suddenly ending his standoff and walking directly toward them. Valerian brushes past Evan with a cold shoulder while Evan merely smirks in response. Valerian suddenly stops directly in front of Lila, causing her to freeze in startled apprehension. Looking down at Lila, Valerian's intense gaze softens slightly as he prepares to speak. Layla looks up at the towering commander, waiting tensely for whatever he has to say. Layla stares intently, trying to read any hint of malice or intention in his expression. Valerian dryly asks if they want him to leave, to which his pink-haired companion bluntly agrees. The afternoon sky remains peaceful and bright, contrasting sharply with the lingering social tension below. Valerian stands before Lila with his arms crossed, his imposing posture completely dominating the space. Layla flinches in confusion as Valerian continues to tower over her without saying a word. A rare, subtle smile touches Valerian's lips as he raises a hand in a peaceful gesture. Valerian expresses his deep gratitude, admitting they could not have saved young Master Olivet without her. A memory flashes of Evan offering to wrap her body with his protective magical ability. The flashback shows Lila standing amidst the swirling, brilliant light of Evan's protective magic. In the memory, Evan warmly explains that his protective light will strengthen as she gets closer. Back in the present, Valerian smiles warmly and notes that they are both mutually indebted now. Layla laughs nervously, awkwardly attempting to clarify the details of their mutual favors. Valerian smiles smoothly, confessing that he personally has a strong dislike for remaining in anyone's debt. Valerian proposes to repay his debt to her immediately today if she is willing to accept. When Layla curiously asks how, Valerian generously offers to grant her any single request she names. Thrilled by his promise, Lila eagerly asks if she can request anything and begins pondering her choice. Valerian suddenly falls silent, sweating slightly as he anticipates what wild request she might make. Layla flashes an incredibly bright, joyful smile, clearly having settled on the perfect request. Valerian quickly nods in agreement, confirming that her simple request is more than fair. An awkward comedic silence falls over the two as they stand facing each other in the courtyard. Blushing furiously, Valerian quickly turns away and flustredly grants them both permission to return. Lila blinks in complete surprise, utterly bewildered that she is also being sent away. Valerian glances back over his shoulder with a sharp, calculated look under the clear blue sky. Valerian commands her to remain hidden from now on if she intends to live normally. Layla watches in silence as Valerian walks away under the bright, open afternoon sky. Layla resolved to move her planned schedule up, seeking an earlier escape from her current situation. Holding a blank white document, Lila stares at it in deep, quiet contemplation. She reflects on the thorough preparations Rena mentioned, holding the document tightly in her hand. She realizes the plans include a safe place, a new identity, and a set date. Making up her mind, Lila suddenly sits upright on her bed with a determined expression. Clutching the paper, Lila flashes a radiant, confident smile, completely reassured in her final decision. She plans to escape unnoticed by blending into the crowd of visiting guests during the commotion. Biting her finger, Lila admits that an inexplicable feeling of anxiety drove her to move up her plans. The scene transitions to the Grand Academy Library, where students study in quiet, orderly rows. Layla watches Evan from her desk, fearing she will inevitably get entangled with him. A set of ornate bubble wooden doors stands closed within the Academy's grand hallway. Evan cheerfully throws his arm over Lila's shoulder, asking if they should head out together. Layla offers a gentle, compliant smile as she agrees to accompany Evan. Layla sits alone on the floor in front of a bright window, lost in thought.
She recalls a major complication involving the original novel's depiction of her relationship with Evan.
She remembers that the original story cast the two of them in a hostile mutual hatred. Resting quietly, the white-haired youth sleeps peacefully in the gentle, warm afternoon light. Layla firmly resolves that she must absolutely avoid meeting him to escape her fate. The scene shifts back to the quiet, sunlit interior of the spacious Academy Library. Two students gossip about a commotion in the lobby involving people searching for the prince. Layla freezes in shock, her eyes wide as she listens to the surrounding gossip. Overhearing that Asper Academy representatives caused a stir over the prince, Lila's hand halts abruptly. A sudden movement causes the wooden chair's leg to slide sharply against the floor. The gossiping students flinch in surprise as Layla abruptly stands up from her seat. Layla quickly turns and asks the girls if they are certain they heard Evan's name. The student confirms she heard it clearly, curiously asking if Lila knows him. Standing by her desk in silence, Lila processes the shocking confirmation with intense focus. The forgotten feather quill slips from her hand and falls onto the library floor. The students whisper her name in confusion upon finding Lila's seat suddenly left empty. The girls wonder about her sudden departure and bring up a rumor circulating around. Layla rushes out of the library, her long blonde hair trailing behind her. A memory flashes of Evan playfully teasing Lila, who reacted with mild irritation. Layla sprints through the academy corridors, internally screaming at the absurdity of the situation. Panting heavily, Lila pushes herself to run faster down the long, empty hallway. She struggles to understand why events keep deviating so drastically from the original plot. She laments that she was supposed to be completely free months after Evan's graduation. Other students watch in sheer bewilderment as Lila dashes frantically past them. She expresses her desperate desire to run somewhere remote where nobody could locate her. Layla stops dead in her tracks, her purple eyes wide with sudden, utter astonishment. In the grand lobby, Evan stands face to face with a group of Imperial guards. The officer declares that Evan's royal identity as the third prince is officially restored. Evan places a hand on his forehead, letting out a cynical, knowing smirk. The officer bows respectfully to Evan, formally addressing him by his royal title. Clenching his fist, Evan delivers a cold, low warning not to address him that way. The officer calmly delivers the Emperor's mandate, threatening force if the prince refuses compliance. Brushing his hair back, Evan mutters in deep irritation at the troublesome royal summoning. From the shadows, Lila watches the tense standoff between Evan and the Imperial guards. The student reluctantly agrees as a commanding hand reaches out, ordering him to prepare himself. A sudden realization hits, leaving Lila to wonder how she could have been so blind. Layla stands frozen in utter disbelief as the shocking truth of her situation sinks in. She internally laments her failure to recognize that Evan was actually the story's third male lead. Evan sharply rejects his companion's nagging, firmly stating he will proceed entirely on his own. Blinding magical light suddenly erupts around Evan as he stands in the grand hall.
He offers a gentle, quiet smile as he prepares to bid his final farewells.
Closing his eyes, Evan finds a fleeting moment of peace amid the brilliant glowing light. A heavy sound of footsteps echoes quietly down the empty, sunlit corridors of the academy. Trembling with distress, Lila bitterly mock-congratulates herself for her own incredible foolishness. Amidst the dark and swirling light, a sudden hand firmly grabs her to get her attention. Layla spins around in startled surprise and someone reaches out to stop her flight. Rowan stares back in utter confusion, deeply concerned by Layla's sudden and erratic behavior. Layla suddenly gasps as an unexpected sharp sensation flares deep within her chest. She nervously insists she is perfectly fine, though Rowan remains deeply skeptical of her weak excuses. Layla grows increasingly frantic as she realizes her manifestation pain is starting at the worst moment. When Rowan tries to urge her to the infirmary, Lila snaps back in defensive panic. Layla runs off, leaving a bewildered and anxious Rowan standing alone in the hallway. Quiet afternoon sunlight streams through the vacant, pristine corridors of the prestigious academy. Layla frantically ransacks her room, desperately searching for a hidden remedy to soothe her pain. Relief washes over her as she finally locates the single vital capsule she needs. Layla flinches in pure terror when Rowan unexpectedly walks into the room behind her. She quickly covers her mouth, desperately trying to mask her severe pain and sickness. Rowan rushes inside, desperately questioning if Layla is truly all right or hiding something. Rowan nervously voices her fears that Layla might be on the verge of vomiting. Layla weakly reassures her before Rowan passes along an urgent summons to the headmaster's office.
Rowan delivers the headmaster's request to meet with Lila, leaving her wondering what he wants to ask. Rowan hesitantly asks if Lila is secretly close with Evan, causing Lila to step back in confusion. Rowan explains that the other students are highly suspicious of their constant poetry partnership. A memory flashes of Evan playfully teasing Lila, highlighting their seemingly close connection. The girls are left standing in a dazed, awkward silence as the rumors seem coy. Rowan attempts to bring a completely unresponsive and swaying Lila back to reality. Looking out at the Grand Academy, Lila silently admits she is not alright at all. She remains utterly overwhelmed and paralyzed by the complications of her destiny. Warm sunlight bathes the quiet bedroom, casting a peaceful glow over the tense atmosphere. Rowan carefully wrings out a wet towel to help soothe her friend's rising fever. Layla rests weakly in bed while Rowan gently places the cool cloth on her forehead. Even in her restless sleep, Lila continues to blame Evan for her chaotic situation. Deeply worried by her condition, Rowan suggests postponing the headmaster's interview so she can recover. Layla sits up weakly and insists she is well enough to attend the scheduled meeting. Despite her protests, she tightly clutches her chest as she struggles to regain her composure. Rowan immediately checks her forehead, pointing out that she is still burning with a fever. Trying to change the subject, Lila holds her head and poses a question of her own. Layla demands to know how long Rowan has suspected her of being close to Evan. Rowan defensively argues that their constant closeness made it impossible for anyone not to notice. Rowan reminds her that Evan was always waiting to meet her in the hallways after class. The memories return of his constant, silent presence always lingering nearby just for her. Rowan points out they spent hours alone in classrooms, leaving Lila completely speechless and unable to explain. Rowan looks at her with a deeply serious and warning expression. He warns Lila that getting entangled with the Imperial family or high-grade espers invites grave danger. Layla clenches her blanket tightly as she contemplates the severe consequences of her family's hatred for espers. Standing in the light, the white-haired lady prepares herself to face the looming interrogation. Layla breaks into a nervous sweat, deeply worried about the question she is about to face. Rowan holds Lila's hands, expressing her deep gratitude for her past help and wishing she could avoid this trouble. Rowan advises Lila to play dumb and claim ignorance if the headmaster asks about Evan. Rowan promises to handle the rumors with the other students and urges Lila to trust her. Layla gazes back in silence, deeply touched yet worried by her friend's protective advice. Layla reflects on the advice as she prepares to meet the headmaster. The headmaster pleasantly welcomes Lila, explaining he summoned her to discuss the situation regarding Prince Andreas. Layla puts on a bright, cheerful front as she reacts to the headmaster's opening statement. Layla maintains her forced, polite smile to mask her internal panic and dread. The headmaster mentions the rumored interest between them, but Lila quickly dismisses it as a mere class acquaintance. The headmaster asks if she knows who the prince's guide was if they were acquainted. Layla smiles playfully while internally wondering if the headmaster is testing her with this question. The headmaster reveals that Prince Andreas is refusing all guiding in the capital, leaving its cause uncertain. As the headmaster explains the academy was contacted about the prince, a sudden shock strikes Lila's heart. A soft, sharp tap echoes as the headmaster taps his finger impatiently on his desk. With a cold glare, the headmaster bluntly asks Lila if she knows anything about the situation. Layla denies any knowledge, while the headmaster questions her truthfulness, prompting her to suspect his true intentions. The headmaster directly confirms a suspicion referencing her brother's expulsion for hiding his esper status. Layla maintains her bright smile while firmly stating that she has no idea who the guide is. The headmaster falls into a tense, silent contemplation as he stares back at her. He keeps a stony face, carefully analyzing her reaction. Layla apologizes for not having answers, and the headmaster coldly dismisses her, ending the interview. Bowing politely, Lila turns on her heel and begins to exit the headmaster's office. The headmaster watches her leave with a cold, piercing glare. Layla's hand hesitates, pausing in midair right before touching the wooden door. She recalls the headmaster's warning that psychics with dual abilities suffer much faster from lack of guiding. The ominous warning of the prince potentially going on a rampage weighs heavily on her mind. Pushing the heavy doors open with determination, Lila exits the room, leaving the headmaster behind. Standing under the night sky, Lila fumes with anger over the headmaster's infuriating interrogation. She stomps down the hallway, furious that her family and brother Aiden were dragged into his suspicions. She realizes that the current chain of events has completely deviated from her knowledge. Layla approaches the large wooden door, reaching out to open it. A wave of dread washes over her as she worries about Valerian gaining dual abilities. Layla steps inside her room, only to freeze in sheer shock at the sight before her. Two hooded intruders stand in her room, one of them gasping in surprise at her sudden entrance. The intruder pulls down his hood, revealing himself to be a familiar dark-haired noble. Layla stares in absolute disbelief, demanding to know why the prince has sneaked into her room. Valerian explains he used his powers to get in due to an urgent matter, apologizing for the intrusion. Layla dryly notes his constant intrusions before asking what is so urgent, which he reveals concerns Prince Andreas. Valerian reveals that Prince Andreas is actively refusing all attempts at guiding, causing his condition to worsen. Layla acts skeptical, casually questioning how that is possible when the imperial family has plenty of guides. Valerian reiterates that the prince is stubbornly rejecting any guide sent to help him. Layla complains that she strongly dislikes espers, especially Andreas, due to all the trouble he has caused her. To her complete shock, Valerian suddenly drops to his knees right in front of her.
Dropping all royal pride, Valerian desperately begs her for help.
Layla recoils in shock, her eyes wide as she processes the prince kneeling before her. She pleads with her to at least allow Sir Rose to guide Andreas if she cannot do it herself.
Layla stands in tense silence, sweating as the desperate request leaves her completely speechless.
Valerian continues his desperate plea, begging Layla to change the prince's mind.
He suggests allowing Sir Rose to guide Andreas if the task is too difficult for her.
Layla is left completely speechless by the prince's extreme humility and desperate proposal. Valerian looks up with an anxious gaze, waiting breathlessly for her final decision. Layla politely refuses his plea, stating she cannot provide the satisfying answer he hopes for. Heavy, disappointed silence settles over Valerian as his desperate request is rejected. Layla nervously explains that she only associated with him because she was unaware of his royal status. She admits she once believed she and Evan shared a common, difficult struggle. Rising to his feet, Valerian firmly reminds her of the harsh dependency of all espers. He paints a grim picture of the fatal madness that awaits unguided espers, regardless of power. Layla tries to laugh off his warning, insisting she is already well aware of the risks. Turning on her heel, Layla bluntly declares that the matter no longer concerns her. She begins walking away, leaving a lingering sense of cold finality in her wake. Valerian remains quiet, processing her cold rejection with a tense, brooding silence. Valerian appeals to her personally, promising that he will be the one forever in her debt.
He raises the stakes, offering to grant her any wish if she agrees to help.
Layla is surprised, pointing out his notorious hatred for being indebted to anyone. Valerian admits his hatred of debts, but reiterates she is the absolute only hope left. Layla offers a gentle, genuine smile touched by his profound sincerity. Valerian returns her smile, declaring his absolute determination to see this through.
He promises he will not abandon Prince Andreas, mirroring her own past resolve.
Layla is quietly amazed by his sudden display of deep loyalty and character. Layla reflects on how Valerian's desperate actions completely defy his original ruthless character description. She recalls Prince Andreas's haughty isolation within the grand, sparkling palace courtyard. She notes her plan was to force him away by persistently rejecting him. Memories fade as Layla shifts her focus back to the pressing reality before her. Valerian pauses the conversation, asking to clarify one final point before they proceed. He questions her sudden shift in attitude toward Evan, wondering if royalty influenced her choice.
Or perhaps, he muses, it is the unspoken empathy shared only between fellow espers.
A sudden pause halts his breath as he hesitates to finish his thought. With a sharp squeeze, he clenches his fist tightly as crackling energy rises in frustration. Regaining his composure, Valerian rephrases his words to avoid further tension. He explains he now shares the exact same desperate desire to save Evan. Layla responds with a gentle, understanding smile as his sincerity touches her. Slow, deliberate footsteps echo as they begin their walk together. A silent, tight swallow escapes her as she prepares her next words. She glances back at Valerian, silently acknowledging the unexpected shift in their relationship. With a sudden whoosh, her hair sweeps to the side as she turns in surprise. Layla agrees to try and persuade Evan to accept Sir Rose's guiding, earning Valerian's gratitude. A soft rustling sound emanates from the magic as the hooded companion prepares teleportation. A flash of sudden blinding light takes Layla completely by surprise. With a sudden clasp, Valerian pulls her close to shield her from the teleportation spell. Layla silently scoffs at his high-handed nature, despite his attempts to be polite.
A brilliant flash of white light bursts forth, instantly shifting their surroundings. The scene shifts to the towering, majestic spires of the Imperial Palace.
They materialize in a magnificent hallway, with Layla looking around to orient herself. Valerian guides Layla to the heavily guarded room where the prince is currently quarantined. A sudden crackling spark of electricity flares up as his hand touches the magic seal. Layla freezes in her tracks, a cold sweat breaking out from sudden dread. With a slow, heavy creak, the massive doors swing open to reveal what lies ahead. Layla politely asks Prince Astolf to step aside so she can enter the quarantine chamber. Prince Astolf reluctantly lets Layla pass, watching her enter with a deeply worried expression. Layla carefully slides the golden door open and steps into the quiet, dimly lit room. Prince Astolf confesses his hope that Layla could guide the prince, startling her with the sudden revelation. Standing behind the cracked door, Prince Astolf looks back inside with a tense, brooding expression. Layla fully steps inside the grand chamber as a quiet voice suddenly calls out her name. From his grand canopy bed, Prince Andreas weakly calls her name in complete disbelief. Looking pale and exhausted, Prince Andreas questions if she is truly standing before him. Layla sighs deeply, commenting on how poorly he is treated despite his royal status. Layla stands elegantly, surrounded by a gentle aura of blooming purple flowers. Prince Andreas weakly requests that she drop the formal speech when talking to him. Looking physically strained, Prince Andreas covers his face as he struggles to speak further. Prince Andreas clenches his bed sheets tightly in frustration, prompting Layla to gently ask why.
Layla directly questions why he stubbornly refuses to receive guiding from the S-grade Sorose. Prince Andreas turns away sharply, hiding his face to avoid her direct questioning.
Layla continues to press him, asking if he truly detests Sorose's guiding that much.
Prince Andreas weakly explains it is not hatred, prompting Layla to ask for the truth.
He reveals that his body instinctively rejects Sorose's guiding, leaving him feeling highly uncomfortable. Layla remains skeptical, arguing that her low-grade guiding cannot possibly compare to Sorose's high-grade power. Layla gently places a comforting hand on his shoulder to get his attention.
Layla softly but firmly commands Prince Andreas to look at her while they are speaking.
She steps closer to his bedside, urging him to face her directly despite his exhaustion.
Layla issues a gentle ultimatum, threatening to leave immediately if he refuses to listen. She stands her ground firmly, her fist clenching slightly as she awaits his response. Prince Andreas looks up at her with tear-filled eyes, overwhelmed by her stern yet caring presence. Layla gently cups his face, forcing him to look directly at her. Overcome with emotion, Prince Andreas leans forward and buries his face in her shoulder as she hugs him. He clings to her weakly, looking incredibly vulnerable and emotional in her warm embrace.
Layla gasps in soft surprise as she realizes the depth of his emotional distress.
Prince Andreas tearfully apologizes for his behavior, admitting he feels completely lost when she is near. Layla tightly grasps his hand, reminding him that Sorose's high-grade guiding is absolutely necessary. Prince Andreas looks up and asks her directly if she truly wants him to live.
Layla reacts with fierce exasperation, firmly asserting that she obviously wants him to survive.
She gently brushes his chin, her touch filled with sincere reassurance. Deeply comforted by her words, Prince Andreas offers a soft, genuine smile.
Layla pats the bed firmly, signaling for him to lie down and rest. Layla agrees to guide him one last time, insisting he must accept Sorose's guiding afterward.
In a comical moment, a blushing Prince Andreas covers his face while Layla looks highly skeptical. Prince Andreas suddenly announces that the guiding is already complete, catching her off guard.
Layla gasps in shock, completely bewildered by his sudden declaration. Holding her hand tightly, Prince Andreas confesses he feigned illness simply because he wanted to see her.
Prince Andreas leans in closer with a mischievous, affectionate smile, leaving her flustered. An intense, breathless silence falls between them as their faces hover incredibly close together. He gently plays with her hand, asking what she thinks of their meeting while she stutters in confusion. Prince Andreas smiles warmly, thoroughly enjoying her flustered and embarrassed reaction.
He explains that once bound to a highly compatible guide, other guiding attempts become completely ineffective.
Layla asks warily for his point, a nervous sweat breaking out on her face.
Prince Andreas softly touches her hair, suggesting that their compatibility rate might be exceptionally high.
They sit together quietly on the grand bed, enveloped in a warm, intimate atmosphere. Prince Andreas questions why fate bound them with such an incredibly high compatibility.
Chibi Prince Andreas questions if he is simply unlucky, while Chibi Lila sweats nervously.
Prince Andreas rejects her claim, softly declaring that she is his ultimate destiny instead. Prince Andreas leans in closer, expressing his desire to live his remaining time according to that fate.
An intense, breathless moment of silence lingers as their faces hover extremely close together.
Layla quickly covers his mouth, firmly rejecting the idea of living a predetermined life. A sudden clasp sounds as her sleeve is tightly grabbed. Prince Andreas pulls Layla into a firm embrace, commanding her to accept him.
Prince Andreas points out she saved his life 3 times, proving their intertwined fate.
Layla remains completely defiant, declaring her absolute determination to destroy any such fate.
With a sharp clench of her fist, she vows to shatter their connection entirely.
Exhausted, Prince Andreas collapses onto her lap as she stares down in stunned surprise.
Layla slips quietly out of the bedroom where Prince Astolf stands waiting anxiously. Prince Astolf turns to her in surprise, questioning if their meeting is already over. Layla cheerfully confirms she is finished, leaving Prince Astolf completely bewildered by her reaction.
Layla happily informs him that the prince has fallen asleep, leaving him dumbfounded.
Prince Andreas rests peacefully in his bed, unaware of the note left beside him.
The written note leaves a blunt final message urging him to live by his own choices.
The scene shifts to the grand, sunlit spires of the Imperial Palace Academy. Students gather in the Academy's grand hallway as graduation and commemorative events begin. Layla walks through the bustling courtyard, taking advantage of the large crowds to slip away. Layla looks around cautiously, hoping to make her quiet departure completely unnoticed. She spots the prepared carriage ahead, knowing her escape will soon be complete.
Layla reassures herself that she can slip away casually since no one is watching.
She walks calmly toward the Academy gates among the elegant guests and carriages. Layla puts on a casual smile, pretending to simply greet an arriving guest. A sudden urgent shout of her name halts her steps in the courtyard. Layla freezes in surprise as the unexpected voice calls out to her. Rowan runs up to her, looking completely shocked to find her standing alone. Layla stammers nervously, frantically trying to explain her solitary presence to her classmate.
Rowan asks with a cheerful smile if she is preparing to go somewhere.
Layla quickly fabricates an excuse about the nice weather, prompting Rowan to suggest walking together.
With a forced laugh and slumped shoulders, Lila reluctantly agrees to her request. The two girls walk together through the manicured gardens of the Grand Academy. Rowan asks to share an honest thought, while Lila warily tells her to proceed. Rowan admits her initial prejudice against her, recalling Lila's past association with an Esper. Externally agreeing, Lila frantically wonders how she can quickly shake off her companion. Rowan confesses she still struggles to fully erase that lingering suspicion of her. Layla stops walking as a cold sweat of sudden tension breaks out. Rowan recalls how regularly Lila used to associate with the Esper named Olivet. Rowan directly questions if Lila is still suspicious of her, while Lila downplays it. Rowan admits she has been patiently waiting for her companion to confide in her first. They continue their stroll down the stone path as the afternoon sun shines down. Layla listens silently, her expression reflecting her inner conflict and surprise. Rowan offers a gentle, genuine smile, her expression filled with warmth. Rowan acknowledges they might not be close, but urges honesty before time runs out. Chibi Lila frantically denies being a guide, while Chibi Rowan smiles warmly beside her. Soft gasp escapes as Rowan firmly grasps her hand to show her sincerity. Rowan admits she generally distrusts Espers and guides, unlike her father's firm beliefs. Rowan confesses her genuine affection for Lila, regardless of her status or identity. Sudden rustling whoosh sounds as they quickly turn together. Rowan unexpectedly wraps her arms around Lila, pulling her into a warm, gentle embrace. Rowan asks Lila directly if she is leaving today, leaving the blonde girl startled. Layla lets out a quiet, subtle smile as she accepts her friend's sharp intuition. Layla looks back at her companion with a peaceful, warm expression of sincere gratitude. When Rowan asks where she is going, Lila gently declines to reveal her destination. Rowan tearfully accepts her response while Lila giggles softly to lighten the emotional atmosphere. Rowan promises to cover for her by claiming Lila is staying at her family's estate. Layla expresses her deep gratitude to Rowan as she warmly clasps her hand. They share a tender, emotional moment face to face as Lila prepares to depart. A cloaked figure waves as the two girls stand with luggage by the academy stairs. Layla turns to Rowan and asks her for one final favor before she departs. Layla hands over a letter asking Rowan to deliver it to Aiden if he looks for her. Layla shouts to tell Aiden she left to find her own path, while Rowan bids her a safe journey. The elegant carriage awaits in the sunlit courtyard, ready to transport her away. Sitting inside the carriage, Lila gazes out the window with a thoughtful, reflective expression. Layla reflects on her new accomplishments, noting she now owns both a house and land. She rejoices in achieving her dream, which now includes owning her very own trading company. Her expression softens into a quiet, serious look as she contemplates her hard-won situation. She acknowledges that while this is not complete freedom, she must accept the compromise. The carriage rolls away down the sunlit path, carrying her toward a brand new beginning. Hurried, heavy footsteps suddenly echo sharply across the stone courtyard as someone runs past. Panting heavily, a cloaked Lila runs frantically through the academy grounds to escape. The student turns in surprise as the mysterious cloaked figure darts quickly past him. Layla pauses to catch her breath, looking around anxiously from under her hood. Slumped against a stone pillar, Layla laments that she has never run this hard before. Layla flinches in alarm as she spots several armed guards gathering in the courtyard. She peeks cautiously from behind her hiding spot, monitoring the guards' movements very closely. A commanding shout rings out, ordering all guards to find her on the prince's direct command. The guards salute and acknowledge the command, preparing to scour the area immediately. Layla's hands tremble with sudden fear as she realizes how tight the security has become. A nervous sweat breaks out on her face as she desperately plots her next move. Layla realizes the person she should have feared most was not the Countess or Valerian. She identifies the white-haired Evan Olivet as her true and most dangerous threat. Layla gasps in horror as her foot accidentally snaps a dry branch on the ground. The nearby guards freeze and turn sharply toward the source of the sudden noise. Layla stumbles backward in a panic, desperate to avoid being spotted by the searching guards. She quickly pulls her dark hood lower and bolts down the narrow stone alleyway. She flinches behind a wall as guards search the area, scanning in every direction. Layla dashes forward, her rapid footsteps echoing as she runs deeper into the shadows. Layla's frustrations mount as she realizes she was lured into a trap by fake information. She deeply regrets letting her guard down before her escape was fully complete. Suddenly, a door creaks open and a polished white boot steps into view. A pink-haired prince in an elegant white uniform stands before her with a serious gaze. A dark-haired man runs up breathlessly, urgently calling out to the pink-haired prince. The dark-haired companion looks highly stressed and completely out of breath from his run. He stands panting, his shirt collar and tie slightly disheveled from his frantic sprint. The pink-haired prince looks confused as his blonde companion sighs in utter exhaustion. The dark-haired man angrily grabs the pink-haired prince, who wonders why they are fighting again. The dark-haired man scolds him for walking around carelessly with so many eyes watching him. The pink-haired prince looks away awkwardly, a nervous sweat breaking out on his face. The black-haired man angrily scolds his companion for wearing incorrect clothing, demanding he openly declare his true gender. A sudden slap sounds as a white glove is pulled tightly on Oriane. The pink-haired man calmly adjusts his sleeve, claiming no one will recognize him and defending his freedom to disguise himself. Slumping heavily into an ornate armchair, the pink-haired man asks if the black-haired man has located his sister yet. The black-haired man looks away with a solemn, downcast expression, admitting he has not found her. The pink-haired man offers a soft, relieved smile, expressing his comfort at the news. With a gentle tap, he points out that the young lady looks completely different from him anyway. The black-haired man objects, recalling their childhood resemblance, but the pink-haired man ignores him and leaves to change. A sudden chill of dread hits the black-haired man as a worrisome realization about Rose's plans crosses his mind. A sudden halt stops the pink-haired man in his tracks as he freezes with his back turned. The pink-haired man casts a serious, quiet glance over his shoulder, his playful demeanor completely vanishing. Production credits and scanlation details mark a brief interlude in the unfolding story. The pink-haired man remains deep in serious thought as he glances back with a heavy, contemplative gaze. The scene shifts to the sunny, peaceful skies above Viscount Pullen's estate in the southwest region of the Empire. The grand, wide estate stands surrounded by a beautifully manicured garden bathed in warm, tranquil sunlight. Layla holds a handwritten letter reflecting on how deeply her brother cherishes and loves her. An emotional memory shows a young, white-haired boy weeping inconsolably in deep despair, too heartbroken to receive any comfort. Sitting in a rocking chair in the courtyard, Lila quietly sighs as she reads the heartfelt letter. Layla stares down at the paper with a wistful, melancholic expression, deeply touched by the emotional words. Her quiet reflection is interrupted by a cheerful voice as a brown-haired young woman in a straw hat arrives. The brown-haired young woman smiles brightly under her hat, her face glowing with genuine warmth and happiness. She walks over to the rocking chair, warmly warning Lila that she might catch a cold sitting outside. Layla explains she was reading a letter from Rowan, prompting her companion to ask where she is heading. The brown-haired companion cheerfully shares her plans to visit the nearby village to mail some letters. Her companion adds that she plans to buy sweets, causing Lila's eyes to light up with excitement. Layla eagerly begs to tag along, and her companion happily invites her to join the sweet-seeking trip. The carriage rolls down a quiet dirt road, its wheels clattering softly beneath a bright, clear blue sky. Inside the carriage, the two girls sit together in comfortable silence as they travel toward the village. Layla reflects on staying completely hidden inside the estate for her first 2 months under Viscount Pullen's identity. Standing by the window, she remembers the quiet caution of her self-imposed isolation inside the grand house. She smiles softly, celebrating her newfound ability to finally step outside and move around more freely. Layla asks her companion if their informant in the Imperial Palace has reported any updates, receiving a negative answer. Her companion explains that the Imperial search party is still focusing their efforts entirely on the eastern region. In the dark forest, search parties holding bright torches carefully scan the wilderness in search of her. Her companion reassures her that the palace has little interest in the south since she is disguised as a mid-level noble. A dark scenario of a staged carriage accident is proposed as the perfect cover to completely erase her existence. Under the starry night sky, a ship sails across the ocean preparing for the final phase of their plan. Standing on the ship deck, a cloaked Lila plans to liquidate her assets once a swap is arranged. Her companion holds her hand warmly, outlining her plan to help Lila escape safely to a neighboring country. Clasping Lila's hand tightly, her companion promises to fake her death to ensure her freedom. A sudden surge of resolve fills her companion, who fiercely vows to follow Lila wherever she goes. Back in the town square, a massive, crackling, magical portal erupts into life as onlookers watch in awe. Footsteps patter rapidly against the stone ground as soldiers urge everyone to move quickly through the area. Soldiers rush past the glowing portal while a clenching fist reflects a sudden surge of determination and urgency. The black-haired man pulls on his gloves, urgently calling out to his blonde companion, Orion, to wait. The two men walk side by side through the courtyard with quick, determined strides as soldiers move around them. They turn to face each other in a quiet alleyway, away from the bustling crowd of soldiers. Orion turns with a calm, questioning look, asking his companion what he urgently needs to say. The black-haired man stands resolutely, preparing to deliver a highly serious and critical message. Orion easily agrees to the request, but the black-haired man internally resolves to stop Prince Andreas from finding Lila at all costs. The white-haired man holds the white-haired woman in a tight embrace, leaving her startled. The blonde-haired companion reacts with disbelief, calling the suggestion insane under the circumstances. He questions whether his companion truly has no desire to see Lila again. The blonde companion explains that despite his own desire to see Lila, they must prioritize acting rationally. Soldiers double their efforts, running urgently through the stone courtyard to secure the perimeter. The blonde companion expresses confusion, questioning why they should actively prevent Lila from being located. A heavy crash echoes across the alley as the black-haired man punches the stone wall in frustration. The black-haired man holds his fist against the wall, preparing to reveal a painful truth. Past memory shows the white-haired man holding the young lady close in a candlelit room. In another memory, the purple-eyed man violently grabs his green-eyed companion by his collar. He furiously scolds his green-eyed companion for recklessly allowing Lila to meet the highly volatile Evan. The green-eyed companion remains entirely silent, offering no excuses under his captor's intense glare. They stand in the grand, high-ceilinged hall, the tension between them growing increasingly thick. He contemplates a deeper worry, wondering if there was another hidden motive behind the actions. The green-eyed companion speaks in a low tone, demanding to know what is truly happening. A white-haired man dressed in a loose white robe suddenly steps through the grand doorway. Looking down with a melancholic gaze, the white-haired man seems lost in deep sorrow. The black-haired man wears a cold, hardened expression as he recalls the painful encounter. Back in the alley, the black-haired man covers his face in deep, exhausting distress. The blonde companion recoils in sudden shock, realizing Prince Andreas shares this dangerous obsession with Lila.
He confirms his fears, explaining that Lila faces a lifetime of forced servitude as Andreas's guide. The blonde companion absorbs this terrifying revelation, his expression filling with deep concern. He grits his teeth in pure rage, comparing her potential fate to that of mere livestock. He continues his grim warning, picturing her being handled and restrained like a common slave. Suddenly, Rose steps forward from the shadows, agreeing that such a fate would indeed be hell. The startled blonde companion scolds Rose for sneaking up on them, asking how long he listened. Rose responds with a light smirk, revealing he heard everything since they mentioned the addiction. Rose explains his disheveled appearance by revealing he recently guided a rampaging man, tearing his clothes. His companion reacts with deep concern, asking if Rose resorted to physical contact guiding. A sudden scream echoes in flashback as Rose describes how the rampaging man lunged at him. Rose complains about the man's frantic behavior just before a loud announcement interrupts her conversation. The three companions whip around in unison as the announcement of the prince's arrival echoes. Prince Andreas strides imperiously through the courtyard, accompanied by his loyal green-eyed lieutenant. The white-haired prince walks forward with an unyielding, cold expression of absolute authority. Production credits and scanlation group details mark a brief pause in the narrative progression. A booming formal announcement echoes across the stone courtyard, declaring the prince's official arrival. The group watches tense and quiet as the prince walks past them into the estate. The blonde companion quietly warns Rose that exposing his true male identity means death for everyone. He urgently instructs Rose to flee to a clothing shop while he creates a distraction. He finishes his instruction, ordering Rose to quickly change out of his ruined, ragged clothing. From a hidden vantage point, they watch the prince and his lieutenant march further away. The prince adjusts his collar with a subtle gesture, a confident smile touching his lips. An ominous silence falls over the courtyard as the immediate threat temporarily moves past them. The two men stand close together, exchanging a brief, serious look of mutual determination. Prince Andreas casts a sharp, piercing glare backward, his eyes scanning the area suspiciously. A commanding order rings out across the grounds, directing the guards to begin their search. Layla runs excitedly into a brightly lit pastry shop, squealing happily at the delicious displays. Layla humorously prays to her inner appetite, debating which delectable sweet treat she should choose. She greedily eyes the display, wondering if a tangy apple cream pie is the answer. She cheerfully concludes that since she wants everything, she simply has to buy it all. Brown-haired shopkeeper warmly welcomes the newly arrived customer into his pastry shop. The blonde guard grabs the shopkeeper's attention by presenting a folded piece of paper. The guard inquires if the shopkeeper has seen a white-haired woman matching the drawing. Shopkeeper sweats in tense silence, immediately recognizing the white-haired woman from the portrait. The shopkeeper claims to have seen her, prompting the guard to urgently ask where. While the two men talk, Lila quietly slips away unnoticed in the background. Shopkeeper tells the guard that he saw the woman just a moment ago. He falsely directs the guard to a nearby tea house where she might be caught. After thanking the shopkeeper, the guard runs out to chase the false lead. The shopkeeper wipes his brows, sighing in deep relief after successfully diverting the guard. Layla smiles warmly, deeply relieved and grateful for the shopkeeper's quick-witted intervention. Layla expresses concern that the soldiers might return to retaliate against him later. He reassures her, declaring his shop only sells desserts and never betrays regular customers. The smiling shopkeeper retrieves a dark cloak from beneath the counter to help her. He hands the folded dark cloak over to her to conceal her identity. Layla holds the dark cloak tightly against her chest, deeply touched by his kindness. Overwhelmed with gratitude, tears well up in Lila's eyes as she looks at him. The shopkeeper gently repeats that she should not worry about his safety. He reassures her once more, confidently stating that he has his own ways. The shopkeeper gives her a bright, comforting smile to ease her lingering worries. Prince Andreas stands imposingly outside the building, surrounded by his personal guards. The wooden doors of the establishment sway shut behind him as he moves. Prince Andreas runs his hand through his white hair with a calm, stoic expression. A faint, mystical purple energy crackles over a palm, signaling a nearby guiding force. Prince Andreas lifts his hand, closely examining the subtle resonance of the guiding energy. Wrapped in the dark hooded cloak, Lila walks briskly down the sunlit street. Beneath her hood, Lila looks around nervously, trying to remain completely unnoticed. Layla suddenly spots several heavily armed Imperial soldiers blocking the street ahead. Realizing the danger, Lila curses quietly and quickly turns back to find another route. Her heart stops as she spots Prince Andreas marching down the street nearby. Prince Andreas walks forward with a cold, unyielding gaze, scanning his surroundings sharply. Layla swiftly ducks into a nearby shop doorway to avoid being spotted. Layla presses herself against the wall, sweating with fear as she hides. Layla slips inside the doorway just as the prince and his guards walk past. Inside the boutique, the shopkeeper warmly welcomes the guest who just slipped inside. The pink-haired companion looks back, instantly recognizing the hooded figure who entered. Layla quickly kneels behind a wooden chest, trying to stay out of sight. Layla internally laments that absolutely nothing is going according to her plans today. A hand suddenly reaches down from above, gently resting on Layla's shoulder. Layla gasps in shock as her pink-haired companion kneels down right beside her. The companion reveals she was sent by the prince to capture Layla. Layla asks the companion if dealing with the dangerous prince will be all right. The companion smiles back reassuringly, displaying absolute confidence in her secret plan.
She explains that while normal people are oblivious, the prince's instincts are heightened. She notes that Andreas has incredibly sharp senses that detect even faint energy. She points out that the prince can easily detect her guiding aura nearby. Layla sighs in resignation, realizing she cannot run from his heightened senses. Layla admits there is nothing else they can do but face the situation. Layla bitterly muses that capturing her will bring great merit to the companion. She contemplates how handing her over will guarantee the companion's reward from him. A quiet rattle sounds as a hand reaches out to turn a golden door handle. Bright sunlight streams into the elegant parlor, illuminating a quiet seating area and tea table. White-haired Crown Prince Evan stands in his uniform with a cold, stoic expression. Bowing respectfully, the pink-haired guide walks into the grand boutique. Looking up, the pink-haired guide offers a polite and gentle smile. All clothing displays and shoe racks stand empty and silent inside the boutique. Evan and the pink-haired guide face each other inside the lavishly decorated dressing room. Evan glares at her, his expression turning icy and intense. Formal production page lists the creative credits of the series. Evan stands with an unyielding, serious expression as he observes his companion. Sunlight illuminates the quiet boutique, highlighting the elegant clothing racks. Anne faces the pink-haired guide, questioning her presence in the boutique. Evan demands to know why he can clearly sense Lila's guiding energy in the room. The pink-haired guide dismisses his suspicion, claiming he must be mistaking her own guiding for Lila's. Stepping closer, Evan asks with deep suspicion if she has been completely alone. In the shadows, the pink-haired guide lets out a subtle, sly smile. She lies directly to him, insisting she has been entirely alone the whole time. She comments on his pale complexion, noting that his guiding levels seem dangerously low. Evan scoffs coldly, remaining completely unfazed by her assessment of his condition. She offers to provide him with guiding, but Evan abruptly slams the door on her. Left alone, the pink-haired guide rests a hand on her cheek in quiet contemplation. Pink-haired guide crosses her arms as she continues her silent, thoughtful monologue. Crouching on the floor, the pink-haired guide leaves Lila completely bewildered by her presence. Reaching down, the pink-haired guide gently takes Lila's hand. Lila flinches back as the pink-haired guide leans in incredibly close to speak. The pink-haired guide approaches a grieving black-haired man, placing a hand on his shoulder. Slumped over his desk, the black-haired man covers his face in deep distress. She asks Aiden why he does not simply go search for Lila himself if he is suffering so much. Aiden tearfully refuses to look for Lila, prompting her to ask why. Aiden tearfully explains that since Lila hid of her own free will, no one has the right to find her. Pink-haired guide kneels before Lila on the carpeted floor. Layla looks up at her companion, silently reflecting on the moment she realized the truth. The pink-haired guide smiles softly, showing a rare moment of genuine warmth. Turning to the shop assistant, the pink-haired guide asks if there is a back door they can slip out through. The assistant explains that there is an emergency escape tunnel dug into the floor. The pink-haired guide promises a generous reward if the assistant helps them escape. Layla asks if she is truly being let go, and the guide admits that comforting Aiden's constant crying is simply too much of a hassle. The pink-haired guide smiles warmly and wishes Lila a safe journey back. Their fingers slowly slide apart, bringing their quiet meeting to an end. Layla suddenly throws her arms around the shocked guide in a tight emotional embrace. Clinging tightly, Lila tearfully promises that she will never forget the kindness shown to her today. The pink-haired guide stands in silence, staring at the empty room after Lila's departure. Looking down at her hand, the pink-haired guide realizes it has been a long time since anyone thanked her. She bitterly recalls how the soldiers she guided always feared her as a monster instead of showing gratitude. Smiling softly to herself, the pink-haired guide silently hopes they will meet again someday. The shop assistant approaches the pink-haired guide asking if she needs any further assistance. The sweating assistant nervously asks if there is anything else, but the guide politely declines. Several glinting gold coins fall from her hand as payment. The pink-haired guide rides away, leaving the coins as the promised reward. The assistant is thrilled with the generous payment, while the guide confirms that the clothes are perfectly fine. The pink-haired companion inquires if the boutique also sells men's clothing. The shopkeeper reacts with nervous surprise, hesitatingly acknowledging the request for men's attire. Pink-haired companion watches in confusion as the shopkeeper frantically rushes off to find the items. Hiding behind a wall, Lila gasps for air while complaining about her exhausting encounter with Rose. Layla covers her face in sheer relief, thankful she managed to avoid the guards patrolling nearby. Sitting in the alley, Lila contemplates the bizarre, unfamiliar sensation she experienced when Rose touched her. Clutching her chest, Lila deeply questions if that mysterious physical connection was actually her guiding aura. From her hiding spot, she questions how guides could possibly perceive each other's energy. Layla crouches low, remaining hidden as she prepares to slip away unnoticed. A sudden voice calling out to her makes Lila whip around in panic. Layla leaps to her feet, defensively demanding to know who has approached her hiding spot. The newcomer immediately asks Lila what happened to cause such disheveled distress. Rena explains she searched everywhere after failing to find Lila at the dessert shop. Layla explains to Rena how incredibly difficult and harrowing it was to escape from Evan. Rena reacts in complete shock, questioning if the formidable prince has also arrived. The white-haired prince stands in the distance, urging that they must act quickly. They decide to depart for the northern summer villa first thing tomorrow morning. Rena and Lila firmly clasp hands, sealing their silent promise to escape together. Rena resolutely agrees to the plan as they stand close together in the alleyway. Rena offers a bright, encouraging smile as she prepares to lead Lila away. Layla looks up with a warm, relieved smile, deeply touched by Rina's loyalty. Rina mentions preparing disguise clothes in the carriage, prompting a bewildered reaction from Lila. A grand horse-drawn carriage clatters noisily through the massive stone gate of the city. Dressed in dapper male attire with a cap and bow tie, Lila sighs in disbelief. Slumped against the carriage seat, Lila covers her face, finding the male disguise deeply humiliating. Layla laments that she never imagined she would have to resort to cross-dressing to escape. Looking out the window, Lila clenches her fist, reminding herself to endure the humiliation. Layla psychs herself up, determined to bear the disguise for the sake of her freedom. The carriage travels smoothly down a serene tree-lined path away from the city. Rina suddenly alerts Lila that they have reached an unexpected security checkpoint ahead. Peeking through the carriage window, Lila asks if the checkpoint belongs to Evan's Knights. Rina quietly confirms her suspicions as a guard commands the carriage to stop. An overhead view reveals the carriage completely surrounded by armed guards at the checkpoint. The stern guard demands identification papers, which Rina calmly hands over for inspection. Glancing over the papers, the guard suspiciously inquires about the passenger riding inside. Rina flashes a polite, reassuring smile, falsely identifying the passenger as Viscount Poland. Unconvinced, the guard orders his subordinate to inspect the interior of the carriage. Green-haired knight steps forward, marching directly toward the carriage door to investigate. Inside, Layla raises a large newspaper to cover her face as the knight approaches. Peeking over the edge of the newspaper, Lila desperately commands herself to stay calm. Rina loudly protests the rude intrusion just as a highly polished white boot steps forward. Valerian steps up, commanding the guards to halt and stating he will perform the check. Rina gasps in sudden alarm as Valerian walks directly to the carriage door. A tense silence is broken by the sharp creak of the carriage door. Layla flinches in terror behind her newspaper as the carriage door swings open. Valerian peers inside, mockingly asking if she actually expected to fool him with her disguise. Layla's eyes widen in sheer disbelief as she immediately recognizes Valerian standing before her. Valerian looks down with a solemn expression, beginning to explain what transpired after her departure. Valerian reveals how Andreas is obsessively wasting massive manpower to locate her. Layla slowly lowers her hands to her lap, listening in somber, silent guilt. Layla angrily retorts that he should simply stop searching for her instead of blaming her. Valerian quietly calls her actions underhanded as he stares at her with a stoic expression. A single panel showing a black boot stepping firmly onto the carriage floor. Valerian boards the grand carriage and approaches Lila, his imposing figure filling the space. Valerian warns her that provoking him right now is highly unwise. Layla gasps in shock as the carriage door suddenly slams shut from the outside. Valerian sits down right next to Lila, cornering her against the carriage wall. Valerian gazes intensely at Lila as she remains frozen and tense by his side. Layla anxiously wonders if she provoked him in vain in what he plans to do. Valerian leans in close to announce his honesty, prompting a nervous question from Lila. A menacing green serpent towers behind a vision of Valerian holding Lila amidst blue roses. Layla reacts in complete shock to the sudden mention of poison. Valerian calmly confirms her suspicion while sitting closely beside her in the carriage. An ominous presence looms over the peaceful village rooftops, threatening to cause a massive commotion. A terrifying horned wolf monster growls, signaling the impending threat of a battlefield deployment. A lone guard holding a bright torch stands terrified before the massive shadowed monster. The sweating guard gasps in absolute terror, questioning what the monstrous beast is. The horned beast stalks forward as the terrified guard falls backward onto the ground. The monstrous beast roars savagely at the fallen guard to protect its territory. A desperate scream echoes in the darkness as Valerian contemplates dividing their insufficient forces. Valerian looks at Lila as he prepares to make his final decision. Valerian makes a surprising declaration, revealing his decision to let her go. Layla gasps in utter disbelief at his unexpected decision to release her. Valerian leans in toward Lila, his gaze softening as he prepares to say goodbye. Their intimate moment is suddenly interrupted by panicked screams of a monster attack outside. Valerian asks for clarification as the panicked guard confirms a grade 2 monster is attacking. Ice magic crackles through the air as a guard is thrown backward by the force. Valerian halts his movement, turning back with a sharp and intensely focused expression. The horned wolf stands proudly amidst a flurry of magical floating blue ice shards. Layla nervously asks the prince what the terrifying noise outside is. Valerian urgently tells her that this moment is her only chance to escape. Layla remains frozen in silent shock, processing his sudden command to run. Valerian stands firmly behind the carriage, waving his hand to signal their immediate departure. Inside the moving carriage, Lila looks back with a deeply worried and startled expression. Valerian promises to buy her enough time to escape as his hand ignites. Valerian summons roaring flames around his arm, preparing to confront the monstrous beast alone. Layla gasps in shock as she watches him prepare to fight the monster alone. Rina flinches as she senses the intense magic and danger unfolding right behind them. Rina looks back in confusion at the glowing aura radiating from the prince behind. Valerian loudly demands that she snap out of it and focus on driving. Reacting to his urgent command to hurry, Rina prepares to drive the carriage away. Rina whips the reins forward with a shout, urging the horses to move. The horses kick up dirt as they begin galloping away at full speed. Valerian stands alone on the road, holding bright flames as the carriage speeds away. Layla leans out of the carriage window, her hair flowing as she watches him fade. Layla softly speaks Valerian's name as he stands resolutely before the towering village gate. Valerian confronts the icy, horned monster in the middle of the deserted cobblestone street. A terrifying beast narrows its glowing eyes, ready to strike with lethal ice energy. The carriage horses gallop frantically, kicking up a thick cloud of dust behind them. The fierce beast leaps high into the air to launch its assault against Valerian. Two menacing black-furred beasts with glowing red eyes and horns gallop fiercely forward. A horned wolf beast dashes at full speed down the dirt path after the carriage. Fire ignites with a sudden, brilliant whoosh around his clenched fist. Kneeling on the ground, Valerian channels a powerful stream of blazing fire from his hands. The monstrous wolf leaps straight through the raging, crackling wall of fire. Valerian smiles calmly with determination, raising his hand enveloped in bright, crackling flames. Summoning his power, Valerian raises his arms to conjure a brilliant burst of magical energy. An ice shard suddenly shoots through the air, piercing Valerian's arm and drawing blood. Valerian gasps in sudden shock, his eyes widening as he feels the sharp pain. Kneeling on the ground, Valerian grunts in immense pain as his strength begins to fail him, cursing that it is already happening. A horned wolf sprints past Valerian, ignoring him to continue chasing after the carriage. Looking down from above, Valerian screams in desperation as several horned wolves sprint past him toward the escaping carriage. Valerian raises his left hand, conjuring a swirl of floating blue ice shards around him. Valerian unleashes a barrage of ice magic, surrounding himself with floating shards of blue crystal. A tight close-up shot of a hand clenching into a powerful and determined fist. Valerian stands resolutely as a massive storm of swirling fire and ice magic engulfs him. Surrounded by blazing magical fire, Valerian's eyes narrow with fierce determination as he loudly roars Layla's name. The carriage speeds along the winding dirt road, kicking up a thick cloud of dust. Inside the carriage, Lila looks out the window in deep, anxious concern, wondering if the person left behind will be all right. Slumped in her seat, Lila tries to calm her racing thoughts by reminding herself that he is the main character and will surely survive. Layla grips the carriage window frame tightly, reassuring herself that a prominent figure like him would never fall so easily. Lila looks down, her expression clouded with a mixture of worry, guilt, and quiet sadness. Peering through the window, Rena shouts in sheer panic, warning her mistress that the terrifying beasts are actively chasing them. Clutching the reins tightly, Rena frantically curses under her breath as she tries to outrun the pursuing monsters. As a horned wolf leaps closer behind the carriage, Rena calls out in terror, realizing the beasts are about to catch up. Carriage jolts violently as Rena desperately screams for her passenger to brace herself and hold on tight. Layla tightly shuts her eyes, bracing herself as the carriage violently shakes and tilts sideways. A loud, deafening crash echoes as the massive horned beast collides violently with the moving carriage. Rena winces in pain as the force of the impact shakes the entire driver's bench. Inside the vehicle, Lila is thrown completely off balance as the carriage begins to tip. A harsh cracking sound rings out as the carriage wheel buckles and the carriage overturns. The grand carriage lies completely crashed and overturned on its side in the quiet forest. Pushing the door open, Lila slowly and carefully climbs out of the wrecked, overturned carriage. Layla emerges from the crash, stepping down onto the dirt road to assess her surroundings. A close-up of Layla's dark brown boots slipping slightly on the uneven gravelly ground. Overcome by exhaustion and panic, Lila falls to her knees on the dusty forest path. Layla frantically turns toward the wreckage of the carriage, calling out in panic to ask if Rena is all right. Layla's eyes widen with terror as she desperately shouts for Rena to answer her. Layla calls out to Rena, who lies completely motionless and unconscious on the dirt ground beside the carriage. Hearing a menacing growl, Lila turns around to find a horned wolf stalking slowly toward her. The black-furred horned wolf growls threateningly, revealing its sharp fangs. The monstrous beast slowly stalks down the path, closing the distance toward the vulnerable girl. Facing the approaching monster, Lila forces a highly tense, desperate smile in her sheer terror. Reaching her hand down, Lila desperately searches the ground and finds a thin wooden stick. Facing the towering beast, Lila stands her ground with the stick, wondering if dying here means she can return to her original world. A close-up shot of Layla's hands trembling violently as she clutches the flimsy wooden branch. The monstrous horned wolf charges directly at Lila as she braces herself with her stick. Layla closes her eyes tightly, tears streaming down her face as she prepares for the impact. The ferocious horned beast leaps high into the air, opening its jaws wide to strike her. Suddenly, Valerian pulls her close into a protective embrace, shielding her from the beast's attack. Valerian apologizes to Lila for his delay and his failure to block the dangerous attack. Valerian speaks to Lila gently as he continues to hold her securely in his arms. Enveloped in raging fire, the silhouette of the horned beast looms as they hold each other. Valerian continues to hold her securely as the magical flames rise around them. A massive wall of fire erupts, keeping the terrifying monster at bay during their embrace. The carriage wreckage is engulfed in flames, creating a chaotic and dangerous scene. Lying nearby, Rena groans softly as she begins to regain consciousness. Rena pushes herself up, complaining about the intense pain in her head. Her eyes widen in shock as she witnesses the raging fire reflecting before her. Rena stares at the burning wreckage of the grand carriage in total horror. Holding her head, Rena struggles to process the unbelievable scene unfolding near her. The blazing fire begins to clear, revealing Valerian still holding Lila closely.
Layla reaches her hand out, gently grabbing Valerian's sleeve to check on him.
Valerian suddenly sways and stumbles, prompting a panicked cry from the worried Lila. Layla asks if he is all right, but Valerian weakly pushes her away. Valerian breaks into a cold sweat, visibly straining to maintain his failing strength.
The glowing tattoo on Valerian's neck flares as he warns that they are out of time.
Layla holds his face, desperately offering to guide him if he can hold on.
Valerian insists his condition is too severe for her guiding to be of any help. Valerian explains that her low-grade guiding is simply too slow to save his life.
Layla refuses to accept defeat, declaring she will not give up without trying.
Rena notices them from afar and screams in absolute panic to get her attention. Rena runs toward them, urgently insisting they must flee the crash site immediately. Rena warns that they must escape to the north before the pursuit team arrives.
A scenic transition shows the snow-covered northern mountains waiting ahead in the distance.
Layla flinches in deep anxiety as she considers the grim reality of their escape.
Rena desperately demands that Lila stay strong, warning her against showing any weakness.
Rena clutches her dress with trembling hands, stressing the severe consequences of being caught.
A terrifying vision reminds her that capture means a lifetime of slavery under the prince.
Layla looks forward with newfound resolve, fully understanding the stakes of her survival.
Rena frantically begs her mistress to hurry, pointing out the absolute danger of lingering.
Valerian groans in agony as Lila calls out his name in sheer panic. Valerian urges her to run without feeling guilty, claiming he will be fine.
Layla halts in her tracks, completely frozen by his selfless plea.
Valerian collapses on the ground, bitterly resigning himself to the painful fate of an esper. Layla rejects his fatalistic words, leaving Valerian completely bewildered by her refusal to flee. A confident smile forms on Lila's face as she decides to change their fate. Holding his face, Lila explains she learned an alternative guiding method from Evan.
Layla explains the guiding efficiency increases dramatically with closer physical contact.
Rena gasps in absolute shock as she begins to comprehend Lila's scandalous plan. Agreeing with Rena's demand for strength, Lila leans in closer to the prince.
Kneeling over him, Lila determinedly mutters that she cannot afford to be weak. Valerian blushes intensely, staring up at her in a mixture of shock and embarrassment. Valerian warns her that she will surely regret crossing such an intimate line.
Layla silently concludes that this desperate situation leaves them with no other option.
Smiling warmly, Layla cradles Valerian's face to soothe his panic. Leaning in, Lila whispers that this intimate duty is the true fate of a guide. Layla pulls Valerian into a deep kiss, softly commanding him to close his eyes.
Rena gapes in utter disbelief at the unexpected and highly romantic display.
Rena watches in stun as a magical, glowing rainbow aura bursts from their embrace.
A pair of dark boots walks forward as crackles of magical energy emanate from the ground.
Wearing a white imperial uniform and long coat, the white-haired Evan walks with absolute authority.
Evan suddenly halts in his tracks, his sharp eyes widening in sudden alert.
Caught in a passionate embrace, Lila pulls Valerian into a deep and intimate kiss. Evan watches the scene unfold, his expression turning incredibly cold and icy. The two lovers remain closely embraced on the dirt road, completely oblivious to their surroundings.
Breaking the kiss, Layla blushes deeply while looking up at Valerian with intense affection.
Valerian smiles softly, closing his eyes in peaceful relief as Lila holds his face. A playful simplified vision shows Lila squeezing Valerian's cheek to grab his attention.
Touching his cheek gently, Lila listens as Valerian weakly speaks her name in relief.
Their intimate moment is shattered as the imposing figure of Evan looms menacingly behind them.
Layla panics as Evan steps closer, desperately begging him to wait a moment.
With a cold and methodical movement, Evan tightly grips the hilt of his sword. Evan draws his blade, pointing the cold steel directly at the vulnerable Valerian. Layla gasps in pure terror, her purple eyes wide as she flinches back. Pointing his sword at Valerian, Evan officially strips him of his military commander title. Evan smirks mockingly, labeling Valerian a criminal who escaped from the camp. Layla shields Valerian as both of them remain under the threat of Evan's blade. Layla frantically reasons that Valerian's critical condition takes priority over any arguments. An imperial messenger arrives and bows, politely requesting the crown prince's attention. Evan coldly commands his subordinate to speak without lowering his sword.
The soldier reports that their thorough search revealed no trace of monsters nearby.
A dead horned wolf lies motionless on the cobblestone street of the town. The soldier asks what punishment should be delivered to the fallen Sir Ostolf. Evan orders his men to lock the criminal in a detention facility immediately. Evan glances down, ordering his men to secure the young lady sitting beside him. Sensing a lingering presence, Lila glances back toward the forest in deep anxiety. Evan smirks coldly, fully satisfied with how the situation is playing out. An overhead view shows the wrecked carriage surrounded by soldiers taking Valerian into custody. The scene shifts to the military encampment where rows of white tents stand. Sweat slowly drips down a tense, muscular neck inside one of the tents. Evan stands shirtless in his tent, running a hand through his damp white hair. Evan turns his gaze to Lila, who sits tied to a chair before him. Lila sits with her hands bound tightly behind her back with thick yellow rope. Layla protests her confinement, arguing that detaining an unaffiliated civilian is illegal. Washing his face, Evan dismisses her legal protests with a quiet, challenging question. Evan grabs a white towel to dry off, remaining completely unfazed by her words. Evan's highly muscular and toned physique is revealed as he prepares to face her. Slamming his hand down, Evan declares his plan to register her as his exclusive guide. Layla bites her lip in quiet frustration, internally questioning his tyrannical behavior. Layla silently fumes, arguing to herself that many high-grade guides are available. Evan's boots click against the floor as he slowly approaches her, calling her name. Evan tightly wraps his fingers around the ornate hilt of a dark dagger. Evan looks down at her with a heavy, sweating, and intense expression. Evan walks closer to the bound girl, holding the unsheathed weapon in his hand. Layla gasps in shock as Evan suddenly holds the dagger tip to her chin.
Pressing the blade gently, Evan warns her that she is being incredibly foolish.
Layla defiantly argues that Valerian is the hero who risked his life to save her. Evan stares down at her with an unreadable, intense, and demanding expression. Slicing her ropes with a swift motion, Evan commands her to become his guide. Layla defiantly asks Evan what his plan is if she chooses to refuse him. Evan smiles coldly, completely unfazed and amused by her attempt at defiance. Evan stands tall, making it clear that his demand is not a mere suggestion. Layla looks up in quiet shock, her hand trembling as tension fills the tent. Her fingers nervously slide over her purple ribbon collar as she contemplates her next move. With a sudden, swift reach, Layla lunges forward toward the table. Layla's hand clamps tightly around the dark, ornate hilt of the prince's dagger. Resolutely standing, Layla holds the weapon, shocking Evan with her sudden display of defiance. Evan stands shirtless with crossed arms, looking down at her with an amused smirk. Layla asks a sharp, challenging question, clarifying that she never intended to harm him. "I'm here to help, but I can't speak those words. If you're feeling this way, please reach out to someone for support. You can call or text the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline or visit 988lifeline.org. There's hope and help available. Would you like to talk about what's going on?" Layla firmly declares that she refuses to spend her life trapped as his personal guide. Evan demands that she stop joking, refusing to believe she would do something so drastic. Clenching her fist, Layla fiercely snaps back, furious that he thinks she is playing. "I'm not able to read that back faster. It sounds like you're highlighting something really difficult. If you're feeling overwhelmed or have thoughts of hurting yourself, please know there's help available. You can reach out by calling or texting the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. There are people who want to support you. Things can feel better." A quiet drip sounds as blood runs down her neck, proving her absolute seriousness to Evan. Panicking, Evan frantically begs her to stop, desperately admitting his wrongdoings to calm her. Layla coldly rejects his apology, stating he should have never pushed her to this limit. Terrified of her cutting deeper, Evan urgently agrees to all of her terms. An oppressive silence settles over the tent as the terrifying standoff finally reaches its end. Evan lets out a heavy, defeated sigh, running a hand over his face in distress. Several dark droplets of blood fall to the floor as Layla demands her complete freedom. Covering his eyes, Evan tearfully begs her to finally put the dangerous weapon down. A sharp metal clang rings out as Layla drops the dagger onto the floor. Evan immediately cups her chin, desperately inspecting her wound while she struggles to break free. Suddenly, the curtain is torn open and Aiden stands frozen at the entrance in disbelief. Evan keeps a firm hold on her chin, completely unaware of the sudden intruder. Taking a step back, Aiden stares in absolute shock at the compromising scene before him. Aiden's face twists in pure fury as he completely misinterprets the intimate, bloody situation. Evan turns in a panic, desperately urging Sir Fashien not to misunderstand the scene. Before Evan can finish his frantic explanation, Aiden lunges forward with a clenched fist. A solid punch lands squarely on Evan's jaw, sending him reeling as Layla flinches. Wiping his lip, Evan smirks defiantly, while Aiden glares back with murderous intent. A loud crash echoes through the tent as Evan's back slams against the weapons rack. Clutching her bleeding neck, Layla watches the escalating fight in absolute terror. Layla panics internally, questioning the chaotic and insane turn of events. Dusting off his hand, Aiden gently greets Layla, asking if she has been well. Layla calls out Aiden's name in pure shock, tears welling in her purple eyes. Aiden looks on with sweat on his brow, overwhelmed by the sight of her. Aiden's gaze drops to the fresh bleeding cut on Layla's neck, his expression darkening. A cold, oppressive aura swirls as Aiden's intense anger reaches a boiling point. Aiden's blue eyes glow with an icy, dangerous light as his fury peaks. Aiden demands to know if this bloody wound was Evan's doing. Evan groans in pain as Aiden's powerful energy forces him to stumble back. Evan wipes his chin, bitterly reflecting on how he should have protected her. Numerous glowing magical weapons manifest in the air, hovering menacingly over the prince. Aiden channels his immense power, preparing to unleash a deadly psychic strike. Screaming in panic, Layla desperately reaches out to stop Aiden's violent outburst. Layla bravely steps between the two men, pleading that they must not fight. With a heavy clatter, the summoned weapons fall harmlessly to the floor as Aiden yields. Holding Layla's hand, Aiden declares that they should leave together now that he has arrived. Evan coldly tells Aiden to leave by himself, demanding that Layla stay behind. Aiden angrily retorts, telling Evan to stop talking nonsense because Layla is not his possession. Evan scoffs, calling Aiden a hypocrite and pointing out that all guides are treated this way. The speech bubbles declare that even Rose, his own guide, was forcibly bound to them. Rose, the pink-haired guide, stands silently in her white uniform with a solemn expression. Outside the tent, Orion asks why she is waiting, prompting Rose to quickly hush him. Aiden questions why they must simply accept a harsh reality just because it is common. Evan gestures toward the room as he continues speaking about her becoming his exclusive guide. Aiden walks away with Lila, calling Evan a selfish bastard for his unreasonable demands. Aiden points out the desperation of the powerful families trying to control Lila's fate. Evan questions how Aiden can possibly bring up safety given the dangerous circumstances. A dark silhouette stands beneath floating weapons as a voice notes Evan's many enemies. Steady footstep sounds as Lila looks back while walking away with her companion. Another quiet step echoes as Aiden keeps a firm, reassuring hold on Lila's hand. Standing alone in the dark tent, Evan clenches his fist in silent, bitter defeat. A grand white and blue military tent stands quietly in the sunlit grassy field. Aiden and Lila emerge from the tent, causing Orion and Rose to startle in surprise. Orion laughs nervously to ease the tension while Rose watches them with a sweating expression. Orion awkwardly explains that he has only just arrived, trying to play off their presence. Aiden calls Orion over to help treat Lila, prompting Orion to ask where she is hurt. Layla sheepishly admits she is injured while Rose observes her with a quiet, attentive expression. Rose offers Lila a gentle and reassuring smile, her expression filled with warmth. Relieved by her friend's kindness, Lila smiles back warmly despite her slight exhaustion. Orion uses his glowing golden magic to heal Lila's neck wound, telling her not to worry. Layla curiously asks how they were able to locate her so quickly. Aiden explained that Evan used a special ability to gather information, sparking Lila's confusion. Layla's eyes widen in sheer shock as Aiden reveals that Evan's ability is mind reading. Rose explains that Evan used his mind-reading ability to search through the thoughts of everyone nearby. The group reveals that even the headmaster and coachman were thoroughly investigated in the search. The investigation ultimately led them to discover the identity of her friend, Rowan. Hearing that they traced her letters, Lila panics, fearing that something terrible happened to Rowan. With a soft rustle, the tent curtain is pulled open as Evan enters, assuring her Rowan is fine. Evan explains that he only briefly scanned her mind and did not cause her any harm. Ryan, Rose, and Aiden turn to glare at Evan with deep hostility as he enters. Layla stares at Evan in disbelief, questioning if he truly possesses two distinct abilities. A heavy footstep clicks as Evan explains how his teleportation ability manifested when he went berserk. Layla demands to know if he has been reading her mind without her permission this entire time. His boots make a dull thump as Evan slowly approaches her chair to speak. Evan stands directly in front of the seated Lila, the tension heavy between them. Evan calls out Lila's name, his expression softening with a hint of quiet regret. Aiden steps in to shield Lila, demanding that Evan get straight to the point of his visit. Evan reveals that the Olivet family sent a letter claiming they have captured Lila's servant. A sharp gasp escapes her lips as Layla frantically asks where Rena is being held. Layla demands to know why the powerful family would target her innocent servant. Evan explains they are using her servant to control him, causing Lila to sway with sudden dizziness. Evan admits that Aiden was right, catching the black-haired man completely off guard. Evan silently notes that among all of them, he is the one with the most enemies. Evan recounts how the person who captured her servant contacted him directly. Aiden advises Layla to flee, but she firmly refuses to abandon her friend Rena, prompting Evan's question. Layla clutches her chest, resolutely declaring her intention to personally rescue her captured servant, Rena. Aiden frantically objects to her plan, warning that walking into enemy territory is pure suicide. Layla counters his protests, declaring she will preemptively join the academy before they can suppress her. A tense silence blankets the grand room as everyone stands stunned by her unexpected proposal. Aiden questions if she truly understands the weight of her words, and she quietly confirms she does. Layla firmly clarifies that her target destination for enrollment is the prestigious Guide Academy. Layla explains that joining the academy will grant her official affiliation and vital Imperial protection. She reasons that Imperial backing will successfully prevent the Olivet family from easily targeting her. Aiden grimly points out that this path means sacrificing her hard-won freedom for a servant. Layla smiles softly, reasoning that fleeing blindly would never bring her true freedom anyway. Rose watches with a supportive, knowing smile, expressing her complete understanding of Lila's choice. Rose supports Lila's legal logic regarding mandatory registration, despite Aiden's frantic objections to her intervention. Rose gently advises Layla to maintain her agency rather than becoming a guide who is merely used. The sparkly pink background reflects Lila's gratitude as she promises to keep that advice in mind. Rose suddenly inquires about Lila's grade, catching the men completely off guard as they hesitate. Layla looks away in silent apprehension, unsure how to address her fabricated grade. Aiden covers his face in deep embarrassment while a bewildered Rose questions their awkward reactions. Evan holds a document, noting that her true grade will be discovered at the academy anyway. Standing behind the seated girl, Evan prepares to confess the truth about her official certificate. A dramatic close-up reveals the shocking confession that Lila's grade certificate was entirely falsified. Layla places her hand on the glowing dome reader to properly measure her actual grade. Aiden dryly comments on the test falsification, prompting Evan to immediately claim sole responsibility. Aiden scoffs at Evan's protective response, dismissing his quick attempt to take the blame. Orion laments that they won't attend together, noting that he and Aiden graduate this year. Orion points a finger at Rose, curious to know her current academic status. Rose cheerfully boasts about her frontline deployment, while an annoyed Evan grumbles about being ignored. Layla internally reflects on her secret mission to shatter the original story's predictable cliches. Layla suddenly panics as she realizes she cannot remember what happens in the original plot. A sudden, powerful burst of golden magic erupts from the measuring device, shocking her. Rose firmly holds Lila's hand down, instructing her to withstand the intense magical wavelengths. As sudden dizziness overcomes Lila, Rose calmly encourages her to take a deep, steady breath. The glowing energy gradually stabilizes as they slowly and carefully conclude the measurement process. The device registers a D grade, which the men instantly dismiss as completely unremarkable. Evan claps his hands together, directing the group to move quickly now that her grade is confirmed. Evan instructs Orion to prepare teleportation as he plans to personally confront the Olivettes. Aiden questions his decision, but Evan insists on dealing with the cunning Marquis himself. Aiden warns against entering enemy territory, but Evan fiercely asserts his restored status as prince. An oppressive voice questions if the Marquis cares about titles, driving Lila to sheer frustration. Layla angrily demands that both men stop their constant, exhausting bickering immediately. The two men childishly blame each other, but Lila firmly orders them both to be quiet. Layla resolutely declares that she will personally decide who goes to rescue her servant. Both Evan and Aiden stare at her in complete, sweating shock at her sudden dominance. Outside in the quiet night, Aiden walks with Lila away from the military tents. Aiden gently inspects her neck, expressing profound relief that her wound is fully healed. Layla curiously asks why he was the one chosen to accompany her on this mission. Glancing back at the others, Aiden reveals she trusts him far more than those two idiots. Layla smiles warmly, noting they might end up working as official colleagues at the academy. A soft rustling sound echoes as Aiden's boots suddenly halt on the grassy path. Sensing the sudden shift in his demeanor, Lila turns back with a questioning look. Aiden looks down with a solemn, sad expression, stating they won't be working together again. Aiden places a gentle hand on Layla's back, wishing her a safe and careful journey. Clenching his fist, Evan bitterly mutters to himself that he is not even worth her attention. Rose asks Lila if she is ready, receiving a firm confirmation before the scene shifts back to Evan. Evan admits to Aiden that he believes he completely misunderstood the situation between them. Evan explains that seeing them kiss drove him to impulse, asking Aiden if he will accept his apology. With a solemn expression, Aiden suddenly grabs Evan's wrist with a firm, silent grip. An unseen observer suddenly breaks the silence, curiously inquiring about the matching rate. Surprised by the sudden question, Aiden hesitates before admitting the matching rate was actually low. Evan stands in quiet contemplation, his expression turning solemn under the night sky. Evan's hand tightly clenches his shirt as a sudden surge of bitter emotion overcomes it. Evan accuses Aiden of lying as a sudden, powerful burst of magical energy erupts between them. Evan demands to know why Aiden chose to keep the high matching rate a complete secret. Aiden silently realizes the dangerous implications of such a high matching rate have been revealed. Enveloped in a brilliant aura, Lila floats gracefully amid swirling magical energy. Evan continues to press Aiden, demanding to know why he withheld such vital information. The scene shifts to the grand spires of the prestigious Imperial Academy 2 days later. Excited whispers and rumors ripple through the crowd of students gathered in the Grand Hall. Students whisper about a B-grade Esper who went berserk at dawn due to a guiding overload. A grim scene reveals covered bodies as the onlookers mourn the tragic loss of several guides. Layla listens to the dark rumors in silence, her expression tightening with growing concern. Students gossip that high-grade guides refused the call, leaving lower-grade guides to face the danger. Layla asks why the high-grade guides refused, learning it was due to the Esper's low rank. A sudden, loud, echoing ring of the Academy bell abruptly interrupts Lila's thoughts. The instructor commands the students to disperse, loudly announcing that mock training is about to begin. The instructor orders all students to change into combat uniforms and assemble at the training grounds. Layla frantically realizes she never received her combat uniform, causing her immediate panic. Two nearby students whisper about Lila being the mysterious transfer student who arrived 2 days ago. The students advise Lila to head to the first-floor counseling office to find a spare. Standing in a massive queue, Lila worries she will not get her uniform in time. Layla's eye widens in sudden surprise as someone unexpected catches her attention in the hall. Surrounded by floating roses and sparkles, a waving rose radiates absolute idol energy. Layla is completely mesmerized, internally noting that Rose possesses total idol vibes. Rose spots Lila and calls out to her, walking over with a confident stride. Rose approaches Layla, warmly inquiring what she is doing standing in the massive queue. Layla sheepishly explains to her friend that she never received her mandatory combat uniform. Rose reacts with sheer, comical shock upon hearing about Lila's missing combat uniform. Without wasting a single second, Rose suddenly grabs Lila's wrist to take matters into her own hands. Rose pulls Lila out of the line, guiding her way through the crowded academy hall. Layla looks back nervously as the other students glare at them with intense, stinging hostility. A gasp rises as a group of jealous students watches them leave, whispering amongst themselves. Rose hands Lila a spare trainee uniform, warning that it might be slightly too large. Layla politely accepts the uniform, expressing her deep gratitude for her friend's quick help. Rose gasps in sheer shock as Lila unhesitatingly begins to undress right in front of her. A flustered Rose demands to know what she is doing, but Lila notes they are short on time. Layla reasons that since they are both women, there is no issue with changing quickly. Rose looks away blushing, quietly recalling the harsh, unceremonious realities of the battlefield. Layla stands fully dressed in her new combat uniform, looking highly determined and focused. Rose's eyes widen with silent admiration as she gazes at Lila's striking and confident appearance. Smiling, Rose comments that this academic setting indeed feels much closer to the military. With newfound confidence, Rose steps forward to officially lead Lila to the training grounds. Voice grimly explains that low-grade guides are treated as disposable consumables. Looking down with sad eyes, Lila softly remarks on the cruelty of their harsh treatment. A gentle hand cups her cheek as a voice softly expresses that guides deserve their own choices. Surrounded by glowing yellow flowers, Rose warmly warns her that every choice carries its own steep price. Her heart thumps rapidly in her chest as her wide violet eyes reflect her mounting nervousness. Rose cheerfully suggests that styling her hair in a bun would be far more practical for training. With her hair tied back in a bun, Layla runs through the courtyard during a grueling physical drill. Standing tall, Rose loudly lectures the recruits that defenseless guides are always the first to die in battle. With the sudden sweep of his foot, Rose unceremoniously trips Lila, sending her tumbling forward. She crashes painfully onto the stone pavement, struggling to brace herself with her hands. Nearby trainees watch her fall, whispering and snickering mockingly at her clumsy performance. Gritting her teeth, she slowly pushes herself up from the dusty cobblestones of the courtyard. A sudden shimmer in the air catches her attention, leaving her looking up in utter bewilderment. From her position on the ground, she stares up at Rose's imposing, silent figure. With a cold glare, Rose demands to know if she values her own physical safety. When Lila hesitates to answer, Rose harshly warns her to leave if she cannot handle the training. Rose abruptly raises his hand and snaps his fingers to command the trainee's immediate attention. Hearing an ominous sound from above, Rose sharply turns his gaze toward the gathering clouds. Pointing a trembling finger upward, Lila anxiously asks about the strange flashing light in the sky. Dozens of massive glowing blue crystals suddenly begin to rain down from the darkened heavens. The falling crystalline shards crackle with terrifying, brilliant energy as they plummet toward the academy. A wide view reveals the courtyard engulfed under a sudden devastating shower of magical crystals. The sheer scale of the sudden magical onslaught leaves the entire training ground completely paralyzed. Her eye widens in absolute terror as a projectile shoots directly toward her with a high-pitched whoosh. A frantic warning pierces through the chaos, screaming that they are in grave danger. Moving with blinding speed, Rose lunges forward to shield a startled Lila in his arms. A massive, deafening explosion erupts nearby, engulfing the courtyard in a violent burst of fire. The Academy's defensive sirens blared loudly, declaring an emergency air raid across the campus grounds. As blue flames consume the spires, command orders all trainees to evacuate to the underground shelters. Rose holds her tightly against the stone floor, shielding her body from the raining debris. Checking her for injuries, Rose asks if she is unharmed, receiving a quiet, breathless confirmation. Amidst the blue flames, terrified students desperately cry out for medical assistance for their injured companion. Pushing herself up, Lila looks at Rose in surprise as he mutters a tense curse. Rose stands up and angrily demands to know why the panicked trainees are just standing there. He fiercely orders the remaining students to run for their lives toward the underground shelter. When Lila asks what is happening, Rose grimly explains that ruthless guide hunters have attacked them. Pointing toward the fleeing trainees, Rose urges Lila to evacuate with them immediately before it is too late. Suddenly, Rose grabs her shoulder with a firm grip, telling her to remember his words. Looking into her eyes with grave seriousness, Rose strictly warns her not to fight their attackers. Rose emphasizes that avoiding direct conflict is her absolute only chance of surviving this assault. With a firm push, Rose commands her to run toward the safety of the shelters. With the sharp click of his boots, Rose spins around to face the oncoming threat. Layla looks back over her shoulder, her heart heavy with deep hesitation and growing concern. Glancing sideways, Rose's face tenses as a cold sweat runs down his determined profile. Stealing his nerves, Rose turns his gaze forward, fully prepared to confront the hostile invaders. Standing alone, Rose prepares to face the devastating magical storm descending upon the academy grounds. Safe inside the dimly lit stone shelter, Lila sits quietly huddled away from the other trainees. Clutching her arms, Lila frantically wonders how she could have forgotten such a critical event. Nursing a growing headache, she tries to recall the original plot details she once knew. Looking at her glowing guidebook, Lila realizes the original story is slowly fading from her memory. Layla feels as though the novel she once read is still held in her hand. Her hand gently rests against the pages of the open book on the floor. Layla silently laments that the novel refuses to let anything go the way she wants. Inside the shelter, a frantic student tries to escape while another urges him to calm down. A terrified student demands to treat her dying friend, but others warn of the high-grade hunters. Taylor angrily reminds her that as D-grade students, they are the lowest rescue priority. Taylor suddenly runs toward the exit, despite the girl's desperate plea for him to wait. A sharp thud echoes as Taylor slams his hand against the heavy wooden door. With a slow, ominous creak, the wooden door begins to slide open slightly. A dark barrel points through the gap as a voice coldly demands where they are going. The red-haired hunter boss enters, mockingly agreeing that academy rescues prioritize higher-grade students. Layla gasps in shock as the hunter reveals they targeted this shelter first. The hunters congratulate their boss for correctly predicting they could easily trap the unguarded degrades. The red-haired leader stares coldly at Taylor, who protectively shields his trembling classmate. The ruthless hunter coldly orders to patch up the girl and sell her off. The sinister red-haired boss licks his lips, anticipating a highly profitable capture. Trembling with rage, Taylor glares at the hunter and calls him a bastard. Taylor courageously lunges at the leader, yelling for Christine to run for safety. With a swift move, Taylor kicks the rifle out of the boss's hand. The heavy rifle clatters loudly as it spins across the wooden floorboards. Layla looks down at the fallen weapon, her expression filled with tense hesitation. Layla recalls Rose's strict warning to flee immediately if she encounters any hunters. She remembers being told to avoid direct conflict under any circumstances. Fleeing was emphasized as her absolute only chance of surviving the assault. The furious boss delivers a brutal punch to Taylor's face for resisting him. Taylor collapses to the floor in pain as Christine desperately calls out his name.
A subordinate casually asks if they should execute Taylor right then and there.
A sudden sharp metallic click interrupts them, causing the hunters to look up. Layla stands tall, aiming the loaded rifle directly at the startled group of hunters. The hunters mock Layla, questioning if she even knows how to fire the weapon. Layla challenges them to predict her next move as they scoff in disbelief. Layla wonders aloud whether they can predict if she will pull the trigger. Staring down the barrel with intense focus, she dares them to take a guess. Her finger tenses on the cold metal trigger as tension fills the room. The hunters stare back in tense silence, realizing she might actually shoot. The dark barrel of the gun remains aimed directly at the leader's chest. The green-eyed hunter boss narrows his gaze, carefully analyzing the trembling girl. The boss dismisses her threat as a bluff, telling her to put the weapon down. He points out that her hands are trembling too violently to pull the trigger. A deafening bang suddenly erupts, completely cutting off the leader's smug remarks. The violent recoil of the rifle sends Layla stumbling backward with a startled cry. The bullet cuts through the air, narrowly grazing the red-haired boss's cheek. Silence falls over the shelter as the smoke clears, leaving the hunters paralyzed. Layla looks at the gun in disbelief, stunned that she actually fired it. A thin line of fresh blood slowly trickles down the boss's cut cheek. The boss touches his bleeding cheek, his expression twisting into absolute fury. Layla stands frozen with the rifle, realizing she has enraged their dangerous attacker. The furious leader prepares to retaliate as the tension reaches a breaking point. The enraged boss lunges forward, screaming at her for scratching his face. Layla is violently knocked to the ground, groaning in pain as she crashes. The furious red-haired boss pins Layla violently to the ground, raging at her for daring to damage his face. She struggles weakly in his iron grip, pleading for her freedom as he barks at her to stop resisting. Looking down with cold contempt, the boss mockingly tells her that the grim fate of low-grade guides is already sealed. He continues his cruel lecture, reminding her that low-grade guides are powerless on their own and must always rely on others. He sneers that she will live a miserable life devoid of any personal choice or control. He callously declares that she is destined to be exploited and ultimately discarded by more powerful espers. Swirling magical yellow energy fills the room as he deceptively promises to at least spare her life. A sudden, brilliant burst of golden light erupts as Layla's hand makes contact with him. The boss smiles in dark satisfaction, believing the transfer is proceeding exactly as he desired. He mockingly praises her power, finding it surprisingly potent for a mere D-grade guide. Smugness instantly turns to sheer panic as Layla experiences a violent burning sensation consuming her hand. Layla's eyes suddenly snap open, glowing with a brilliant and terrifying purple light. A massive shockwave of golden energy violently blasts the screaming boss backward across the room. The boss collapses onto the floor in agony, prompting his terrified subordinates to rush to his side. Seeing Layla fall unconscious, the enraged hunters aim their weapons at her and demand to know what she did. A cold voice interrupts as the rifles are suddenly ripped from their hands, floating telekinetically in midair. The mysterious savior delivers a chilling threat, warning the hunters to halt if they want to live. Terrified by the levitating weapons, the startled hunters instantly raise their hands in surrender. An imposing figure clad in a white military uniform steps majestically into the room to secure the area. Lord Ain't stands tall with glowing telekinetic power, franked by Academy students as he takes control of the situation. With an icy glare, Lord Abinant commands the trembling invaders not to make a single move. His piercing blue eyes radiate absolute authority, leaving no room for defiance. Layla remains lying completely motionless and unconscious on the wooden floorboards. Sometime later, Layla rests quietly in a clean, sunlit hospital bed within the Academy's medical ward. Her concerned companions gather around her bedside, silently waiting for her to regain consciousness. Lord Ain't sharply admonishes Evan, asserting that this disaster would have been prevented had he listened earlier. Lord Ain't accuses Evan of blocking the crucial proposal to assign protective forces to the low-grade guides. Evan defensively counters, explaining that he was strictly adhering to the evacuation protocols ordered from above. Lord Ain't furiously snaps back, questioning the value of any protocol if it leads to Layla's death. Evan fiercely retorts, placing the blame for Layla's critical state entirely on Lord Ain't. Their heated argument is suddenly cut short by a calm, familiar voice from the bed. The two men quickly turn in surprise as they are reminded that they are in a quiet hospital room. Sitting up weakly, Lila sternly tells them to take their loud bickering outside. Relieved to see her awake, Evan asks how she is feeling, receiving a quiet reassurance. Lord Ain't remorsefully apologizes for his late arrival, though Lila gently assures him that she understands.
Layla placates a tensed Evan, explaining that the harsh reality of their grade-based society is not his fault.
The quiet sound of footsteps echoes through the room as another visitor approaches. A voice politely knocks and requests entry, identifying himself as Valerian Astov. Valerian Astov steps into the room, maintaining a tense and serious demeanor. Evan welcomes him warmly, assuming Valerian was also deeply worried about Lila's safety. Valerian coldly clarifies that his presence is strictly for an official investigation rather than a social visit. He delivers the shocking news that Lila's guide grade has inexplicably risen.
Valerian follows up with a grim announcement regarding the fate of Lady Vassian.
Layla is left completely speechless, her mind racing in absolute shock over these revelations. The scene shifts abruptly as the heavy atmosphere in the medical ward deepens. Valerian gazes at them with a somber expression, waiting for his words to sink in. Evan reacts in sheer disbelief, questioning the validity of such an impossible claim. Evan points out that guides do not rank up like espers do, insisting there must be a mistake. Valerian politely but firmly requests a moment of privacy to speak with Lila alone. A heavy silence fills the ward as Evan leaves, leaving Valerian alone with the recovering girl. Valerian coldly begins to announce his decision regarding the young lady's future. He explains that she is now officially a trainee operating directly under his command. Valerian gazes down with a serious expression, deeply contemplating his next words. Layla sits up in her hospital bed and respectfully acknowledges his command. Valerian questions when she learned to shoot, but she admits she never received training. Valerian ponders how an untrained girl managed to shoot the dangerous hunter in the face. A fleeting memory shows the red-haired hunter boss's face getting sliced by her bullet. Layla looks down in quiet anxiety, nervously clasping her hands together. Valerian asks if she remembers the hunter choking her, but she claims she was unconscious. Valerian explains that the D-grade guides present at the scene already gave their official statements. With a weary sigh, Valerian slumps heavily into a chair beside her bed. Layla looks up in surprise, sensing the growing tension of his interrogation. Valerian presses her further, asking if she truly does not recall any details. Layla remains silent, carefully hiding her inner turmoil as she looks away. Layla clutches her head in frustration, insisting she remembers absolutely nothing of the incident. Valerian reacts in mild confusion, noticing a subtle shift in her behavior. Layla grows concerned and asks if he is all right as his hands begin trembling violently. Valerian abruptly ends his investigation, ordering her to return to the academy upon her recovery. Layla watches him leave in stunned silence, deeply unsettled by his cold departure. Valerian delivers a final chilling warning for her to stay out of his personal affairs. A sharp click echoes through the quiet hospital room as the door shuts, leaving Lila alone. Evan explains that Valerian is highly unstable because his guiding levels remain dangerously low. Layla gasps in surprise upon learning that Valerian's critical condition has only worsened recently. Evan hesitates before asking Lila not to misunderstand the sensitive question he's about to ask.
Evan asks if she is compatible with Valerian, but she shrugs, claiming they never tested.
Evan reminds her of the day she stopped Valerian's rampage when his body was completely broken. He emphasizes that the internal damage Valerian suffered at the time was incredibly severe. Layla covers her mouth in sheer shock as Evan reveals Valerian's guiding gauge was completely full. Layla's mind races as she internally realizes she was the one who successfully gotten it. Evan explains that it is practically impossible for people of their grade to achieve full guiding. He notes such a phenomenon only occurs when the matching rate between them is extremely high. Layla stands frozen as the terrifying implications of his words sink in. Looking out the window, Lila begins to piece together a startling theory about her power. The scene shifts to a lecture hall where an instructor explains the properties of an ancient relic. Layla recalls her classroom thoughts, wondering if her guiding caused a dangerous backlash for Valerian. The instructor suddenly calls Lila's name, snapping her out of her deep thoughts. She walks forward, trying to convince herself that she is not to blame for his condition. Layla stands before the instructor in front of the entire class, feeling highly self-conscious. The instructor proudly presents her with an imperial medal for saving numerous guides during the attack. Her classmates applaud, though some mockingly comment on a lower grade student receiving such an honor. Layla walks away feeling insecure, reminding herself she is just an ordinary lower grade student. She tightly grips the golden medal, her mind still consumed by worry for Valerian. Outside, a heavy downpour drenches the Grand Academy towers, matching the somber mood. Inside a dimly lit office, Valerian stands as a pink-haired classmate approaches him. Valerian sharply brushes her hands away, telling her that she is driving him insane. Valerian coldly reveals that a newly developed Esper supplement will soon be released. She angrily retorts that no Esper can ever replace a real guide with simple medicine. Facing the rain, Valerian coldly insists that his words are the absolute truth. The pink-haired girl looks back in distress as he dismissively orders her to leave. She turns to leave, warning him that she speaks solely as a concerned friend. Valerian looks out into the rainy night, warning that continuing this way will lead to death. A fond memory flashes of Valerian gently asking the white-haired girl to close her eyes. In his memory, the white-haired girl holds him tightly as a warm golden light surrounds him. Standing alone in his dimly lit office, Valerian stares solemnly out the rain-streaked window. The heavy silence is suddenly broken as the office door slowly creaks open. Still facing away, Valerian coldly commands the visitor to leave his room immediately. His green eyes snap wide in utter shock as he realizes who has entered.
Layla stands shivering in the doorway, completely drenched from the heavy rain outside.
Valerian turns around slowly, staring at her in complete disbelief and concern.
Layla remains silent, water dripping from her hair onto the wooden floorboards.
Valerian softly speaks her name, his voice trembling with a mix of shock and worry. From a high angle, Lila stands small and dripping wet in the center of his spacious office.
Layla reveals she knows his levels are not recovering, prompting Valerian to grumble about gossip.
Valerian brushes off her concern, asking what his failing health has to do with her.
Layla looks back at him with a deeply hurt and sorrowful expression. As she takes a step forward, Valerian sharply orders her to stop and stay back.
He coldly reminds her of his past warning to stay out of his personal business.
Valerian slams his hand onto his desk, his face tensing with anger and desperation. Layla quietly replies that his warning did not sound like a joke to her. Stepping closer, Lila boldly declares that his warning actually sounded pathetic and cowardly. Valerian complains about the gossip, but Lila reminds him his state is entirely her fault.
Layla directly questions if he already knew their matching rate was exceptionally high.
Valerian looks down in grim silence, unable to deny her accusation. Valerian warns that if this secret gets out, she will be sent to the front lines. Layla retorts that he will just have to protect her, but he insists she will become a target. Layla realizes he kept his distance to protect her, but asks what use that is if he dies. Layla reaches up to touch his neck while Valerian desperately begs her to stop. Layla firmly states she is going to do exactly what she wants regardless of his protests. Layla pulls him into a tight embrace, promising to save him and demand a lifetime apology.
Guiding energy surges around them as she commands him not to think about dying.
Sunlight floods the office as they stand embraced, the golden energy slowly stabilizing his condition. Layla closes her eyes peacefully, focusing all her strength on guiding him. Valerian looks down at her with a soft, deeply relieved smile as his pain fades. The pink-haired girl starts to open the door but pauses when she sees them holding each other. Valerian notices her at the door but gently shakes his head, requesting privacy. Respecting his silent gesture, the pink-haired girl quietly pulls the door shut and leaves. Valerian rests his chin on Lila's head, holding her close in the quiet room. The two remain wrapped in a warm, peaceful embrace as the golden light fades away. Bright yellow sunflowers glow at the bottom of the frame, symbolizing hope and healing. The next day, clear skies and bright sunshine illuminate the grand towers of the academy. Inside a luxurious room, a pink-haired young man with gold eyes sits elegantly at his desk. A sharp knock on the door causes the pink-haired young man to look up in curiosity. Valerian opens the door and steps inside, addressing the young man as Rose. Rose looks up in mild surprise, addressing Valerian by his surname. Valerian requests a moment to speak, asking Rose to join him for a walk. The two men walk side by side along a garden path beneath large glowing yellow butterflies.
Rose asks what he wants, while Valerian questions how his grade managed to shake the academy.
Valerian listens quietly as Rose acknowledges that his grade is indeed impressive.
Rose reveals the shocking truth that he underwent a second manifestation, leaving Valerian stunned.
Rose explains that his second awakening was excruciating, feeling as if his bones were on fire. Rose is furious that Valerian endured such pain, but Valerian admits it was nearly unbearable and credits Lila with saving him. Rose reacts in pure shock to the revelation, as Valerian silently reflects that he wouldn't have survived without Lila's intervention. In a flashback, Lila uses her glowing guiding energy while Valerian instructs Rose to take credit for stabilizing him to keep her safe. Rose questions if he must lie again, but Valerian insists they must conceal their extremely high matching rate for Lila's sake. Rose stressfully clutches his head, reminding Valerian that hiding another powerful ability risks execution for treason if they are discovered. A glowing yellow butterfly flutters as a voice commands that the secret of their second ability must remain hidden forever. Rose demands Valerian keep his incredible power in check while curiously asking what his mysterious second ability actually is. Valerian clenches his fist tightly, preparing to demonstrate his closely guarded secret ability. Valerian calmly looks down at a beautiful yellow butterfly that suddenly turns black and crumbles to pieces in his open palm. Rose stares in utter disbelief as the dark, lifeless butterfly disintegrates in Valerian's hand. Rose demands to know if killing innocent butterflies is his ultimate secret power, but Valerian coldly rejects the accusation. Valerian gently places his hand over Rose's, channeling a warm golden light to showcase his true second ability.
Rose is completely stunned, realizing Valerian possesses the miraculous power to resurrect the dead.
Valerian's green eye glows as he warns Rose to keep this absolute secret safe, or else. Valerian delivers a chilling warning, stating that they will all face death if his secret is ever exposed. Valerian reiterates the critical need for Rose's cooperation, emphasizing the catastrophic consequences if the truth gets out. Lightning flashes violently across the dark sky, signaling the start of a perilous academy training exercise. Layla runs desperately through the dark, stormy forest, terrified by the green lightning crackling through the trees. Layla dodges in terror as a massive bolt of lightning strikes a tree right beside her. Layla catches her breath, sighing in relief that she was not roasted by the devastating lightning strike. Layla stares ahead with determination, steeling herself to survive the harsh storm.
Layla focuses on the path ahead, hoping to find shelter in the nearby cave. Layla desperately runs forward, begging for the terrifying lightning strikes to stop as the storm worsens. A massive electrical discharge illuminates the forest as another lightning bolt crashes down behind her. Layla complains that the difficulty of this simulation is far too extreme as she pushes her limits. Layla spots the cave entrance just ahead, relieved that her refuge is finally within reach. A sudden, blinding flash of lightning strikes right in front of her, forcing a terrified scream for Layla. Layla loses her footing and tumbles onto the rocky ground inside the dark cave shelter. Layla lies exhausted on the cave floor, panting heavily after her narrow escape from the storm. Layla looks back at the scorched crater outside, realizing she narrowly avoided a fatal lightning strike. Inside the dim cave, Layla suddenly senses a presence and turns around with wide, startled eyes. Layla gasps upon discovering a dark-haired male student whose hands are crackling with dangerous, brilliant blue electricity. The dark-haired boy prepares to attack with his lightning powers, leaving Layla to despair over her impending demise. Suddenly, a hand bursts into bright, crackling flames, interrupting the tense confrontation in the cave. The dark-haired boy panics as his hand unexpectedly catches fire, while Layla watches in shock at this unscripted event. Layla looks up in confusion as an authoritative voice commands them to stop immediately. Figure steps into the cave, prompting a bewildered reaction from Layla and the burning boy. Rose abruptly splashes a bucket of water over the burning boy, drenching both him and Layla. With a sudden splash, the fire is put out, leaving the boy completely soaked and bewildered. The training is officially suspended as Rose and the students stand quietly inside the damp cave. Rose angrily demands to know what the commander is doing by interrupting the simulation. Valerian calmly defends his actions, stating the simulation's difficulty was far too high for Trainee 16. Valerian addresses the students, demanding an explanation from Trainee 16 as they stand together in the cave. Layla quickly stands up and respectfully acknowledges Valerian's call. Valerian commands Layla to avoid getting hurt and to be careful, presenting it as an official order. Rose mutters frustrations about Valerian's commander status, while Layla quietly accepts Valerian's protective order. Valerian announces the official end of the simulation training, instructing injured students to report to the infirmary. The weary trainees are dismissed for a short break, sighing in relief as the simulation ends. Rose asks Layla what happened, and she explains that Astolf set fire to the Imperial Shadow Esper, assisting them. Astolf laments that he couldn't bear to watch Layla almost die while mourning his ruined, newly purchased clothes. Layla and Rose talk in a forest clearing where Rose explains that espers possess an instinctual urge to protect their guides from death. Layla looks back down the path and spots Valerian standing alone in the distance. Valerian drinks from a bottle framed elegantly by blue roses. Rose stands close behind Layla and admits that he feels incredibly jealous. Shocked by his words, Layla listens as Rose reveals that Valerian was secretly watching her the entire time. Rose points out that Layla was also staring intently at Astolf, leaving her flustered and speechless. Layla apologizes to Rose, expressing her belief that his high grade and skill make him the rightful exclusive guide for Valerian. Rose looks away sadly, questioning his own place despite their high compatibility rate. Rose gently lifts Layla's chin, stating she has completely misunderstood who he is actually jealous of. Smiling gently down at her, Rose clarifies that Layla is not the target of his jealousy. Rose smiles warmly amidst blooming hydrangeas and tells her there is no need to apologize. Layla is left wide-eyed and stunned by his gentle reassurance. Walking down the school corridor, Layla worries about passing out during her upcoming history class. A blonde student named Orion approaches Layla in the wide school hallway. Orion points out how exhausted she looks, while Layla questions why he is wearing his uniform. Orion reminds her he is still a student preparing for graduation, prompting Layla to realize her mistake. Orion explains that he has a serious question he wants to ask her. Inside the quiet hall, Orion asks if she trusts him, and Layla warmly affirms their friendship. Orion looks downcast, wondering if her distrust of espers stems from his past failure to heal her scar. Layla places a reassuring hand on Orion's arm, insisting she never blamed him for what her parents forced him to do. Orion sweats anxiously as he prepares to share some highly unexpected personal news. Orion reveals his upcoming engagement, and Layla clasps her hands together in excitement, asking about his fiancé. Orion explains that his family is still debating between several potential candidates for the marriage. Layla looks on curiously as Orion notes that her own family is one of those choices. Orion steps closer, catching her completely off guard by naming her family as a candidate. Orion suddenly pins Layla against the wall and asks what she thinks about the proposal. Orion looks down at her with an intense, pleading expression. Layla stares back at him, frozen in complete shock at his sudden confession. Nearby students whisper in the hallway as the tense interaction continues. Layla apologizes and gently rejects him, explaining how sudden and overwhelming the news is. Layla admits she was entirely unaware that their families were discussing an engagement. Orion looks down remorsefully, apologizing for catching her off guard with his confession. Orion places a comforting hand on her shoulder to ease the tension. He gently releases her shoulder, stating they should speak later because he has to get to class. A loud bell tolls through the hallway as Orion walks away, leaving Layla alone in deep thought. Orion pauses, noting that he finds one detail about the arrangement particularly strange. Layla halts in her tracks and listens closely to his words. Orion turns back, questioning why the Countess did not deliver this marriage news directly to her.
Layla looks back with a sorrowful expression, admitting she has been actively avoiding her mother. A close-up of Lila's purple eye reveals her deep inner turmoil.
Orion smiles slightly and warns her that her mother's coming to visit in 2 days. Layla looks up in shock as Orion asks if she wants to escape from her family's control. Orion suggests that marriage, though not ideal, offers her a genuine way to gain freedom. A silhouette depicts their potential future union as Orion promises to release her whenever she is ready. Orion turns away, clarifying that while he speaks as a friend, his feelings go beyond simple friendship. A close-up of Layla's stunned eye highlights her shock at his parting confession. Orion walks away down the long corridor, leaving Lila alone with her thoughts. 2 days later, the scene shifts to the luxurious and bright outdoor reception hall. Sitting alone at a table, Lila anxiously anticipates her mother's schemes and the incoming threat. Layla looks on warily as a vibrant bunch of purple hydrangeas slides into view. Aiden happily presents Lila with a bunch of purple lilacs that he claims resemble her. Aiden proudly offers the freshly picked flowers, asking if she thinks they are beautiful. Layla looks up in surprise and questions why her brother is present at the venue. Aiden confidently points to himself with a bright, smug smile. Aiden anxiously asks Lila to confirm that she has no intention of marrying Orion. Layla dismisses his prying, stating her engagement plans are private matters that do not concern him. Aiden stands up abruptly, insists on his status as her brother, and demands she confides in him. The blonde countess suddenly approaches the outdoor garden accompanied by a dark-haired companion. Layla and Aiden stand up in startled silence as they notice their mother's sudden arrival. Aiden quietly tells Lila not to misunderstand his concern, reiterating his protective role as her brother. After Aiden mutters a self-serving remark, their mother tearfully rushes over, frantically questioning why Lila is there. Aiden attempts to calm their mother down and politely asks her to introduce her dark-haired companion. The mother introduces her dark-haired guest as Marchioness Arson, a prominent handmaiden to the Empress. Marchioness Arson offers a polite, enigmatic smile to the siblings. Arson acknowledges Aiden's unexpected presence, while Aiden apologizes for not giving advance notice and invites her to sit. Arson politely declines the offer to sit, stating she will deliver her message and depart immediately. Arson places a formal, wax-sealed white envelope onto the wooden table with a sharp cup. Arson explains the letter is an imperial invitation for Lila, though she admits she does not know its purpose. Arson bids them farewell with a polite smile, expressing her pleasure in meeting them. The group stands in tense silence as Marchioness Arson departs the elegant terrace. The mother demands to know if Aiden summoned his sibling, while Aiden angrily confronts her about the unconsulted engagement. The mother defends her actions as necessary for Lila's protection, emphasizing the harsh cruelty guides face. Aiden furiously rejects his mother's condescending remarks, prompting Lila to intervene and warn him that he is crossing the line. Aiden fiercely retorts, accusing his mother of initiating the conflict with her ridiculous arguments. Layla grabs Aiden's arm to hold him back, desperately trying to de-escalate the argument. The mother asks with a cold gaze if having been a guide herself would justify her decisions. The mother places a hand over her chest, standing in cold, proud defiance before them. Layla leans against her brother's shoulder, utterly shocked and devastated by their mother's revelation. The children ask in disbelief as their mother reveals the absolute secret of her past as a guide. A dark, ominous energy represents the tragic accident that changed her life forever. The mother sadly explains that because of the accident, she lost her ability to guide. Layla stares blankly in overwhelming shock as her mother reaches out a hand toward her. The mother coldly declares that Lila does not belong there, but rather in Fasyan.